This is a juvenile prison built to hold offenders under the age of 18. South Korea's most vicious, most out-of-control teenagers have all been thrown into this place. Here, violence and crime are never exceptions. They're simply part of everyday life. And yet, this boy, who spent his whole life enduring his father's abuse, finally snapped one day and fought back, leaving his father in a vegetative state. In the end, he was sentenced by the judge to 3 full years in prison. To make money inside the prison, Cha Ju-young suffered through everything. He was even forced by Kim Sung-ho, a convicted rapist, to fish a 501 coin out of a squat toilet with his mouth. But even after being humiliated to that extent, Cha Ju-young still kept saving money, all for the sake of one promise. And that promise had everything to do with a childhood friend, Lee Di-yeon, who came to visit him. The moment Lee Di-yeon saw the wounds on Cha Ju-young's face, she was furious. She told him to stop enduring it and fight back against the people bullying him. Then, Lee Di-yeon took out the small pile of change Cha Ju-young had been secretly saving for her, because the two of them had already promised that after graduating from high school, they would go live in Seoul together. As for the money, Lee Di-yeon said she would figure it out herself. The only thing she wanted was for Cha Ju-young to take care of himself, no matter what happened inside the prison. After all, the moment he caused trouble in prison, his sentence could get even longer. So the only thing on Cha Ju-young's mind was to endure these 3 years, get out alive, and leave this place for Seoul with Lee Di-yeon. Just then, Kim Sung-ho, the head of Cell 36, came looking for trouble again. He ordered Cha Ju-young to hand over the photograph in his hand, when Cha Ju-young dared to resist. Kim Sung-ho's palm was already swinging down. At that exact moment, a guard appeared with a new inmate. Someone in Cell 36 recognized him immediately. He was Ma Jae-yum, the boy who had beaten 7 gang members to death and received the maximum 20-year sentence under juvenile law. Kim Sung-ho sneered, "So what if you killed 7 people? Nobody who ends up in this prison is a coward." He reached out a hand, signaling to Ma Jae-yum to show him who was boss. But Ma Jae-yum ignored Kim Sung-ho completely and walked past him into the cell. Humiliated, Kim Sung-ho lashed out with a punch. Ma Jae-yum dodged it with ease. He was insanely fast. Cha Ju-young could tell immediately. The guy who had killed 7 people was on a completely different level. And yet, in the very next second, Ma Jae-yum didn't even try to dodge. Kim Sung-ho's elbow slammed straight into him. Cha Ju-young froze that he hadn't seen that coming. For the monster who had killed 7 people was just a punching bag, after all. Still, no matter how much the others bullied Ma Jae-yum, he refused to even run simple errands for them. Ironically, by drawing most of the aggression onto himself, he spared Cha Ju-young from a lot of suffering. Late that night, Cha Ju-young whispered, "Is it really that hard to just play nice with the cell boss? In this room, he's basically the president." Ma Jae-yum shot back, "Did you come here planning to live like a dog?" Cha Ju-young hadn't expected his well-meant warning to be brushed aside like that. The words lingered in his mind. He had lived his whole life swallowing humiliation, and all he wanted was to keep enduring, until he could leave prison and move to Seoul with Lee Di-yeon, the orphan who had only him. Early the next morning, Lee Di-yeon arrived at the prison gates, clutching a homemade lunchbox. Then, out of nowhere, a massive truck roared out of nowhere, barreling straight for her. When he heard that Lee Di-yeon was dead, his entire world splintered into jagged pieces. The other inmates snickered. "Heard your little girlfriend ended up as roadkill." Kim Sung-ho snatched the photo away and burst out laughing, spouting vile filth about the girl in the picture. In the next instant, Cha Ju-young's punch sent him sprawling across the floor. Back in the cell, Cha Ju-young stared blankly at the photograph in his hand. Kim Sung-ho, the head of Cell 36, glared at him. "You bastard. Why didn't you clean the toilets today?" The other inmates snickered. "Guess someone's little crush got run over." Kim Sung-ho snatched the photo away and burst out laughing. Worse still, he started spewing filthy remarks about the girl in it. Cha Ju-young kept his head lowered, his thoughts unreadable. Ma Jae-yum sensed something shift and fixed his gaze on him. Kim Sung-ho was too busy running his mouth to notice the fist closing in. In the next instant, Cha Ju-young's punch sent him crashing to the floor. The other inmates never saw it coming. Even Ma Jae-yum looked mildly surprised. Not long ago, while they were working on the assembly line, Cha Ju-young had told them about his past. His father had been a trusted lieutenant to a notorious gang boss. He had grown up under relentless beatings. And no matter how rotten the man was, he was still his father. So Cha Ju-young endured. Until one day, he couldn't, because that bastard had dared to lay his hands on his only light in the dark, Lee Di-yeon. Enraged, Kim Sung-ho ordered the other inmates to beat Cha Ju-young to death. But a boy who had grown up under fists learned early how to fight back. For years, Cha Ju-young had chosen restraint, afraid of adding time to his sentence. Now that he moved, none of them could withstand him. Realizing the tide had turned, Kim Sung-ho quickly begged for mercy, promising him money. But Cha Ju-young didn't need money anymore. He didn't need a reason to endure until he got out of juvenile detention. He didn't need a reason to endure at all. For Cha Ju-young now, the shackles were gone. The words his father repeated most often were, "Follow me. Join the underworld." The beatings left his body covered in bruises. Violence was a daily ritual between father and son, and the young Cha Ju-young never dared meet those terrifying eyes. The man who called himself his father warned him to grow stronger. Strong enough, one day, to carve that mark into his own flesh. It became the only outlet for the lost boy's rage. The damn dragon eyes. The guards heard the commotion and smashed the door open. But by then, the cell had already plunged back into a deathly silence. Cha Ju-young calmly admitted that he was the one who had done it. He was immediately thrown into solitary confinement. In the darkness of the cell, he stared blankly at the blood-stained photograph in his hand. It was taken on the first day of school, the same day his father had beaten him senseless. Lee Di-yun had barked, "What kind of monster hits their kid on the first day of school?" But Cha Ju-young had long since grown used to it. Furious, Lee Di-yun had even wanted to confront his father. Cha Ju-young had stopped her, warning her never to come to his house. Lee Di-yun had let out a helpless sigh. She had said that after graduating high school, she would move to Seoul. She was sick of the suffocating orphanage and the cramped neighborhood. She would graduate from a top university, land a job at a major company, drive an imported car, carry designer bags, and live in a high-rise luxury flat with a view of the Han River. She invited Cha Ju-young to come with her when the time came. And just like that, they sealed their promise. An elderly passerby, charmed by their sweetness, kindly took a photo for them. Back then, Cha Ju-young had been filled with hope for the future. But now his life lay in ruins, and he couldn't stop thinking that if he had never gone to prison, Lee Di-yun might still be alive. His fist slammed against the wall again and again. Even as blood streaked down the concrete, he didn't stop. The guard who knew Cha Ju-young's situation couldn't help but feel sorry for him. But sympathy could only go so far that he couldn't keep protecting him forever. Cha Ju-young hadn't eaten a single bite since yesterday. The guard muttered, "Don't starve yourself over the dead. The living still have to survive." The next day, whispers spread through the prison. Cha Ju-young had beaten an entire cell by himself. Everyone understood what that meant. Kim Sung-ho, once knocked down, could no longer hold onto his position as cell leader. Before the rumor even finished leaving his mouth, Park Young-chan slammed the speaker's face straight into his food tray. Park Young-chan, who had been sent in for extreme violence, found himself intrigued by Cha Ju-young. As the leader of his own cell, he warned his subordinates not to step out of line. A week later, Cha Ju-young was finally released from solitary confinement. Kim Sung-ho was still lying in a hospital bed. The guard had limited Cha Ju-young's punishment to just 1 week out of consideration for his circumstances. Still, he warned him not to cause trouble again. When Cha Ju-young returned to the cell, Ma Jae-yum had assumed that challenging the cell leader would cost him dearly. The others surely wouldn't let it slide. Instead, the opposite happened. The inmates were suddenly kissing Cha Ju-young's ass. Ma Jae-yum finally understood something that in school, strength, family background, looks, grades, each had its place. But in juvenile detention, Mai was right. During yard time the next day, Cha Ju-young called out to Ma Jae-yum that he had something he needed to ask. That day, he had truly meant to beat the cell leader to death. Ma Jae-yum had stopped him. Cha Ju-young couldn't understand it. Why would someone who had killed 7 people stop him from killing? The truth was, when Ma Jae-yum had beaten those 7 gang members to death, he hadn't known why he was doing it either. He was about to answer when Park Young-chan approached. With a hostile glare, Park Young-chan demanded to know why Cha Ju-young had dared challenge Kim Sung-ho. Was he aiming for the cell leader seat? Cha Ju-young told him coldly to get lost. He didn't care about that position. Park Young-chan cursed. No damn respect that I hate punks who don't know their place. He declared he would teach Cha Ju-young what happens to a dog that bites its master. A patrolling guard cleared his throat deliberately. He glanced over, then walked away as if he'd seen nothing. Here, cell leaders could fight under the excuse of maintaining order. That was the rule of this juvenile detention center, which meant Park Young-chan could strike without restraint. What he didn't understand was why Cha Ju-young looked like a stray dog with no fight left in him. If that was the case, it would be disappointingly dull. Then Cha Ju-young noticed something familiar. The tattoo on Park Young-chan's arm looked almost identical to the one his bastard father wore. As Park Young-chan moved to strike again. This time, Cha Ju-young retaliated. He slammed Park Young-chan against the iron fence, and he brought his arm down hard on Park Young-chan's wrist. His blows fell like a violent downpour. Since the day he was born, the only outlet for his rage had been those damn dragon eyes. Endurance had always been Cha Ju-young's greatest skill, until the day he heard that familiar scream inside his own house. His father said coldly, "Your friend barged into my house and started talking shit." She said a father like me shouldn't even exist. I put her in her place. Endurance was the only armor Cha Juyong had ever known. But that day, he finally reached his breaking point. He ambushed his father and left him in a vegetative state. The doctor said the odds of him waking up were nearly zero, unless a miracle happened. Cha Juyong's renewed assault drew nearly every inmate's attention. No one expected the guy who had just stepped out of solitary to cause trouble again so soon. Park Young-chan's tattooed hand had already been mangled into a grotesque heap of broken bone. Cha Juyong's cold eyes locked onto a figure standing above the iron mesh walkway. That man had witnessed everything. The warden of the juvenile detention center, John Chong-hee, smiled. Glad to see you're still in one piece. Still, he was curious. Who could this mystery man, freshly discharged from the hospital, be here to see? When yard time ended, everyone returned to their cells. Ma Jiam resumed writing in his notebook. And no matter how he looked at it, he felt he was sharing a cell with someone anything but normal. Soon after, a guard summoned Cha Juyong again. This time, he had a visitor. Cha Juyong couldn't imagine who would come looking for him now. His mother had run away when he was a child. The rest of his relatives had long since cut ties. As he wondered who the visitor might be, he found himself escorted straight into the warden's office. Then a familiar figure greeted him with a smile. Cha Kangryong looked pleased at the energy his son displayed out on the yard. Cha Juyong froze. The bastard had really woken up like some twisted miracle. Even Cha Kangryong found it ironic that a gang underboss brought down by his own flesh and blood. But the moment he woke up in that hospital bed and understood what had happened, he felt exhilarated. Because this was how his son was supposed to be. As a father, he could do anything for his son. So he had no choice but to kill the girl himself. It had been Cha Kangryong who ran Li Yun down. As she lay there, broken and bleeding, the last thing she saw was a face more terrifying than any ghost. Cha Kangryong had once thought Cha Juyong was nothing but a spineless coward. But the day his son snapped, he saw potential. And that girl had been the key that unlocked it. Cha Juyong had wasted too much time taking the long road. So Cha Kangryong corrected his path by eliminating her. Everything was done to force Cha Juyong's awakening. The warden flinched. Cha Juyong lunged forward at blinding speed, fist aimed straight at Cha Kangryong. He finally understood what he had to do. In the next instant, multiple stun rounds were fired at him. Violent currents ripped through his body. Several guards subdued him with stun guns and forced him down. Cha Kangryong asked calmly, "Do you want revenge? Do you want to kill your father? Then let me tell you the only way to do it. A few members of our syndicate are already inside this detention center. They're barely 4-star brats for now, but some of them will become pillars of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. Prove you're the strongest among them. Take control of this juvenile detention center. Earn the syndicate's recognition. Climb. One day, you'll reach my seat and kill me. And then you'll rule the entire Heavenly Dragon Syndicate." The feat Cha Kangryong had failed to achieve in his entire lifetime would now be accomplished by his son. His life would be completed through Cha Juyong. Cha Kangryong looked down at his son on the ground with satisfaction. The rest, he left to the warden. But just then, everything shifted. Cha Juyong tore the stun rounds off his body. He would never fulfill that man's twisted wish. Today was the day Cha Kangryong would breathe his last. In the next instant, someone pinned him down. The man apologized for his disrespect toward the young master. Protecting the boss was his duty. But what shocked him was this. Despite being the Heavenly Dragon Operations Captain, his overwhelming strength was being held back by the young master's legs alone. Cha Kangryong told his pitiful son to open his eyes, that I end this situation. Cha Juyong couldn't even touch him. Acting on impulse will only burn your future to the ground. The only way you can kill me is by taking control of this detention center. Cha Juyong glared at him, rage burning in his eyes. Cha Kangryong laughed again. He looked forward to their next meeting. In the carpentry workshop, Ma Jiam was finishing his assigned labor. Sawdust floated through the air. Another inmate stopped beside him. The toolbox in his hand slipped and fell. A nail rolled to Ma Jiam's feet. His heart hammered against his ribs. Lee Jian-min, convicted of robbery and arson, grinned and greeted him that IT was their first meeting since middle school graduation. Ma Jiam, of course, remembered Lee Jian-min, the devil he used to know. In fact, Lee Jian-min had always wanted to ask him something. The news said Ma Jiam killed 7 people. Was that really true? As far as Lee Jian-min remembered, Ma Jiam had always been a straight-A student. The supervising guard snapped at them to stop chatting and get back to work. When Ma Jiam snapped back to reality, he frowned. In his agitation, he had accidentally cut his hand. Back in his cell, Cha Juyong began to think. From now on, his only goal in life was to kill his father. The problem was, he didn't know where to begin. The other inmates were complaining about the food. All they wanted was a slice of pizza. Cha Juyong fell into thought. Then he called over a patrolling guard. He told him to bring him pizza. The near-taunting tone got him dragged outside immediately. Yet not long after, the inmates were actually eating pizza. They thanked Cha Juyong profusely, and Cha Juyong confirmed his suspicion, whether it was the warden or the lower guards. They treated him differently because he was Cha Kongryong's son, so he needed to test the limits of what he was allowed to do in this prison. As they devoured pizza, the inmates whispered about who Prince Cha really was. Only Ma Jiam sat in the corner, brooding. The next day, the inmates resumed their labor as usual. Lee Jianmin slipped again. A nail he had prepared in advance pierced straight into Ma Jiam. Ma Jiam turned, eyes dark, glaring at him. "What the hell are you doing?" A burly inmate chuckled. "That's strange. Didn't you say the serial killer was your underling?" He'd been looking forward to seeing something impressive. But now it seemed Lee Jianmin's claim of being a notorious local thug was nothing but hot air. Lee Jianmin grinned wickedly. He wasn't bluffing that he and Ma Jiam shared plenty of fond memories. "Don't tell me you forgot. Fine, I'll help you remember." Ma Jiam's head was smashed into the table. Back in middle school, he'd been locked inside a storage cabinet, surrounded by piles of nails. He had begged Lee Jianmin to let him out, but that had only been the beginning of the game. Lee Jianmin had taken a hammer and driven the nails deeper into the cabinet door, one by one. He leaned close. "Starting to come back to you now?" The other inmates watched, practically enjoying the show. Lee Jianmin still didn't believe Ma Jiam had killed 7 people, but he grabbed a nail and swung at him. In the next instant, his wrist was locked in an iron grip. Ma Jiam's voice dropped to ice. "Want me to show you how I kill?" The supervising guard snapped at them to stop the vagrancy and get back to work. Lee Jianmin returned to his station, but shot him a vicious glare. In his eyes, Ma Jiam was nothing but a doormat. That night in the cell, Cha Juyong thanked Ma Jiam. If he hadn't been stopped that day, he would have added another 10 years to his sentence. And then he'd never get the chance to kill his father. He would return that favor someday. Late that night, the supervising guard claimed he had urgent business. He asked Ma Jiam to clean up the carpentry workshop. A moth landed on the workbench. Ma Jiam stared at it, and the memories came flooding back. Lee Jianmin had been the first friend Ma Jiam ever made. But the kid who collected insects was nothing but a social pariah in everyone else's eyes. Classmates would laugh and ask if he caught bugs just to eat them. Every time, Ma Jiam, then the class president, would step in and smooth things over. Yet somewhere along the way, Lee Jianmin felt the distance between them growing. After they were assigned to different classes the following year, they barely crossed paths. One day, Ma Jiam overheard whispers in the hallway. The school heavies have picked Lee Jianmin as their new toy. They just dragged him into the storage room. Ma Jiam rushed there immediately, but Lee Jianmin appeared behind him instead. He shoved Ma Jiam into a cabinet and slammed the door shut. The truth was, Lee Jianmin wanted in with the very gang that had bullied him. The price of admission, his most precious insect. And once he caught it alive, it naturally had to become a piece of his collection. Now, in the carpentry workshop, Lee Jianmin stood there again. He caught the moth and said coldly, "Everyone loves butterflies. Nobody likes moths. That was me back then, and all of it was your fault." Ma Jiam froze. All this time, Lee Jianmin had believed Ma Jiam only pretended to care, while secretly pulling away and betraying him. In the eyes of the world, Ma Jiam was the butterfly everyone adored, and Lee Jianmin was the disgusting moth. Once he realized that, the thought ate him alive day after day. Ma Jiam trembled with rage. "Do you hear yourself? That's a persecution complex." And because of all that, he eventually became the man who killed 7 people. Several inmates rushed in and slammed Ma Jiam to the ground, pinning him down. Lee Jianmin had already greased the guards. The real show was just getting started. He was going to mount Ma Jiam as a specimen all over again. This time, the cabinet was crawling with his own insects. He couldn't wait to see how Ma Jiam and his little bug phobia would handle that. Insects swarmed over his body, but Ma Jiam clenched his teeth and didn't make a sound. The big inmate frowned. "You sure about this? The guy's in here for murder." Lee Jianmin didn't even blink. If anything, the big inmate liked that kind of crazy. "Let's give everyone a show," Lee Jianmin sneered. "And hear what Ma Jiam sounds like when he breaks." A calm voice cut through the room. "Break how?" Cha Juyong stepped forward. "I'm curious what yours would sound like. Maybe like this?" One inmate charged him without hesitation. Too slow. Too weak. One kick sent the attacker crashing straight into the cabinet. Cha Juyong didn't even look back. Watch closely. We're even. Being dragged to the carpentry workshop after lights out had already smelled wrong. That's why Cha Juyong intercepted the patrol guard earlier. He didn't ask, but he told him to unlock the cell. That's how he ended up here. Lee Jianmin felt something bitter twist in his gut. Envy. Ma Jiam had someone like that in his corner. The big inmate had heard about this new troublemaker shaking up the prison. He respected men who stood on loyalty. So, he said with a grin. "You want to run with me?" In the next second, his body was flipped hard onto the floor. Cha Juyong didn't need trash like that as a friend. He shot a cold look at the blonde and asked why he went that far with Ma Jiam. Lee Jianmin snapped. "Are you kidding me? That traitor made my life hell. He acted like I was his only childhood friend. But behind my back, he was a snake in the grass. So if you're sticking close to Ma Jiam, you better watch your back too." The big inmate scrambled up and locked Cha Juyong in a chokehold. The guy was ridiculously strong, but Cha Juyong twisted his fingers until something cracked, clean, brutal, and broke free. That was when Lee Jianmin lunged in with a knife. He wasn't just unstable, but he was a psychopath, plain and simple. Even the big inmate couldn't help admiring the kind of vicious nerve. Then suddenly, Ma Jiam wrapped an arm around the big inmate's neck from behind. Lee Jianmin hadn't expected him to escape the cabinet. Cha Juyong's earlier kick had shattered the lock. Once free, Ma Jiam drove a savage kick straight into Lee Jianmin. Things had almost gone sideways. Now Ma Jiam tightened his grip. Blood trickled down his forearm and stained his hand. The big inmate finally went limp. Ma Jiam turned his full attention to Lee Jianmin. The killing intent in his eyes sent Lee Jianmin stumbling backward. He dropped to his knees and started banging his head on the floor. I lost it, okay. I wasn't thinking. I'm trash, a screwed up piece of garbage. Just let me go." But Ma Jiam never believed Lee Jianmin was just crazy. His life had genuinely been wrecked by Lee Jianmin's selfish persecution complex. That was fact. Ma Jiam had once thought that after killing 7 people, one more wouldn't make a difference. But now, he realized he didn't hate him as much as he thought. Once upon a time, he had truly called him a friend. Lee Jianmin froze for a split second, then scoffed internally. What the hell was this idiot blabbering about? Sooner or later, he'd find a way to mount Ma Jiam as a specimen. Cha Juyong wasn't about to let that happen. One brutal kick sent Lee Jianmin into unconsciousness. The knife wound? Consider it even. Ma Jiam muttered a quiet thanks. Then someone else crouched down beside Lee Jianmin's body. The boss of Cell 23 demanded to know why he had left his room, even though Lee Jianmin was already out cold. The man's fists kept crashing into his face, all because he hadn't caught a cockroach fast enough earlier. Cha Juyong and Ma Jiam watched in stunned silence. Lee Jianmin's body convulsed under the blows. Filthy blood spattered across the warden's face. He grabbed Cha Juyong's shirt and wiped himself off with it. Then he twisted his mouth into a grin. "Am I clean now?" "No," Cha Juyong replied evenly. "Your face is still filthy." The boss of Cell 23 snapped and lunged at him. A guard suddenly barged in, yelling that once the work was done, everyone was to get back to their cells. The boss of Cell 23 locked eyes with Cha Juyong, hatred burning in his stare. He carved the number 7,199 into his memory. The next day, during yard time, every inmate from Cell 36 clustered around Cha Juyong. They all knew why. After Cha Juyong had snapped someone's arm on the yard, he'd become untouchable. Stay close to him, and nobody would dare start anything. Cha Juyong didn't care either way. He only needed to find the red flame dragon, a blue dragon tattoo traced with red blossoms. Anyone wearing that mark had to be found. They were all dogs of that damn gang. The problem was there were simply too many inmates. Kim Nam-myong eagerly offered help, claiming he had connections everywhere. Cha Juyong said bluntly he was hunting for bastards with tattoos. That evening, the prison played another anti-school violence education film. Cha Juyong sneered. Guys like that deserve to rot in prison for life. But Kim Nam-myong said not everyone behind bars was pure evil. Long ago, there'd been a legendary tteokbokki shop in his neighborhood. Kim Nam-myong used to be a regular there. Then one day, the son of a local congressman showed up. A maniac who did whatever he wanted because his daddy had power. Just because the rice cakes didn't suit his taste, he trashed the place. And in that moment, Kim Nam-myong stepped in. As captain of the Migo crew, he wiped the floor with them, becoming the Migo hero who protected that tteokbokki shop. Still, he ended up in prison because of that lunatic who only knew how to hide behind his father. The other inmates scoffed. There he goes again. Everyone knew Kim Nam-myong's nickname, King of Tall Tales. Rumor said he'd even been beaten and transferred for talking too much. But Cha Juyong didn't think he looked like a liar. In nature, aphids feed ants sugar, and ants protect them in return. That was Kim Nam-myong's relationship with street punks. And living like that taught him one thing. The one who truly ran Cell 36, Cha Juyong, seemed to like him. If he became Cha Juyong's right-hand man, the rest of his sentence would be a walk in the park. Thinking he'd already won at life, he grinned like an idiot while turning soil during labor duty. Then a shovelful of dirt accidentally splashed onto the boss of Cell 23. Kim Nam-myong's heart dropped. Miserable memories flashed through his mind. He'd run into his former cell boss again. A sick, do-or-die germaphobe, a demon in human skin. He couldn't understand why that monster was here. The boss of Cell 23 snarled, "Is my face clean now?" Kim Na-myong could only answer, "Super clean." The boss decided to let him off this time, but the insecticide spray, that was inevitable. The corrosive liquid instantly burned Kim Na-myong's eyes, forcing tears to stream down his face. He clawed at his skin, desperately rubbing dirt across it to ease the sting. The boss of Cell 23 suddenly had a favor to ask Kim Na-myong. He had worked so hard to stay clean, and yet that damned inmate, number 7199, had called him dirty. The boss of Cell 23 invited Kim Na-myong to join him in a little disinfection. And there it was, etched across his body, a red flame dragon, a blue dragon adorned with crimson blossoms. Back in the cell, Cha Ju-yong had just finished 100 fingertip push-ups. He was still obsessing over where that cursed dragon tattoo might be hiding. Kim Na-myong suddenly praised the angle of Cha Ju-yong's erector spiny and spinal alignment, calling it pure art. He handed him a cup of grape juice, perfect for post-workout recovery. Cha Ju-yong stared at the murky purple liquid in his hand. Calmly, he asked, "Where did whatever you mixed into this come from?" Kim Na-myong forced a smile, saying he bought it from the commissary machine. Offering juice out of nowhere was suspicious, no matter how you looked at it. The other inmates jeered, telling Kim Na-myong to take a sip first. A chill ran down his spine. The tables had turned. He was the one being tested. But the next second, Cha Ju-yong downed the juice in one gulp. "Big cleaning tomorrow, get ready." Kim Na-myong hadn't expected that at all. This time, he'd actually used real juice just to test Cha Ju-yong's trust. Late that night, Cha Ju-yong began sketching the red flame dragon. Kim Na-myong couldn't help asking, "Why do you trust me?" Given his usual behavior, trust wasn't something people gave him easily. Cha Ju-yong replied evenly, "Liars are usually intelligent, and someone as smart as you wouldn't lie without a reason to stand against me." The next day, word spread that officials from the Ministry of Justice were coming for inspection. The inmates began a full-scale cleanup. In the restroom, Kim Na-myong told the boss of Cell 23 he was washing his hands of it. The consequences were obvious. The boss of Cell 23 would never forgive 7199. If that was the case, he'd personally disinfect Kim Na-myong and Cha Ju-yong himself. That was when Cha Ju-yong walked in, asking what the two of them were doing in there. "You're filthy." Pinned against a urinal, Kim Na-myong realized he had bet on the right side. Moments earlier, he had confessed that someone had blackmailed him into poisoning Cha Ju-yong. "I'm a man of my word," Kim Na-myong had said. "I won't betray my friend, even if I have to pay for it." More importantly, the red flame dragon tattoo Cha Ju-yong was searching for was on the very man threatening him. Inside the restroom, Cha Ju-yong casually wiped his hands on the boss of Cell 23's clothes. That single gesture sent the man into a frenzy. He screamed that he'd kill Cha Ju-yong and melt him alive with corrosive chemicals. "You're loud," Cha Ju-yong said flatly. Then he slammed the boss of Cell 23 into the ground. Since the tattoo was on him, Cha Ju-yong no longer felt the slightest guilt about beating him senseless. The boss of Cell 23 had once been a rising star in the underground fighting circuit. His signature move was locking his opponent in a vicious leg triangle and squeezing until something snapped. A filthy tactic, one that didn't even allow the other side to raise a hand and surrender. But ever since someone used that same hold on him, no one had seen him pull it off again. The irony, the so-called prodigy who relied on dirty tricks to win, had developed a fatal weakness for a fighter, germophobia. Cha Ju-yong pressed him for answers about the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate, but the restroom floor was crawling with bacteria. "My skin's going to rot," the boss of Cell 23 roared. Cha Ju-yong scoffed. "You're still worried about germs at a time like this?" He was done wasting time. He dipped his hand into the urinal water. Shock therapy, prison style. That hand, slick with unknown liquid, moved toward the man's mouth. The next second, Cha Ju-yong's body jerked violently. The boss of Cell 23 caught his wrist. For the first time, Cha Ju-yong was pinned. Powerful legs locked around his torso like a hydraulic press. The man meant to crush his organs. Kim Na-myong hesitated. Should he step in? But something fell off. Cha Ju-yong had never been hugged by his father, except during training, those suffocating embraces disguised as lessons. Memories that made his blood run cold. Because of that, grappling on the ground felt as natural to him as breathing. A sickening crack burst from the boss of Cell 23's spine. Cha Ju-yong's gaze stayed calm. He wondered which would burst first, his own organs or the other man's backbone. Bones ground together with a nauseating scrape. The pain drove the man to flail wildly, begging for mercy. But surrender was never something Cha Ju-yong had learned. Despair washed over the boss of Cell 23. Around them, inmates continued cleaning as if nothing was happening. The restrained man had a funnel shoved into his mouth. Yet he still refused to talk about the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate, and that irritated Cha Ju-yong more than anything. Cha Juyong wasn't exactly thrilled about doing this. But for someone as pathologically germophobic as the boss of Cell 23, it was the most devastating psychological blow possible. As one of the lowest-ranking members of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate, the boss of Cell 23 didn't know much. In the end, he couldn't endure the torment and confessed. Only then did Cha Juyong understand why his scumbag father had trained him so brutally since childhood, to force his awakening earlier than anyone else. The boss of Cell 23 actually thought Cha Juyong wanted in. He smirked. Behave from now on. Maybe I'll be generous enough to recommend you to the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. Cha Juyong let out a cold laugh. His hand shot out and clamped around the man's throat. Sure, he had already confessed, but Cha Juyong still didn't like his face, so another beating was mandatory. Afterward, Cha Juyong returned to the general cleanup with the others. He would personally wipe every member of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate off the map. There were countless tattooed inmates in juvenile prison. Kim Nam-myong asked, "Don't members of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate share anything in common?" That reminded Cha Juyong. Both men he'd taken down were cell leaders. In that case, he just needed to identify every cell leader. But Kim Nam-myong shook his head. That wouldn't be necessary. Next week, there would be a gathering attended by every cell leader. Officially, it was a quarterly meetup to strengthen bonds. In reality, it was where illegal dealings and power exchanges took place inside prison. Among inmates, it had a simpler name, the Crime Summit. Kim Nam-myong warned Cha Juyong to be careful. After all, this place gathered the most vicious criminals in the country. Those attending the Crime Summit were the most dangerous among them. Their influence rivaled that of major crime syndicates. A week later, the summit convened as scheduled. Word had already spread that Park Young-chan and the so-called Clean Freak had been taken out by some guy named Cha Juyong. That level of audacity didn't sit well with the other cell leaders. Then the heavy doors slowly creaked open. Cha Juyong snapped the iron pry bar at the entrance in half. In a blur, he charged straight toward the cell leader bearing the red flame dragon tattoo. He intended to wipe out every seed of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. The other cell leaders watched, bewildered. Cha Juyong beckoned the tattooed leader forward. The man refused coldly. Cell leaders were allowed to use violence under the banner of maintaining order, but only with proper justification. The three leaders Cha Juyong had defeated recently all had direct conflicts with him. Park Do-hwan referred to that prerequisite as having a legitimate cause, and he had no intention of indulging in a meaningless fight without one. If Cha Juyong insisted on acting recklessly and disrupting the prison's balance, the other leaders wouldn't let it slide. But this reckless display wasn't meant to start a war. It was a test. Anyone who acted without cause would immediately become a target. Park Do-hwan could tell Cha Juyong had never intended to truly strike first. He sensed the hostility Cha Juyong harbored toward the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. Even so, he found that arrogance bordering on the pathetic. With the host stepping forward, the Crime Summit officially began. Aside from the three leaders Cha Juyong had already taken down, everyone else was present. By now, Cha Juyong had become the new cell leader of Cell 36. He counted roughly 15 leaders gathered at the Crime Summit. Aside from Park Do-hwan, he couldn't immediately spot anyone with a red flame dragon tattoo. Inside the prison, any profit-driven operation run by cell leaders was collectively known as a racket. A portion of each racket's revenue had to be kicked up to the warden. The host announced that one racket had yet to pay its seasonal cut. It belonged to Park Do-hwan. He smiled faintly. Just an oversight. It'll be settled before the day ends. A white-haired cell leader suddenly brought up a rumor circulating lately. The casino that prided itself on integrity and high-stakes fairness was allegedly rigged from top to bottom. Silence swallowed the room. Park Do-hwan chuckled. Everyone knows what happens to people who accuse my place of cheating. If it's really fixed, you're free to deal with me however you want. After the host wrapped up a few final matters, the summit adjourned. Park Do-hwan's casino operated out of the automotive repair vocational hall. Casino specialist Chi Eun-ho asked, "First time here? Then I recommend starting with our simplest investment game." Cha Juyong smirked. Dragging this out would only make it boring. Park Do-hwan had insisted that violence required justification, so Cha Juyong would create that justification himself. With a single punch, he smashed the gambling rig. A concealed magnet dropped onto the floor. His voice turned ice cold. "You're just a bunch of cheap hustlers." The public believed juvenile prison was a tightly monitored facility meant to reform young offenders. But ever since the 26th warden, John Chang-hee, took office, it had become a breeding ground for crime. The prison's true economy revolved around these rackets. Cell leaders funneled part of their profits to Warden John Chang-hee. In return, they received privileges and freedoms ordinary inmates could never imagine. Of all the rackets, the casino was the most addictive. Once inmates lost all their chips, they always believed the next round would turn everything around. That was when Park Do-hwan offered them a way out. All it took was signing a marker, and they could walk away with a fresh stack of chips. Addicted gamblers would do anything when cornered. The moment Cha Ju-young exposed the magnet inside the dice cup, the gambling den erupted into chaos. But the dealer, Chi Eun-ho, scoffed. That's not a magnet. That bead just keeps the cup balanced. He pulled out a magnet to prove it. Cha Ju-young held the bead close, and it dropped without resistance. Chi Eun-ho tested it against other metal objects, showing the magnet worked perfectly. The other inmates burst out laughing at 71.99, asking if he was losing his damn mind. Chi Eun-ho brought out 2 monkey tokens and prepared to resume the game. From a distance, Park Do-hwan shot Cha Ju-young a sidelong glance. There was something unreadable in his eyes. Cha Ju-young's money vanished quickly. He couldn't figure it out. The odds seemed almost even. It felt like nothing more than bad luck. Chi Eun-ho asked, "Got any chips left?" Cha Ju-young searched his pockets and tossed out nothing but a scrap of paper. Another inmate nearby had also lost everything. Furious, he lashed out, "You're all frauds. I'm not giving you bastards another cent." His arm, raised with a screwdriver, was seized mid-swing. Park Do-hwan's voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. "Funny, you weren't complaining when you were winning. Got proof we rigged it?" The inmate losing his shit had no proof, just a gut feeling the odds were off. Park Do-hwan told him to stop causing a scene and disturbing the other gamblers. As he said it, his eyes shifted slightly, heavy with implication. After losing every last chip without uncovering evidence of cheating, Cha Ju-young returned to his cell. Exactly as planned. The other 2 pulled out equipment they had swiped from the gambling den. Cha Ju-young had only been there to draw attention. That gave Kim Na-myung and Ma Jae-um the opening they needed. If Park Do-hwan's casino was rigged, the flaw had to be in the cards. Meanwhile, Park Do-hwan was dealing with the inmate who caused trouble earlier. No amount of apologies could save him now. After a burst of agonized screams, a shadow approached. Chi Eun-ho apologized to Park Do-hwan, saying Cha Ju-young from his table had stirred things up. Park Do-hwan waved it off. "Not your fault. Just keep the racket running smoothly." He didn't know why Cha Ju-young harbored such hostility toward the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. But if Cha Ju-young tried anything again, he wouldn't hesitate to send him straight to hell. Back in cell 36, Kim Na-myung finally made a discovery. On the backs of the casino cards were tiny dots of varying sizes. By reading the pattern on the back, the dealer could predict the face of the card. Cha Ju-young had finally found his justification. Now it was a matter of who would send whom to hell first. Any inmate who would sign a marker at the casino would find someone waiting outside the prison gates upon release, because that marker was actually an organ donation consent form. Healthy O-type organs. They've been waiting for those for a long time. It turned out Park Do-hwan also served as a middleman in the organ trade. The organ broker warned him, though, walk long enough in the dark, and sooner or later, you meet a ghost. If things went south, the warden could wash his hands clean. Park Do-hwan would be left holding the bag. But Park Do-hwan didn't care. Even in the worst-case scenario, money could fix anything in this world. Meanwhile, Cha Ju-young, armed with evidence that could cost Park Do-hwan his head, decided to head straight to the gambling den that very night. His plan was simple. Sit at the table. Expose the rigging in front of everyone. Send Park Do-hwan to the gallows. But Park Do-hwan had already been waiting for him. This time, he would sit down at the table personally. Cha Ju-young didn't know what he was scheming, but that saved him the trouble of tracking him down. The head of the casino, stepping into the game, instantly drew every eye in the room. Cha Ju-young chose a card game this time. The dealer suggested a simple matching game. Flip 2 cards with the same number, and you get to continue. Miss the match, and it's your opponent's turn. The key to the game was remembering the position of every card revealed. Anyone aware of the hidden markings held a decisive advantage. Anyone who wasn't would be crushed. What caught Cha Ju-young off guard was this. There were no markings on the backs of the cards. Kim Na-myung frowned. Are they just too small to see? Ma Jae-um shook his head. No, there's nothing there. Park Do-hwan let out a strange laugh. Our casino uses premium cards airshipped from overseas. If you're not familiar with traditional casino games, you can always start with something simple, like Go Fish. Kim Na-myung and Ma Jae-um's attempt to steal the cards had already been noticed. Cha Ju-young had just lost his leverage. Park Do-hwan casually placed a thick stack of cash on the table. Cha Ju-young, however, hadn't brought a dime. Seeing that, the dealer once again produced the organ donation consent form. Each organ was listed with a different price. When Cha Ju-young remained silent, Park Do-hwan smirked. What's wrong? Scared. Kim Na-myung and Ma Jae-um understood. This game had to be rigged too. He still had time to back out. No bet had been locked in yet. But the next second, every inmate in the room froze. Because Cha Ju-young, that lunatic, was betting every inch of his own flesh. Kim Na Myong and Ma Jiam had no idea what he was thinking. He knew the game was rigged, yet he was wagering every single organ in his body. The matching game officially began. Cha Juyong flipped first. 8 of spades, 9 of hearts. No match. Park Do-hwan's turn, he flipped the 9 of clubs. All he had to do was take the 9 of hearts Cha Juyong had just revealed to complete the pair. The other inmates marveled at Park Do-hwan's luck. But inside the game, he knew better. This wasn't luck. He had memorized the position of every single card. Before the match even started, he had already coordinated everything with the dealer. It was a method of cheating that left behind no physical evidence. The opponent could do nothing but sit there and watch themselves get bled dry. To Park Do-hwan, it was almost pitiful. There was a time he believed his father was the most dependable man in the world. He used to admire the man who came home with tired but honest hands. But it had all been an illusion. The moment his father stepped into a casino, everything changed. He racked up 500 million in loan shark debt. Like a fool, he never realized the machines had been rigged from the start. Park Do-hwan refused to be that fool. He chose to become the predator, not the prey. And right now, Cha Juyong was at a crushing disadvantage. The other inmates burst into laughter. Don't start crying when they carve you open. Cha Juyong simply told them to watch closely. He had already cracked the scam behind this game. 2 queens in a row, then 2 5s. Even with a lucky streak, catching up to Park Do-hwan's 16 cards should have been impossible. But Cha Juyong's pace kept accelerating. Not a single mistake. Every flip landed clean. Park Do-hwan couldn't comprehend what was happening. The card positions were supposed to be known only to him and the dealer. Yet the dealer flashed him a strange smile. Earlier that night, after closing hours, Chi Eun-ho noticed a scrap of paper on the casino floor. Cha Juyong had left it there deliberately, timed out a location. Chi Eun-ho showed up exactly on time. Cha Juyong told him he'd discovered the flaw in the deck. He also knew the casino would switch to clean, unmarked cards once the theft was discovered. That was why he approached Chi Eun-ho. He intended to save him. The dealers worked for Park Do-hwan because they owed him money. Their loans were backed by their own organs. Help expose the scam, and Cha Juyong promised to clear Chi Eun-ho's debt. But Chi Eun-ho didn't want to risk his life on that. Cha Juyong asked him one question. Could he truly pay off Park Do-hwan before release? Failed within a week, and everyone knew what awaited Chi Eun-ho the day he walked free. No one wants their first breath of freedom to be taken on a cold operating table. What Cha Juyong needed from Chi Eun-ho was simple. Expose the casino's rigging in front of everyone. After clearing the board in one sweeping run, Cha Juyong laughed. So was it just luck? Or did I coordinate with an expert and memorize every single card position in advance? Before the echo of his words faded, the entire room erupted 8T that moment. Chi Eun-ho declared that every game in the casino had been rigged from the start. He could name every single cheating method used in each game. Instantly, the inmates turned on the casino boss. Park Do-hwan barked at them to cut the bullshit. The next second, Cha Juyong's fist slammed him to the floor. That justification was more than enough. Park Do-hwan had once sworn that if his casino was ever proven rigged, he would submit to the judgment of the other cell leaders. So Cha Juyong decided to honor that promise by executing him. But Park Do-hwan moved first, launching Cha Juyong backward with a brutal punch. He would make the traitorous dealer pay before anything else. The other dealers quietly tried to slip away with evidence of the scam. Park Do-hwan smashed Chi Eun-ho into the ground. Cha Juyong immediately charged, only for Park Do-hwan to hurl Chi Eun-ho straight at him. Caught off guard, Cha Juyong was forced back again. Park Do-hwan followed up with a barrage of punches. The inmates watched in stunned silence. Then suddenly, Cha Juyong vanished. Park Do-hwan thought he had fled. A heartbeat later, Cha Juyong appeared behind him. Park Do-hwan was blasted forward by overwhelming force. Cha Juyong doesn't run, and he doesn't let his prey run either. Park Do-hwan replied coldly that he would never abandon his money and flee alone. But after trading blows, Cha Juyong realized something. Park Do-hwan didn't actually know how to fight. Just as Cha Juyong moved in to finish him, Park Do-hwan staggered back and asked, "Does fighting really matter that much?" The next instant he lunged, exploiting Cha Juyong's split-second opening. Park Do-hwan pivoted and gathered power, then drove a full-force punch that sent Cha Juyong flying. Park Do-hwan had always despised men who relied on brute strength alone. Cha Juyong slammed shoulder first into a parked car. The inmates hadn't expected that kind of power from him. He calmly stated that what just happened was merely a minor interruption. There was absolutely nothing wrong with his casino. Then Cha Juyong spoke again. There was a trace of madness in his voice. The truth was, he had never needed justification in the first place. A casino was meant for games, after all, and now he wanted to play hide-and-seek with Park Do-hwan, the kind where whoever gets caught dies. Everything Park Do-hwan had built was rooted in that casino, so running was never an option for him. But Cha Juyong found it strange. How was Park Do-won still failing to grasp the situation? Everything you call achievement is about to turn to dust. Hide and seek is boring. So Cha Juyong decided to switch games, dice. He rolled a 3. That meant Park Do-won would take 3 punches. Park Do-won scoffed. You think this childish joke can break me? I'm not some muscle-headed brute like you. Cha Juyong ignored him. He rolled again. For the first time, Park Do-won felt a jolt of unease. Cha Juyong spoke coldly. That brilliant brain of yours doesn't seem to be bringing you much luck. Before Park Do-won could keep talking, Cha Juyong drove 6 crushing punches into him. Park Do-won's vision blurred as memories began flashing before his eyes. Years ago, he had approached a recruiter from the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. He brought a large sum of money, hoping to buy his way in. He wanted money to burn, but the recruiter valued men who didn't fear death more than cash. Before the recruiter could even finish his sentence, Park Do-won snatched the sashimi knife from his hand. For money, he was willing to give up anything. He was insane enough to drag the blade across his own throat. That act proved he had what it took to join the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. After joining, he voluntarily requested assignment to a juvenile detention center. And now, he was shoving past inmates in a desperate attempt to escape. After all, the evidence of rigging had already been destroyed outside. Park Do-won knew that without justification, Cha Juyong would soon become a target for the other cell leaders. But Ma Jiam returned with the evidence. The casino's special rigging devices and stacks of cash were scattered across the floor. Ma Jiam made sure every inmate saw them clearly. These were the very items the fleeing dealers had tried to smuggle out. Park Do-won still tried to shield the money he had clawed together. But Cha Juyong's performance wasn't over. He doused Park Do-won in gasoline. He called the final game electrical endurance testing. He had already said he would turn everything Park Do-won built into ashes. The inmates hadn't expected Cha Juyong to go that far. Overwhelmed by fear, Park Do-won blacked out on the spot. The other inmates snapped out of it and rushed for the scattered cash. The white-haired cell leader had long known Park Do-won was rigging games. And just like that, Park Do-won lost every privilege he had in prison. A year and 2 months later, he was finally released from prison. The organ trafficker was already waiting for him outside, holding the traditional block of tofu. Park Do-won claimed he would restart everything from scratch. But before that, the organ trafficker demanded repayment of the debt. The money he had borrowed, with interest, totaled 1.2 billion won. Unable to pay, Park Do-won would end up gutted for parts, just like everyone else. The timeline snapped back to the present. Cha Juyong had already crushed 3 seeds of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate. Just as he was considering who to target next, he noticed a stranger inside cell 36. The white-haired cell leader smiled. So this is the girl from the car accident? Before the words even left his mouth, Cha Juyong was already in front of him. He clamped a hand over the man's mouth and ordered someone to bring a pillow. That way, the screams wouldn't echo down the corridor. The white-haired cell leader had always found prison unbearably dull. During council meetings, he would pass the time by counting the obscenities scratched into the walls by former inmates. He craved something entertaining. He craved the rush, the dopamine spike. And then Cha Juyong appeared. That reckless, vicious aura of his was unforgettable. The white-haired cell leader felt his dopamine surge to explosive levels. But with his mouth pinned shut, he couldn't explain a thing. Cha Juyong's fist was about to come down when the white-haired cell leader raised his sketch of the red flame dragon in front of him. He had come to help Cha Juyong. With a sharp kick, he broke free from Cha Juyong's hold. He had already realized Cha Juyong was searching for the dragon tattoo. Before he could speak, he needed to clear up the misunderstanding. He had never intended to use the photo for anything that IT had simply fallen out when he opened a sketchbook. The white-haired cell leader genuinely wanted to help Cha Juyong wipe out every last one of those dragons. Cha Juyong, however, told him to piss off without a second thought. The white-haired cell leader smiled faintly. You're slower than I expected. As a cell leader, he had the freedom to fight anyone inside the prison. But stirring up chaos recklessly could also get him quietly eliminated by the other leaders. The juvenile detention center housed far more dangerous people than Cha Juyong realized. Even so, you're still refusing me? Despite that, Cha Juyong couldn't bring himself to trust someone who appeared out of nowhere offering help. There was no clear benefit in this for the white-haired cell leader. So Cha Juyong bluntly asked what he was really after. The white-haired cell leader thought it over carefully, and in the end, only one answer surfaced: dopamine. The next day, a group of Christian missionaries arrived at the juvenile detention center. The inmates, who hadn't seen a woman in ages, grew visibly restless. A banner at the entrance read, Byunggung Church. For a split second, Cha Juyong's gaze froze. Back then, he used to hide in a small room inside that church. Not to pray, but to escape the piece of trash he called his father. Lee Diyun, who would sneak out of the orphanage, always managed to find him. The two of them each carried burdens they never spoke of. Back then, Eunha from the orphanage would come looking for Lee Yun on behalf of the nun. Afraid of being punished for sneaking out, Lee Yun would hide in the small room with Cha Juyong. And now, to Cha Juyong's surprise, Saint Eunha was standing among the missionary group. At lunchtime, the volunteers handing out boxed meals were visibly dissatisfied. The inmates were rude. Some of them even crossed the line with lewd remarks and catcalling. Meanwhile, the bulky cell leader was tearing up as he thanked them for the food. The missionaries assumed he must be Catholic, but after finishing the proper Catholic sign of the cross, he solemnly chanted, Namo Amit Ba. The missionaries froze in confusion. At that very moment, Cha Jiang was meeting Saint Eunha inside the small room. The three of them used to spend a lot of time together. Saint Eunha expressed her sorrow over De Yun's death and gently asked if Cha Juyong had been lonely lately. Even back in school, she would often invite him to hang out. But almost every time, he already had plans with Lee De-yun. Now she told him softly, "You're not alone. You still have me." Voices of the prison guards echoed from outside. They were heading off to grab their own lunches. Only then did Saint Eunha remember she still had meals left to distribute. Cha Juyong hoped that 3 years later, when he was finally released, he would still be able to see her. But Saint Eunha smiled and said she would be back next week. The church had decided to volunteer at the juvenile detention center every Sunday from now on. As she handed out the boxed meals, Saint Eunha treated every inmate with gentle kindness. The other volunteers, however, were visibly irritated by her subtle, almost flirtatious gestures. They whispered that the rumors about her checking into hotels with older men might actually be true. Hearing that, Cha Jiang froze mid-bite in the cafeteria. After lunch, the nun led everyone in prayer. The inmates looked bored out of their minds. But once the prayer ended, the nun announced that today, anyone could be absolved of their sins. Just for today, they were free. The girls began performing an energetic dance on stage. Some of the inmates were so worked up they nearly rushed off to the bathroom. When the performance ended, the girls returned to the changing room. The two inmates from earlier were now lurking outside the door, listening in. Grinning, they reached for the handle to peek inside. "What do you think you're doing?" Cha Juyong asked coldly. The next second, a fist cut through the air. The two voyeurs were knocked flat with a single strike. But it wasn't Cha Juyong who threw the punch. The bulky cell leader spoke solemnly. The seventh commandment, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." God will not forgive such disrespect. The girls inside the changing room noticed the commotion outside. Saint Eunha stepped out and asked Cha Juyong what was going on. Then she suddenly looked as if she had seen something horrifying. Trembling, she hid behind Cha Juyong. A week later, the church returned to the detention center. At the same time, inside the donation storage warehouse, Cha Juyong was already exhausted from hauling supplies. He frowned at the sight of 3 inmates approaching with knives in hand. Without a word, they lunged at him. Cha Juyong casually lifted a crate of bottled water and blocked the attack. Then he swung the punctured case, spraying water across the 3 attackers. It was obvious to him they weren't the masterminds. He subdued them in seconds. "Who sent you?" he demanded coldly. Hearing the noise, a guard pushed open the warehouse door. In a sudden beam of light, Cha Juyong realized Saint Eunha was inside the warehouse as well. Her coat lay scattered on the floor. Shaking, she raised a finger and pointed at him. She told the guard she had been harassed. Cha Juyong was thrown back into solitary confinement, 10 days this time. The guards couldn't protect him anymore. The isolation room was equipped with surveillance cameras from the Ministry of Justice. Cha Juyong finally figured out why Saint Eunha had lied. Meanwhile, in the prison parking lot, Saint Eunha was meeting with Namgung Yosef. It turned out she had a long history of running honey traps on unsuspecting men, and Namgung Yosef had always followed behind her, calling himself a judge who punished heretics. Now, he intended to pass judgment on Cha Juyong through her. Inside solitary confinement, Cha Juyong analyzed the situation calmly. The knife attack had only been a distraction. The real plan was to frame him for rape using Saint Eunha. But at the very last second, something inside her faltered. She changed her statement and told the guards that Cha Juyong had actually saved her. Even so, until the investigation was complete, everyone involved would be detained. Cha Juyong couldn't tell who had ordered her to do it, nor could he understand why she had changed her mind at the final moment. He asked the guard to call someone for him. Namgung Yosef was glaring at Saint Eunha, demanding to know why she had backed out. But she said she wanted to end the judgment. His voice turned icy. He reminded her that he still had those compromising videos of her. If she stopped cooperating like before, her mother would be the next one in danger. Finally snapping, Saint Eunha shouted that she would call the police and expose everything. Her words were cut off by a scream. Namgung Yosef looked at her as if she had been tainted by heresy. If she was corrupted, then he would purify her himself. At this hour, the prison parking lot was deserted. Just as he was about to make his move, Cha Juyong appeared, somehow having left solitary confinement. Namgung Yosef glanced at him and asked calmly if he could wait a moment. He had something to finish. Cha Juyong pressed the bus's door close button because he had something to finish as well. The person he had asked the guard to bring earlier was none other than the white-haired cell leader who had offered to help him. The man even joked that he envied Cha Juyong's private cell. Cha Juyong wasn't in the mood for jokes. If the white-haired cell leader wanted to team up and wipe out those dragons, then he needed to prove his worth first. The white-haired cell leader paused for a second, then asked what he should do. He looked almost thrilled, like he couldn't wait to raise hell. Inside the bus, Cha Juyong's voice turned cold as steel. Step away from her. Namgung Yosef only smiled shamelessly. This is merely a religious ritual. His massive frame crushed the surrounding seats, metal groaning under the pressure. Cha Juyong exploded forward. His fist slammed into Namgung Yosef with brutal force. You dare to do that to her? In Cha Juyong's eyes, that kind of sin deserved to be carved apart piece by piece. Yet even after taking several direct hits, Namgung Yosef didn't fall. Instead, he theatrically praised Cha Juyong's technique. It was the first time he'd met someone who could strike vital points so precisely, he wondered who had trained him. Cha Juyong drove another kick into him. None of your damn business. Even with a blow to the chest, Namgung Yosef barely flinched. I don't learn how to fight from mere mortals, he said coldly. My body has been blessed by God. A thunderous crash echoed through the bus. Saint Unha covered her mouth in disbelief. Namgung Yosef, self-proclaimed messenger of God, declared he would complete his judgment of the heretic. During a summer Bible camp, Saint Unha had once confided in others about her past. Her father's debts had torn her away from her mother. Her only wish was to live with her again one day. Namgung Yosef had attended that same camp. After hearing her story, he approached her privately and offered to erase the debt. In exchange, she would help him judge heretics running honey traps. If she refused, her mother would suffer. Now, he declared Cha Juyong the heretic who had corrupted her. The next second, Cha Juyong was slammed backward and hurled hard across the bus. In that same instant, something cracked against the back of Namgung Yosef's head. Saint Unha stood there, gripping an umbrella, trying to stop him. Namgung Yosef swung and slapped Saint Unha across the face. To him, she had truly fallen into heresy and needed to be purified. But suddenly, his body stiffened. A violent pain tore through him, stealing control from his limbs. Blood burst from his mouth. Cha Juyong frowned. Didn't he already know the answer? Every strike Namgung Yosef had taken was aimed at a vital point. Even a body blessed by God couldn't endure sustained internal damage forever. As for the injuries Cha Juyong himself had suffered, they were nothing compared to the pain Saint Unha had endured. He grabbed the cleaning supplies from the bus. For a rapist like Namgung Yosef, whether with his bare hands or the toxic chemicals, Cha Juyong intended to make him choke on it. Namgung Yosef ripped a bus seat free and hurled it at him. His fist came crashing in right after it. He was done pretending. The disgusting holy man act was over. The next second, his chest jolted violently again. The internal damage was catching up to him. Keep moving, Cha Juyong said coldly, and your organs will start collapsing. Their fists slammed into each other's faces at the same time. Namgung Yosef couldn't understand it. His punches should have hit harder. So why was Cha Juyong still standing? In the blink of an eye, they traded several more brutal blows. Namgung Yosef realized his body was nearing its limit. If that was the case, then he would seize Saint Unha and use her as a hostage. Cha Juyong scoffed. So much for a body blessed by God. In the end, you still need a hostage to crawl away. There was a significant difference in size between them. But compared to the monster he called a father, this was nothing. Namgung Yosef finally collapsed, yet he was still smiling, because he had recorded everything. Every honey trap he had run alongside Saint Unha. He was almost curious what expression Saint Unha's mother would make when she saw that footage. But before Namgung Yosef could revel in it, Cha Juyong began calmly listing the crimes no one had uncovered yet. 5 counts of rape, 9 counts of attempted rape, 4 counts of sexual assault. If you so much as touch her mother, Cha Juyong said, I'll drag every single one of those crimes into the open and burn you with them. At that moment, the white-haired cell leader let out a dramatic sigh. You two are disgustingly sweet. I'm standing here like a damn third wheel. Cha Juyong frowned. Why are you starting the engine? The white-haired cell leader, however, couldn't tell the gas pedal from the brake. So he slammed his foot down on one at random. Why didn't you tell me you were being threatened? He shot back. She hesitated, then asked how he had known. The answer was simple. Every time she wanted to speak but held back, she unconsciously twisted her hair. Cha Juyong clicked his tongue in frustration, but he should have noticed sooner. Don't ever do something that reckless again, he warned. At that moment, the white-haired cell leader let out a dramatic sigh. You two are disgustingly sweet. This single dog just took emotional damage. Cha Juyong frowned. Why are you starting the engine? The white-haired cell leader, however, couldn't tell the gas pedal from the brake, so he stepped on one at random. This is revenge for every single loner out there. All couples can go straight to hell. The bus roared forward, hurtling toward the prison wall. Meanwhile, Captain Zhou Jiangcan of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate was disposing of the corpses of rival gang members. Most crime syndicates preferred to erase evidence. The Heavenly Dragon Syndicate, however, preserved the bodies fresh for future reuse. One of the gangsters awaiting processing glared at them and spat a warning. The Heavenly Dragon Syndicate had grown so arrogant they were trampling even their allied factions. If they didn't stop soon, their downfall would be ugly. Zhou Jiangcan smirked. Then he can watch from hell. Back on the bus, Cha Juyong frowned. What the hell was the white-haired cell leader doing? After making sure Saint Unha was safe, Cha Juyong spun around. Are you insane? Cha Juyong told Saint Unha to head back before the nun started worrying. Just as they were about to smash into the wall, the white-haired cell leader yanked the steering wheel hard. The bus drifted sideways, scraping violently along the prison wall. After making sure Chun Unha was safe, Cha Juyong spun around. Are you insane? Run, the white-haired cell leader barked. That noise just brought every guard this way. Later, he explained the logic. With this stunt, everything could be pinned on Namgung Yosef. Having snuck out blind to surveillance, Yosef wouldn't be able to prove a thing. With matters settled, the white-haired cell leader prepared to leave. He flashed a wicked grin. You lovebirds enjoy your alone time. Cha Jiang told Chun Unha to head back before the nun started worrying. But she began rummaging through her pockets. I think this belongs with you. It was a small teddy bear keychain. Not long ago, the three of them had been messing around at a claw machine arcade. Only Lita Yun had managed to win anything. 3 bears in total. One for each of them. Lita Yun once said she had heard something. As long as you carried a keepsake, distance didn't matter. You'd still feel connected. And somehow, that bear looked more and more like her. While sorting through Lita Yun's belongings, Saint Unha found it. After handing the teddy bear to Cha Juyong, she knew it was time to leave. Saint Unha clearly had more she wanted to say, but the words never came out. Even at the end, she remained loyal to Cha Juyong. So she quietly hoped that when she found the courage to confess one day, the Yun wouldn't be angry with her. Back in solitary, Cha Juyong let out an exasperated sigh. The white-haired cell leader was actually jealous of his private cell, so he had stirred up trouble just to get himself thrown into solitary as well. Cha Juyong took the opportunity to ask how exactly he had managed to get him out earlier. The guards had clearly said the place was under surveillance, yet he had obtained a stun gun and uncovered Namgung Yosef's crimes. Cha Juyong was curious who he really was. The white-haired cell leader simply said it was a secret. After all, he had proven his worth. With that, Cha Juyong honored the agreement and decided to work with him. The white-haired cell leader immediately began knocking excitedly on the wall. All right, Cha Juyong said. So how exactly are you planning to help? Only steady breathing came from the next cell. Cha Juyong rubbed his temples. Did he seriously fall asleep? Meanwhile, Lu Haiyuan, the headhunter of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate, arrived deep in the mountains. Cha Gangryong's villa, Sky Pavilion, was located there. Lu Haiyuan found it strange. Why wouldn't the Syndicate's second-in-command live in a luxury tower downtown? At that very moment, Cha Gangryong finished his training session. Zhou Jiangcan stood nearby, pouring tea for him. After a brief exchange of greetings, Cha Gangryong asked Zhou Jiangcan what he had to report. The moment he heard it concerned his son, his gaze turned icy. Sky Pavilion was vast and imposing. Cha Gangryong stopped before the artificial lake and gestured for Zhou Jiangcan to continue. Zhou Jiangcan reported that ever since the young master entered juvenile detention, he had clashed with several cell leaders, and every time, the outcome was the same: total victory. He had crushed several of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate's seeds. His growth rate was unprecedented. Zhou Jiangcan admitted that the young master's level was astonishing. Even the one Lu Haiyuan had personally taken interest and had been defeated by him. They had assumed Cha Gangryong, as a father, would feel proud. Instead, Cha Gangryong felt only disappointment. He had expected his son to have blossomed by now, yet not even a bud had appeared. At best, Cha Jiang was merely a sapling trying to grow upward. The son of Cha Gangryong should be far more than that. If necessary, he would force the flower to bloom early. Meanwhile, inmates assigned to garbage duty grumbled bitterly. Some even muttered that they should just burn this rotten prison to the ground. From the side, cell leader number 37, Choi Yoon-jae, let out a cold laugh. Go ahead, he sneered. Try it. The others, however, were all talk. Watching these useless fools act bold irritated Choi Yoon-jae deeply. He had once beaten his own teacher into critical condition. just because the man wouldn't stop nagging. And now, he had beaten those loudmouthed punks senseless as well. An inmate from the same block reported Cha Juyong's activities to Choi Yoon-jae. Originally, he hadn't intended to concern himself with Cha Juyong, but Cha Juyong's growing arrogance was starting to grate on him. Inside cell 36, every inmate dropped to their knees to welcome their boss back. Nothing unusual had happened while Cha Juyong was away. That was when he noticed a newcomer in the cell. Kim Na-min explained that although the guy was huge, he was simple-minded, not a bad person. The guard soon announced that cell 36 had outdoor labor duty that afternoon. A poison goo is created by sealing countless venomous insects in a single pit and letting them devour one another. The last one standing becomes a creature of lethal toxicity. And juvenile detention was the breeding ground the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate used to raise such poison. Cha Gang-ryong intended for his son to swallow stronger and stronger venom. He had already released a particularly vicious specimen into the cage. It was a monster in human form. Choi Yoon-jae heard that Cha Juyong's cell had been assigned outdoor labor. He had long grown tired of Cha Juyong's overbearing attitude. Titles and formalities meant nothing to him. He would kill first and sort out the rest later. Not long after, Cha Juyong was seen collapsed in a corner, covered in blood. Kim Na-min and Ma Hyen froze in shock. Yet Cha Juyong quickly stood back up. "Relax, I just slipped." He muttered in annoyance about how hard it was to wash red paint out of clothes. The inmates of cell 36 returned from labor utterly exhausted. But on their way back, they spotted red stains again. "Why is there red paint here?" Kim Na-min wondered aloud. Cha Juyong's eyes sharpened. That wasn't paint. It was blood. In cell leader number 37, Choi Yoon-jae lay crumpled in a deserted corner, soaked in it. Cha Gang-ryong longed for the day his son would bloom. Yet he understood that before a flower blossoms, it is most vulnerable to withering. One careless misstep, and Cha Juyong would be uprooted entirely. That was why Cha Gang-ryong had introduced a venomous insect into the cage. And now, that poisonous creature had positioned itself beside his precious son. The new inmate had barely arrived, and cell leader number 37 was already lying bloodied in a corner. Whispers spread quickly. Who could have done it? Ma Hyen, however, sensed something off about the newcomer. During outdoor labor earlier, the newcomer had disappeared for a short while. When he returned, there had been a faint smear of blood on his shoe. Suddenly, Kim Na-min pointed at him with a shout. The man's body was covered in bruises and knife scars. Scratching his head, the newcomer said they were from fighting his dad. Watching from the side, Cha Juyong's expression slowly hardened. Back in school, during PE class, changing into gym clothes had always drawn whispers. His body, covered in scars, became a spectacle, followed by pitying stares. It had been a suffocating kind of humiliation. After labor, the inmates of cell 36 were rinsing off in the showers. Cha Juyong noticed the newcomer had no shampoo. He handed over his own bottle. "Are you pitying me?" the newcomer asked. Cha Juyong shot back. "Do I look like I'm in any position to pity anyone?" Their lives were both filthy and tragic. "Hurry up," Cha Juyong said flatly. "Finish and come out." Once the other inmates left, only Cha Juyong and the newcomer remained in the steamy bathroom. "Don't you think it's strange?" he asked coldly. Two strangers with identical scars. Before the newcomer could answer, Cha Juyong lunged and seized him by the throat. He knew this was no coincidence. Those scars were that man's handiwork. "Cha Gang-ryong sent you, didn't he?" Cha Juyong demanded. The newcomer said nothing, only stared back with a cold, predatory gaze. Cha Juyong tightened his grip. He would force the truth out of him if he had to. Years ago, Lu Haiyuan, a headhunter for the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate, had handpicked a group of promising children for Cha Gang-ryong. The syndicate itself had known nothing about it. That meant Cha Gang-ryong could dispose of them however he pleased to him. They were nothing but trash. What he needed were hounds, beasts that could tear prey apart. So he gave the order on the spot. Keep the big one, get rid of the rest. Lu Haiyuan had never expected that none of his carefully selected candidates would meet Cha Gang-ryong's standards. Then, without warning, something changed. The big one was suddenly clamped down on by another child, teeth buried deep into his neck. Cha Gang-ryong felt a flicker of satisfaction. Those eyes, savage, like a hunting dog's, were exactly what he had been searching for. He told the boy that from this day forward, he would call him father. Back in the present, under Cha Juyong's interrogation, the newcomer finally spoke in a low, icy tone. "I'm merely one of his chosen." Cha Juyong froze for a second. He had been wondering why the newcomer bore no red flame dragon tattoo. Now it made sense. The newcomer had never officially joined the syndicate. He had been raised personally by Cha Gang-ryong. Then why were you planted beside me? Cha Juyong pressed. Why help me eliminate the cell leader who wanted me dead? You had several chances to attack. Why didn't you? In a low voice, Cha Juyong demanded to know what Cha Gang-ryong had really sent him here for. The newcomer remained silent. Cha Juyong let out a frustrated breath. Then his grip tightened without warning. The newcomer's entire body was lifted clean off the ground. Cha Juyong slammed him against a locker and dragged him across it until he crashed into the wall. His fingers kept tightening. "Talk," he snarled. Even as darkness closed in and consciousness slipped away, the newcomer did not utter a single word. Cha Juyong knew the man had countless chances to fight back, yet he never once tried. He couldn't figure out what kind of move Cha Gangryong was making. In the days that followed, Cha Juyong kept watching him, even when other inmates accidentally dumped an entire tray of food over him. The newcomer remained polite, almost absurdly composed. But Cha Juyong understood one thing. Cha Gangryong never did anything without purpose. At that moment, Kim Na-min and Ma Jiam were chatting beside him. From a short distance away, the newcomer watched in silence. That night, the four of them were suddenly ordered to clear weeds behind the hill, supposedly because construction would begin the next day. Something about it didn't sit right with Cha Juyong. The sickle flashed cold in the tall grass. The newcomer suddenly asked Cha Juyong, "Are you close with Ma Jiam?" Before Cha Juyong could answer, the newcomer drove the blade deep into Ma Jiam's vitals. Seeing the thicker patch of grass, Kim Na-min moved over to help. A scream split the air. Cha Juyong spun toward the sound and sprinted. He was still a second too late. The newcomer looked at him coldly. "Now do you understand? Why father placed me at your side?" Under Cha Gangryong's training, the newcomer's teeth had become like a predator's. For father, he could tear apart anything. Cha Gangryong had given him 3 tasks. First, enter Cha Juyong's territory and remove external interference. Second, monitor Cha Juyong and identify the people closest to him. Third, kill them in front of him. All of it, the newcomer started coldly, was to make me stronger as his son. Cha Juyong finished the sentence for him. 2 other voices followed immediately after. For the first time, the newcomer's expression faltered. He was certain he had stabbed both of them deep into their vitals. Ma Jiam and Kim Na-min had prepared in advance, padding their torsos with thick strips of pig hide. Cha Juyong had been thinking about Cha Gangryong's objective all along. He kept asking himself just how far that bastard would go to strengthen his son. He hadn't expected Cha Gangryong to actually use such a revolting method again. A deep wave of disgust churned violently in his stomach. He drove a brutal punch into the newcomer, sending him flying. Get down there and call the guards. He ordered the other 2. He had already realized that everything happening here had been arranged by the warden under Cha Gangryong's instructions. In this place, nothing was ever accidental. Cha Juyong ordered someone to call the guards to deal with the newcomer. The newcomer had been abandoned by his parents since childhood. Even the orphanage cast him aside for his brooding temperament. Later, so-called friends sold him to traffickers. Even the traffickers had no use for a scrawny boy like him. Born with monstrous strength, he fought desperately and escaped. From that day on, he made a vow. As long as he would never be abandoned again, he would do anything. Eventually, like a stray dog, he was presented by Lu Haiyuan to Cha Gangryong. Lu Haiyuan once asked Zhou Jiangqin, the operations captain of the Heavenly Dragon Syndicate, which of Cha Gangryong's 2 sons would win. Zhou Jiangqin understood that both had been personally trained by their elder. At the start of a fight, their styles would inevitably mirror one another. Sure enough, every move Cha Juyong made was nearly identical to the newcomers. Raised under Cha Gangryong's brutal discipline, both now possessed formidable strength. Lu Haiyuan wondered if that meant they were evenly matched. The newcomer believed so as well. He drove another vicious punch toward Cha Juyong's abdomen. Catching the blow mid-strike, Cha Juyong realized they were fundamentally different. The newcomer tried to press the attack. Cha Juyong answered with a backhand punch that sent him staggering. They may have learned from the same man, but that didn't mean their strength was equal. Pinned against the wall and struck repeatedly, the newcomer's face twisted with frustration. He seized Cha Juyong's arms with both hands. Cha Juyong could see it clearly. Lacking the skill to win, the man resorted to brute force that IT wasn't enough. The next second, the newcomer lunged and sank his teeth viciously into Cha Juyong's fingers. Pain exploded through his hand. Cha Juyong kicked him away without hesitation. Technique and strength meant nothing to the newcomer. He obeyed only one command: kill Cha Juyong. In the blink of an eye, blood blurred his vision. Cha Juyong's hand followed immediately. "If you don't want to die painfully," Cha Juyong warned coldly, "don't bring up that disgusting bastard in front of me." After a relentless barrage of blows, the newcomer went still for a moment. Not far away, 2 knives lay quietly on the ground. Zhou Jiangqin had once judged that the orphan could never defeat the young master. But that was only true in a barehanded fight. If the orphan got hold of a weapon, the outcome might change. In an instant, a lock of Cha Juyong's hair was sliced clean off. "Your talent," his father once told him, is the blade. Raising a knife to fight was not optional. It was necessary. The scars covering the newcomer's body were carved into him during countless blade training sessions under Cha Gangryong. His swings were blindingly fast. Cha Jiang was forced back, crashing into a nearby toolbox used for clearing grass. The newcomer didn't care how strong Cha Juyong was, nor whether he was Cha Gangryong's biological son. Today, the newcomer would follow his father's command and kill Cha Juyong. Cha Juyong's voice turned ice cold. Didn't I already warn you? If you don't want to die miserably, don't mention that man in front of me. Do you really think, as his real son, I never learned the same blade work you did? A saw can rip a body apart piece by piece. You said father 4 times. So today, I'll cut you into 4 pieces. Japan's greatest swordsman was Miyamoto Musashi. He rose to fame after winning more than 60 duels without defeat. The sword style he wielded was Nido Ryu, the two-sword style. Nido Ryu was feared by countless swordsmen for its overwhelming killing power. In the blink of an eye, Cha Juyong's saw clashed repeatedly against the newcomer's twin blades. Cha Juyong recognized the technique instantly. It carried the signature of Nido Ryu, built around blistering speed. Combined with the oppressive pressure of dual wielding, it made the trajectory of each strike nearly impossible to predict. The newcomer's blades were far more dangerous than Cha Juyong had anticipated. Their weapons collided again with a thunderous metallic crash. The newcomer scoffed inwardly that a saw was nothing more than a tool for cutting wood. What he wielded was a sword tradition refined and passed down for centuries. It wasn't something that could be executed with a random saw. Since childhood, the newcomer had trained with the twin blades his father had given him. Abandoned by everyone else, he had long accepted Cha Gangryong as his true father. So even if Cha Gangryong ordered him to assassinate his own biological son, as a hunting hound, he would drive his fangs into Cha Juyong's throat without hesitation. Yet something felt wrong, and no matter how he looked at it, Cha Juyong seemed more like the hunter. Even the fiercest beasts would recoil before the newcomer's blades. But the killing intent in Cha Juyong's eyes belonged to a true predator. Raised under his father's blade training since childhood, he had carved one lesson into his heart. Focus on avoiding every lethal strike. Wait patiently for the opening. The instant your opponent reveals a flaw, drive the blade in with everything you have. Cha Gangryong had drilled it into him. Once you raise a blade, you must kill. Otherwise, that blade will pierce your own heart. The newcomer realized it too. Cha Juyong had been meeting his attacks head-on, waiting for the perfect opening. That wouldn't do. This strike had to end everything. In the next instant, the sound of flesh tearing split the air. Cha Juyong had been waiting for that wide, committed swing. If he had been holding a blade instead of a saw, the newcomer's head would already be rolling. Cha Gangryong's words echoed relentlessly in his mind. Once you raise a blade, you must kill. Cha Juyong's voice turned cold. A saw has its advantages as a weapon. Those jagged teeth can tear through flesh little by little. They force you to feel your skin peeled back and your bones split apart. They twist blood vessels and nerves together in ways a clean blade never could. Yet at that moment, the newcomer suddenly asked, "Do you have the guts? You've never killed before. Oh, you really believe you can kill me? Come on, kill me, or I'll slaughter everyone around you, and then carve your heart out." The next second, a deafening crash erupted between them. But the newcomer did not fall. Cha Juyong's saw suddenly snapped apart, but he hadn't needed to finish the job himself. The newcomer's wounds would kill him soon enough from blood loss. The newcomer couldn't understand what Cha Juyong was doing, because breaking the saw's teeth had been intentional. He couldn't comprehend why Cha Juyong hadn't simply killed him. Afterward, Cha Juyong went to the infirmary to have his wounds wrapped. From Ma Jiam, he learned that the newcomer was critically injured and had been rushed to a major hospital. And through this incident, Cha Juyong finally saw through Cha Gangryong's scheme. First, hurt the people around him to provoke his rage. Second, place him in mortal danger to cloud his judgment. Third, lure him into killing with his own hands. Cha Gangryong's true goal had always been the same: force his son to cross the line that separates man from monster. The newcomer had tried to provoke him with words at the very end. Instead, it only sharpened Cha Juyong's clarity. Even behind prison walls, Cha Juyong realized he was still being taught by Cha Gangryong. There was only one thing he would do exactly as his father intended: rule this hellhole. From this moment on, he would break free from Cha Gangryong's control. Meanwhile, no one knew where the ambulance was really taking the newcomer. In the past, he had watched his father discard failed hounds without hesitation. Terrified of being abandoned, the newcomer ripped the needle from his arm. He refused to return, only to be thrown away like the others. But no matter how hard he tried, the ambulance doors wouldn't budge. The next second, an icy chill spread through his vitals. Zhou Jiangcan spoke coldly. "A dog that tries to bite through its leash is executed on the spot." He asked if the newcomer had any last words. Instead, the newcomer thanked him, grateful to be killed before being cast aside. After disposing of the body, Zhou Jiangqian placed a call to Cha Gangriyong. When he heard that his son had still refused to kill, even at the end, Cha Gangriyong burst into laughter. Raising children never quite goes the way parents expect. He decided it was time to educate his son again. Just then, the juvenile prison called. The warden's voice exploded through the line. "Your son is tearing this place apart." Cha Gangriyong frowned, not yet understanding. Inside the prison, Cha Juyong was stirring up chaos everywhere he went. In one move, he had offended every cell leader. The warden told Cha Gangriyong, "I have unfortunate news. This time, your son might really die." Over a decade earlier, one winter, Cha Gangriyong had still been smuggling weapons with the Russian mafia. To avoid federal surveillance, he traveled to eastern Siberia for a secret exchange. But when he arrived at the meeting point, all that remained were mangled mafia corpses scattered across the snow. Then an adult brown bear lunged at him. In that instant, fear flooded every inch of his body, which made Cha Juyong wonder, where had that bearskin in their house come from? Cha Gangriyong answered in a low voice, "I killed it with my bare hands." Cha Juyong found it impossible to believe that a human could overpower such a beast unarmed. Cha Gangriyong told his son, "If you learn to use that properly, you'll be able to do it too." He intended to drill that ability into his soon-to-be high school son. It was the only method capable of breaking through the limits of the human species' transcendent heart. Cha Juyong understood. His father wanted him to grow stronger, but only within the safe boundaries he defined. But Cha Juyong would rather die than be manipulated like a pawn. And so he chose to create the one situation Cha Gangriyong despised most. Cha Juyong stuffed every cell leader's money into the washing machines. The other inmates immediately tried to seize him and drag him before their bosses. But those nobodies were never his real target. He told them to call every cell leader down. His arrogant tone set the entire room on fire. Unfortunately for them, they were far too weak. Cha Juyong dealt with them in moments. Soon, another wave of inmates flooded into the laundry room. But to Cha Juyong, trash was still trash, no matter how much it piled up. He wanted real danger. This wasn't even close. The white-haired accomplice who had helped him steal the money crawled out of a washing machine with a crooked grin. He knew the other cell leaders wouldn't sit back and let this slide. What exactly was Cha Juyong planning? And how did he expect to walk away from this? The unpredictability of it all drove the white-haired inmate nearly insane with curiosity. Cha Juyong walked out to the yard and waited. Before long, every cell leader arrived. Their money had all been stolen. If this continued, their businesses would collapse, unable to make the required payments. Kim Na-min and Ma Jiam had no idea what Cha Juyong was thinking, because he was about to challenge the strongest force in the entire prison. Cell leader number 1, Kim Myeoncheol, gave Cha Juyong a chance to explain himself. Cha Juyong answered calmly, "I don't need that." The other cell leaders immediately declared that the man disrupting order would be executed on the spot. The only method Cha Gangriyong had drilled into his son to surpass human limits was called Transcendent Heart. Transcendent for transcendence. Heart for emotion. IT meant using feeling itself to shatter one's limits. He had explained that it was a state that exponentially amplified most human abilities. And then he had slammed his fist into the ground. That had been Cha Gangriyong's final lesson. Now, as fists came crashing toward him, Cha Juyong let out a slow breath. Then, with a single strike, he smashed 2 charging cell leaders straight into the concrete. Everyone froze, because in an instant, Cha Juyong had dropped 2 cell leader level fighters. Even the white-haired accomplice couldn't help but gasp. He had been wondering how Cha Juyong planned to escape after stirring up this much chaos. But it turned out, escape had never been part of the plan. He intended to use the power his father had forced into him to break free from control. In 2003 America, an ordinary father once lifted an entire car with his bare hands to free his daughter, trapped beneath it. In 1979 North Korea, a common man driven by the desperate desire to escape dictatorship swam 12 hours through freezing waters. In 1732, an African tribal warrior kept swinging his spear for 47 seconds after his heart had stopped, wiping out the enemy clan before collapsing. From time to time, this world witnesses moments that shatter human limits. They are neither accidents nor miracles. They're the body responding to emotions that have swelled beyond control. Entering the state known as Transcendent Heart is the only way to surpass the limits of the human species. Right now, the emotion flooding Cha Juyong's heart was overwhelming rage toward Cha Gangriyong. He would rather die than rely on this ability, because to maintain the state, his father's face had to keep surfacing in his mind. The sheer disgust made him nauseous. Cell leader number 12, Ryu Hyunju barked, "What are you muttering about? Don't get so full of yourself." Having grown up alone, He found other people's laughter grating to his ears. He had only disciplined a few noisy brats, yet everyone branded him a monster. Cha Juyong threw a vicious punch. Ryu Hyunju was sent flying, slamming hard into the ground. Cha Juyong had no interest in anyone else's sob story. Cell leader number 19, Lee Jun-hyuk, blade in hand, had already aimed for his Achilles tendon. He loved the sound of tendons tearing and ligaments snapping. That exquisite noise made Lee Jun-hyuk tremble with excitement. Ever since childhood, his hypersensitivity to certain sounds had earned him the label of genius. And yet that genius was kicked flat by Cha Juyong. His blade shattered clean in two. Cha Juyong had no intention of wasting any more time than AS for cell leader number 7, Ryu Cheol. He would grant his wish. He was going to end this fight himself. Ryu Cheol had never lost in his life. To protect the people around him, winning had always been his only option. Today, he would learn what defeat felt like, because he was nowhere near Cha Juyong's level. The twin cell leaders, numbers 12 and 13, attacked immediately after him, even when they were nothing more than fiercely defiant infants. They could already read disgust in their mother's eyes. That icy stare slowly evolved into cruel abuse as time went on. Cha Juyong dropped the twins with a single strike, that he despised anyone bringing up family in front of him. From the rooftop, the white-haired accomplice watched it all unfold. He hadn't expected Cha Juyong to still be holding back. Cell leader number 17, Hong Se-jun, charged forward in excitement. He was a strange man who desired both men and women. Yet the so-called freak was now pinned flat against the ground by Cha Juyong. The last man let out a cold chuckle. Impressive, isn't it? Enough to earn proper courtesy from a heavenly dragon like me. Cha Juyong hadn't expected the final opponent to be someone from the Heavenly Dragon faction. Fine, then he would go all out. Sunlight pierced through the clouds and spilled down. Cha Juyong had already taken down 9 cell leaders, though it was slower than he would have liked. The scene was so absurd that even the warden wondered if he had somehow wandered onto a movie set. Right now, Cha Gangryong only cared about one thing, whether his son was safe. At that moment, Cha Juyong strode up to the warden with a savage glare. He snatched the phone straight from the man's hand. Then he greeted the father he hadn't spoken to in a long time. From the rooftop, the white-haired accomplice couldn't help applauding Cha Juyong's performance. After witnessing something this electrifying, he was worried he might never feel a dopamine rush like that again. At least not inside this prison. And when Cha Gangryong heard his son's voice, he spoke like any ordinary father, asking if Cha Juyong had been eating properly. Cha Juyong spoke casually. The food in prison was better than he'd expected. There was hot water, and they even had scheduled exercise. In fact, he felt more comfortable here than he ever had at home. He even thanked his father for the gift. It had at least made his otherwise stagnant days a little less boring. After a long silence, Cha Gangryong replied, "As long as you're doing well, that's enough for me." But then his tone hardened. He demanded to know why Cha Juyong had caused such a reckless disturbance. Cha Juyong had only done it to break free from the prison his father controlled. He already knew about that place. He told his father to enjoy the rest of his life before he came knocking. Afterward, the warden tore into the guards, asking what they were even good for. Dozens of them, and not one could stop a single inmate. The scale of the incident was too severe. The warden understood this prison could no longer contain Cha Juyong. There was only one option left: transfer him to that place. He didn't want to do it, though that he feared Cha Gangryong would lose his mind if he found out. After all, no parent in the world would willingly send their child somewhere like that. Back in the cell, Cha Juyong treated the other inmates to an extravagant meal. He gave his books to Kim Na-min. He told him that if he used his brain and studied properly, college might actually be within reach. Then he handed stationery and a notebook to Ma Jayam. He had noticed Ma Jayam always curled up in the corner, scribbling away. If that was the case, he might as well write a letter home. Kim Na-min frowned. "Why are you acting like you're writing your will?" Cha Juyong praised him. "You really do read people well." Just then, a guard arrived and told him to gather his belongings he had already packed. Cha Juyong still had business to take care of. Breaking into the big league was the fastest way. These past days hadn't been so dull, thanks to Kim Na-min and Ma Jayam. He hoped the next time they met, it would be outside prison walls. Kim Na-min told him to take care of himself. Ma Jayam laughed helplessly. "I've got 20 years left on my sentence that if you get bored, just get arrested again and come visit." Cha Gangryong, who had smashed the ceiling barehanded, was just as helpless. He felt his son didn't understand what it meant for a father to worry about his child. Cha Juyong couldn't afford to shatter the jar and run just yet. For the kind of insect that breaks out of the jar, what awaits is only a larger jar crawling with venomous creatures. The guard escorted Cha Juyong toward a certain destination. At this point, there was no need to keep secrets from him. The truth was this juvenile facility had another prison, one never disclosed to the public. Not long ago, Cha Jiang had been searching for a way to break free from his father's control. That was when the white-haired accomplice appeared with an interesting piece of information. This juvenile prison wasn't the only one. Beyond the forest stood another facility where those who caused real disasters were confined. The white-haired man had told him not to take the rumor seriously. It was just something he'd heard. But Cha Jiang asked him for a favor. Steal all the money the cell leaders kept on them, the cash meant for the warden. The guard leading Cha Jiang finally stopped walking. This was the place reserved for inmates too dangerous to control. Cha Jiang had already prepared himself for an all-out battle. Yet the inmates here looked painfully ordinary on the surface. Something about it felt wrong. The guard led him into the warden's office. The head of the second juvenile facility was named Ma Wenchang. As he stared at the aquarium he had meticulously built, a fully functioning ecosystem. He felt like a god who had created a world. The second prison system had been inspired by that very aquarium. Despite housing uncontrollable offenders, its annual incident rate was only 0.3%. Ma Wenchang asked Cha Jiang if he knew why. Cha Jiang replied coldly, "No." Ma continued that in an aquarium, many species of fish coexist in the same tank, yet they don't tear each other apart like creatures in the open sea. That's because there is an overwhelming apex predator inside, the shark. Its mere presence keeps the others alert and prevents pointless fighting. Ma Wenchang had reviewed the footage of Cha Jiang single-handedly defeating every cell leader in the first prison. He wanted Cha Jiang to become the new shark in his aquarium. Heavenly Dragon headhunter Yu Hei-won knew Ma Wenchang's background. He had once been a renowned criminological psychologist affiliated with an overseas association. Then one day, he abruptly returned to Korea to become a juvenile prison warden, shocking everyone. Even to the Heavenly Dragon, Ma Wenchang was a troublesome figure. Unlike other wardens, he couldn't be swayed with money or threats. Ma Wenchang only cared about the juvenile prison system he had constructed as a sociologist, a research framework known as the shark theory. Yu Hei-won found it absurd that a national-level correctional facility could harbor such secrets. She couldn't help but wonder what exactly the Korean government was doing. Yu Hei-won understood one thing clearly. This time, the young master was truly in danger. The ordinary inmates in the second facility were nothing more than small fish. The Wenchang wanted Cha Jiang to swim among them as a shark. Cha Jiang, however, had zero interest in the role. He ignored the warden and simply turned to leave. The warden's voice dropped. For a scholar, explaining one's theory to an audience that doesn't understand is the most exhilarating moment of all. In the next instant, Cha Jiang was slammed against the wall by an overwhelming force. Ma Wenchang decided he would make him understand personally. As the warden of the second juvenile facility, Ma Wenchang held dual U.S. Korean citizenship and graduated from an Ivy League university with a degree in social psychology. His research had earned recognition from American academic institutions and drew interest from a United Nations Institute for Social Development and Research Centers at MIT. Yet in the end, he chose to return to Korea, on one condition: the creation of the second juvenile facility. His intention was to use the dangerous youth the Korean legal system couldn't properly manage as subjects in a social correction experiment. It was an extraordinarily dangerous proposition. The Korean government approved the near-radical plan not only because of his academic reputation, but also because of his proven ability to subdue violent offenders in emergency situations. Ma Wenchang had once served in the United States Army Special Operations Forces, and now he was curious what kind of shark Cha Jiang would turn out to be. His fist came down with a thunderous crash. Fortunately, Cha Jiang broke free in time. Ma's curiosity had reached its limit. He intended to analyze Cha Jiang personally. There were currently 4-inch sharks confined within the prison. According to Ma Wenchang's classification, each represented a different species. Now he was curious what kind of shark the fifth one, Cha Jiang, would turn out to be. Ma Wenchang suddenly froze. He couldn't quite process what had just happened. His fist had felt as though it had struck an endless ocean. After a brief pause, he burst into laughter, instinctively rattling off a string of praise in English. Then he ordered a guard to bring that item over. He had once wanted to officially label the prison's special management class as sharks, but his superiors had rejected the proposal. Instead, the black nameplate became the symbol of that special tier. In this prison, the black nameplate signified absolute authority, while ordinary administrators wore white. Ma Wenchang knew he had thrown exactly 21 strikes, and Cha Jiang had found more than 21 opportunities to counter. That blatant disregard for him only made Ma more fascinated. It was the first case he had encountered that defied categorization. He decided to observe and analyze patiently until Cha Jiang revealed himself. Meanwhile, inmates in one of the cells had heard that a shark was moving in. 2 of them were already discussing how to eliminate it. But when Cha Juyong stepped into the cell, inmate Oh Tae-san immediately groveled like a dog. Inmate Young Eun-soo frantically begged Cha Juyong not to kill him. Cha Juyong frowned slightly. Was this what the warden called ordinary fish? He glanced around his new room. The conditions weren't bad. Later, Cha Juyong learned there were no nightly roll calls here. The guards rarely interfered. He couldn't quite understand it. A prison where inmates could move freely, in a place with almost no visible supervision. How could the incident rate be close to zero? At midnight, Cha Juyong quietly slipped out of bed. He intended to confirm the identities of the other 4-inch sharks. But no matter how hard he pushed, the door wouldn't budge. If the guards barely intervened, why lock the doors at all? The next morning, when he woke up, the other 2 inmates were lurking with concealed makeshift weapons, seemingly preparing an ambush. The moment they saw his eyes open, they immediately dropped to their knees to pay their respects. Feeling slightly hungry, Cha Juyong asked when the door would open. Oh Tae-san replied that it had already been opened. The prison doors opened and closed automatically at fixed times. When the doors were opened, the inmates were free to roam. Meanwhile, someone arrived at the first prison to meet Zhou Jiangkan. Ever since Zhou Jiangkan had been defeated by Cha Juyong, he had started paying close attention to him. He realized most of Cha Juyong's chosen targets had been members of the Heavenly Dragon. Not long ago, when the cell leaders erupted into a full-blown brawl, Zhou Jiangkan overheard the warden's phone call. He never expected that Cha Juyong was actually the son of the Heavenly Dragon's executive director. Meanwhile, Executive Director Young Woong of the Heavenly Dragon understood this was no coincidence. Inside the second prison, Cha Juyong wore the black nameplate, and no one dared approach him. Still, he found it strange. Were the other 4 black nameplate holders? Young Soon quickly explained that the remaining 4-inch sharks each occupied different floors. Every level was their exclusive territory, and Cha Juyong's domain was the first floor. Oh Tae-san reminded him that inmates from different floors never trespassed. The boundaries were an unwritten rule, especially among the black nameplate holders. Young Woong knew very well that inmates who caused serious trouble were sent to the second prison. He also knew the 4-inch sharks were all elite predators personally cultivated by the Heavenly Dragon. Even Cha Gangryong's own son could be torn to pieces there. And now, Cha Juyong was climbing the stairs to the second floor. Just 2 hours earlier, he had been turning something over in his mind. The warden had claimed he wanted to study the phenomenon, but this prison wasn't run by him alone. Even the guards barely interfered with the inmates. So how exactly was the warden supposed to observe anything? In reality, however, every single move Cha Juyong made was being monitored. Ma Wonchong was quietly taking notes. New shark has been inside the aquarium for 38 hours and 56 minutes. No abnormal behavior observed so far. It was a stark contrast to the previous sharks. Cha Juyong's behavior was almost painfully ordinary, and that was precisely what made him special in Ma Wonchong's eyes. At that moment, Han Sua, the administrative manager of the second prison, glanced at the coffee stain on his tie and asked if he wanted it cleaned. Ma Wonchong asked her to have it dry cleaned and requested another glass of low-fat milk. Han Sua's gaze drifted toward the desk. Lying there was Cha Juyong's file. Meanwhile, the other 4-inch sharks learned that a 5th had entered the tank. They were curious. What kind of disaster had the newcomer caused? Not long after, at a construction site outside the prison, Chairman Young Woong of the Heavenly Dragon defeated his opponent with a dazzling display of force. Passing by at just the right moment, Han Sua remarked that it had been an impressive performance. Though she was one of Ma Wonchong's trusted aides, she was also affiliated with the Heavenly Dragon. Behind Ma Wonchong's back, Han Sua swiped Cha Juyong's file. The second prison was completely cut off from the outside world. It housed young, promising individuals who had yet to pledge allegiance within the Heavenly Dragon. Young Woong had planted Han Sua there to recruit them when the opportunity arose. He hadn't expected an even bigger prize. Cha Gangryong had long been the Heavenly Dragon's perennial number 2. Young Woong could easily guess the purpose behind his scheming. He intended to use his own son to climb to the very top of the Heavenly Dragon. Now that he held a trump card, Young Woong intended to personally bring down both father and son. Normally, sharks did not fight one another. Even if one devoured another in a bloody battle, it would emerge mortally wounded, only to be targeted by the remaining sharks. But now, standing in the broadcast room, Cha Juyong had already learned the secret from Oh Tae-san, that the other 4 sharks were all members of the Heavenly Dragon. A sharp burst of static suddenly echoed through the prison speakers. Cha Juyong's voice followed. Listen up, sharks, that I'm Cha Juyong from the first floor. I also happen to be the son of Cha Gangryong, the Heavenly Dragon's number 2. That means if you take me down, you'll earn serious recognition within the Heavenly Dragon. So come and get me. Beneath the calm surface of the second prison's aquarium, the sharks maintained a fragile balance. Cha Juyong intended to shatter that balance himself, even if it meant becoming prey. Even Ma Wenchang hadn't anticipated such a wide-ranging provocation. Nothing like this had ever happened in the second prison. Ma Wenchang watched with keen interest, eager to see what kind of upheaval the new shark would bring. On the second floor, the shark Yu Rim found the announcement unexpected. He glanced at the inmate sitting on a stool and asked, "So what's it like living alongside that big shark, son?" The inmate trembled and said it was, of course, an honor. But Yu Rim sensed something else in the broadcast, a surge of contained fury beneath the calm tone. The inmate stumbled backward and collapsed, crushed under the weight of his aura. Yu Rim studied the man's expression. Something about it didn't sit right. With a faint smile, he invited him to come sit again this evening. Meanwhile, Chairman Yung Woong invited Cha Gangreyong to share drinks at a roadside stall. When they were young, they had come here almost every night. Cha Gangreyong said flatly, "Back then, we were just rookies who'd barely joined the organization." Yung Woong smiled. Who would have thought that rookie back then would become the Heavenly Dragons #2, though still the eternal runner-up? He casually asked whether Cha Gangreyong-san was in high school now. College entrance exams must be coming up soon, that he must be swamped. "Stop playing games," Cha Gangreyong said coldly. He already knew the truth about his son being sent to juvenile prison had come to light. Yung Woong continued smoothly. The Heavenly Dragon has grown into an organization with a true corporate structure. Yet the chairman still insists only the strongest king can lead the syndicate. You must have realized that as the perpetual #2, your chances were gone. So why not let your son try instead? That's why you groomed him in juvenile prison, keeping the organization in the dark. Cha Gangreyong's voice turned icy. Even if that's true, so what? Yung Woong hadn't expected such indifference. Cha Gangreyong sneered. "You think you got a collar on me, but you'll spend your life as nothing more than a bankrupt executive." Yung Woong shot back, refusing to yield. "Your son's already been transferred to the second prison. The dragon you hope to raise is now prey for sharks. Watching that unfold before your downfall, it's pure poetry." Cha Gangreyong said nothing that he simply turned and walked away. Behind him, Yung Woong burst into triumphant laughter. Moments later, a loud crash echoed from outside. Yung Woong stepped out to check. His car had been totaled by a single punch from Cha Gangreyong. He immediately started shouting curses at Cha Gangreyong's retreating vehicle. Meanwhile, inside the second prison, Han Sua noticed something unusual in the surveillance room. The shark from his second floor, Yu Rim, had come down to the first floor to find Cha Jiyong. In the past, whenever Yu Rim caught an inmate sighing, he would invite them to find happiness. Now, standing on the first floor, he exchanged a few pleasantries with Cha Jiyong. "Cut the pleasantries, get to the point," Cha Juyong said coldly. Yu Rim claimed he disliked fighting because it made people unhappy. He said he could hear layers of negative emotion in Cha Juyong's broadcast. He was curious. What could possibly make the Heavenly Dragon's #2 son feel unhappy? Cha Juyong's voice lowered. "You went through all this trouble just to ask something that asinine?" And yet, in that brief moment, he felt a strange discomfort emanating from Yu Rim. Yu Rim apologized if his earlier words had sounded offensive. In truth, he had come to invite Cha Jiyong to sit on the chair on level 2. Yu Rim believed Cha Jiyong was someone qualified to obtain happiness. He would be waiting upstairs. After Yu Rim left, Cha Jiyong fell into thought. He couldn't understand what that unpleasant sensation had been the instant they made contact. Yu Rim was unlike any opponent Cha Juyong had faced before. He asked Otae-san and Yung Unsu what Yu Rim meant by that chair. Otae-san swallowed and said it was probably the happiness chair, a chair that made whoever sat on it smile and feel happy. But it was also the greatest terror whispered about on level 2. At that moment, Ma Wenchang was documenting the phenomenon. Cha Juyong's decision to provoke every shark was even more reckless than he had anticipated. What surprised Ma Wenchang the most was that the first to react was the least aggressive shark on level 2. Han Sua couldn't understand Cha Juyong's intention either. If he intended to take control of the second prison, it bordered on pure hubris. In this prison, conflict between sharks was synonymous with self-destruction. In the past, inmates whom Yu Rim had taken away to find peace had all, in the end, truly found it. That fact genuinely pleased Yu Rim. After all, Aristotle once said, "The ultimate purpose of life is happiness." Yu Rim simply wished for those who felt unhappy to sit on that chair. The happiness chair emanated a deeply unsettling presence. And now, Cha Jiyong was about to experience it for himself. Once an unhappy person sat on that chair, Yu Rim would deprive them of all sustenance, forcing them to endure days without relief. Under that extreme torment, the unhappy gradually developed a twisted sense of bliss. Every inmate on level 2 was terrified of that chair. And yet, Cha Jiang sat down on the chair of his own accord. Yu Jae-rim sincerely welcomed him. The other inmates on level 2 greeted Cha Jiang with radiant smiles. Every single one of them looked impossibly happy. Otae-san and Young Un-soo, standing among them, were terrified out of their minds. When Yu Jae-rim invited Cha Jiang earlier, he had cordially invited them as well. Ignoring a shark here was a death sentence. They couldn't understand what the others were smiling about. Yu Jae-rim could see the enormous misfortune clinging to Cha Jiang. Even now, Cha Jiang was bottling up his anger. Yu Jae-rim wondered who that fury was aimed at. More than that, he wanted to know the root cause of it. In an instant, the image of Lee Di-yun's car accident flashed through Cha Jiang's mind. Yu Jae-rim gently told him to let them go. After all, those unimportant things would only clutter his path to happiness. Otae-san thought this was their chance. The shark on level 2 had his back turned. If they were going to run, it had to be now. Otae-san and Young Un-soo agreed to make a run for it on the count of 3. But before they could even finish counting to 2, Cha Jiang had already pounced on Yu Jae-rim. He hurled the so-called happiness chair straight at Yu Jae-rim. Thanks to all that self-righteous preaching, Cha Jiang was now burning with fury. He reactivated his transcendent heart. Yu Jae-rim had suffered from early-onset depression, and it only worsened over time. A doctor once suggested a method to his parents. It was a treatment built entirely on psychological suggestion. Yu Jae-rim simply had to believe that sitting on a specific chair would make him happy. The younger the child, the more effective the method. Soon enough, Yu Jae-rim received his own happiness chair. Now, in his rage-fueled transcendent heart, nausea churned in Cha Jiang's gut. His mind flooded with Cha Gang-ryong's face. After being struck, Yu Jae-rim calmly told the other inmates to leave. The happiness chair lay shattered. But to Yu Jae-rim, it didn't matter. The chair had always been symbolic that he could simply build another one. Cha Jiang hadn't expected him to remain this composed. Yu Jae-rim calmly stated that a mere object could never provoke negative emotion in him. He asked Cha Jiang if he wanted to try speaking to the one who had triggered his anger. The things he never managed to say, the words left unspoken. "Shut up," Cha Jiang growled. Yu Jae-rim seemed to understand. Is that person no longer alive? Even so, he assured him there were other methods. A smile was the symbol of happiness. He urged Cha Jiang to picture that person laughing freely. Remember the movies you watched together, the meals you shared, the things you both loved doing. Recall those joyful days you spent side by side, until the very last moment, when life was slipping away. Yu Jae-rim asked Cha Jiang how he felt. Picture that person smiling so brightly. Doesn't that make you feel better? Cha Jiang's fist fired forward like cannon. Yu Jae-rim smiled faintly. Seems you're still upset. The next instant, his arm snapped out of its socket with a sickening crack. Cha Jiang's leg tightened like a spring. Then he unleashed a brutal kick that sent Yu Jae-rim flying across the room. He had already told him to shut up. Yu Jae-rim could tell Cha Jiang was operating under the transcendent heart. Even so, he said calmly, "Pointless violence will only destroy your happiness." Cha Jiang was sick of hearing that word, happiness. He suddenly wondered whether Yu Jae-rim even understood what happiness meant. Once, Yu Jae-rim had asked his older sister what happiness was. She hadn't known either. After thinking about it, she said maybe happiness was simply a smile. Yu Jae-rim was about to continue, but Cha Jiang's fist was already inches from his face. Without warning, a spike of agony pierced his skull. Cha Jiang staggered, nearly collapsing as his balance gave out. Watching from the side, Tae-san gasped. What the hell is happening? Cha Jiang understood. The backlash had begun. Because he had overactivated the transcendent heart for too long back at the clinic, his body was reaching its limit. Cha Jiang was sinking deeper into a swamp of uncontrollable emotion. Yu Jae-rim believed he understood happiness better than anyone. What he saw now was a face moving in the opposite direction, consumed entirely by negativity. Yu Jae-rim hoped Cha Jiang could understand. If he ever wanted to smile again, this was the only way. But suddenly, Cha Jiang raised a shard of the shattered chair and struck without warning. A thin cut split across Yu Jae-rim's face. Cha Jiang's voice was ice cold. "Wipe that look off your face. Don't you love smiling? Why aren't you smiling now?" At that moment, Han Sua stepped in to observe the fight. She recognized it instantly, the backlash from overusing the transcendent heart. He had tried to confront a shark without even calculating the basic risks. In her eyes, the son of Cha Gang-ryong was still nothing more than a reckless kid. Touching the cut on his face, Yu Jae-rim murmured, "Perhaps I truly do dislike fighting. But to achieve my goal, I have no other choice." Yu Jae-rim believed the heavenly dragon itself stood opposed to happiness. Crime ran rampant within the organization. It was filled with people drowning in misery. So he would make them all happy. That was why he had joined the heavenly dragon. the backlash from the Transcendent Heart was beginning to push Cha Juyong onto the defensive. He understood perfectly well that Yu Jae-rim was, at the end of the day, still a criminal. But Yu Jae-rim's warped belief was simple. The method to achieve happiness had no moral boundaries. Cha Juyong was driven into a corner, motionless for a moment. In Yu Jae-rim's eyes, the world was divided into only two categories, happiness and misery. And then, Cha Juyong vanished. The next second, he reappeared behind Yu Jae-rim, with muse drawn. Cha Juyong's voice was cold. You came to this juvenile prison. Was it really all for that so-called happiness? Back in school, Yu Jae-rim had always been disliked for his gloomy demeanor. He once wondered whether unhappy people were forbidden from having friends. His sister had gently told him that if he smiled and appeared cheerful, the friends who saw him would feel happy too, and in turn, he would become happy himself. Because happiness, like a cold, was contagious. To Yu Jae-rim, the juvenile prison was the perfect environment. It was filled with the unhappy. He intended to use the inmates here as part of his experiment, to discover a method that could truly bring happiness to humanity. Han Soo-ah had never expected that such a ridiculous belief would carry him all the way to becoming a level 2 shark. He had been marked as a high potential seed, someone who might one day rise within the heavenly dragon. And what surprised Han Soo-ah most was that he still hadn't used that ability. Cha Juyong didn't care what Yu Jae-rim planned to do with the inmates. He had already figured out that Yu Jae-rim's true objective ran much deeper. Their fists slammed into each other at the same time. In his weakened state, Cha Juyong was gradually being pushed back. Yu Jae-rim intended to end it. But suddenly, his foot came down on the shattered remains of the chair. Exactly as Cha Juyong had intended. He understood perfectly why Yu Jae-rim was obsessed with making others happy. It wasn't compassion. It wasn't sacrifice. In truth, Yu Jae-rim's sister had suffered from an even more severe chronic depression than he had. She had simply never shown her pain in front of him. But eventually, her condition spiraled beyond control. Back then, Yu Jae-rim had followed her advice. He smiled at others, and he made friends. Yet his sister, as if she hadn't heard him, murmured to herself, "Happiness is like a cold, it spreads. If you're happy, Jae-rim, then maybe I can be happy too." Cha Juyong rejected that twisted philosophy outright. In his eyes, Yu Jae-rim was nothing but selfish. And yet, Yu Jae-rim calmly accepted that judgment. He lifted Cha Juyong off the ground with one hand. "I never pursued happiness for anyone else," Yu Jae-rim said quietly. "Tormented by severe chronic depression my entire life, I have never once felt what people call happiness. From the past until now, there has only ever been one thought in my heart. I refuse to believe it." When his heart overflowed with misfortune, Yu Jae-rim activated the Transcendent Heart as well. Watching through the surveillance feed, Ma Wonchong understood that the principle wasn't complicated. Activating the Transcendent Heart forced the human body beyond its natural limits, a phenomenon born from the combined strain of the nervous and muscular systems. Once emotions reach an extreme, the sympathetic nervous system activates, triggering the fight-or-flight response. In that process, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol surge explosively, elevating heart rate, optimizing oxygen delivery, increasing muscle output, and sharpening reaction speed. At the same time, adrenaline enhances muscular contraction, weakens the nervous system's inhibitory controls, and stimulates the release of endorphins that suppress pain. The body produces greater strength while temporarily dulling pain perception. Muscle fiber motor units that normally operate at only 40 to 60% capacity can, under extreme conditions, be mobilized at 100%. When humans unleash extraordinary power in life or death situations, it is the result of internal limiters being released, a phenomenon fully explainable by science. Still, Ma Wonchong understood that spontaneous activation of the Transcendent Heart was exceedingly rare and usually accidental. Those capable of invoking and controlling the Transcendent Heart through sheer will. That was the first qualification to become a shark. The shark of the second floor, Yu Jae-rim, was a textbook case of misfortune. Ma Wonchong categorized him as a Greenland shark dwelling in the freezing abyss of the deep sea. Its slow, unhurried movements and lifeless eyes made it seem indifferent to all prey. But the moment it truly locked onto a target, it would annihilate everything in its path. In academic circles, the Greenland shark is regarded as a top predator of the North Atlantic ecosystem. Yu Jae-rim believed that Cha Juyong, the son of heavenly dragons second in command, could never comprehend how terrifying a life steeped in misfortune truly was. More than anyone else, Yu Jae-rim yearned for happiness. But due to the backlash, Cha Juyong could no longer activate the Transcendent Heart for the time being. He would have to find another way. Once Yu Jae-rim activated the Transcendent Heart, his power leapt to an entirely different tier. On that day, The boy consumed by misfortune understood why misfortune existed and how happiness could be attained. The homework his teacher assigned was simple. Draw what the happiest thing in the world looks like. For Yu Rim, it was anything but simple. He began wondering what his sister's genuine smile truly looked like. Not long after, he decided to show her his drawing, hoping it would make her smile. But when he touched her hand, it was as cold as ice. Pill bottles were scattered all over the floor. He would never forget the sight of his sister, seated in the happiness chair, her body growing colder by the second. She had been more unfortunate than he was, more desperate for happiness than anyone else. And yet, at the very moment she left this world, there was a smile on her face. Yu Rim defined that image as the happiest sight in existence. From that day on, he realized there was another way to pursue happiness. Just as darkness is needed to define light, and war gives birth to peace. Only through misfortune can humanity truly perceive happiness. Cha Juyong frowned. What is this? You suddenly turning philosophical on me. He drove a heavy punch at Yu Rim, but it was caught effortlessly. Yu Rim continued. My sister achieved the greatest happiness precisely because she endured the greatest misfortune. I'm no different. If anyone tries to stand in my way, then I'll just kill him. Taking the hit head on, Cha Juyong said coldly, your happiness has nothing to do with me. All I feel is disgust when you spout that garbage. He tightened his grip, intent on ending the fight. But Yu Rim twisted his arm and locked him down to end the transcendent heart state. Yu Rim's strength was overwhelming. He wanted Cha Juyong to remain trapped in that negative spiral, moving further and further away from happiness. As Cha Juyong lost consciousness, his awareness fell into a space filled entirely with rage. His body wouldn't respond. He felt numb, distant. Even his thoughts began to blur. Was this how he would sink and disappear? And then he felt warmth. Li Diyun appeared in the deepest part of his consciousness. Through the surveillance monitors, Ma Wenchang observed the entire battle. The duel had certainly been nerve-wracking, but from a research perspective, it was worthless. Ma Wenchang had expected something that would shatter existing theoretical frameworks. Cha Juyong's performance left him deeply disappointed. He even began to question whether that boy truly deserved the title of Shark. Deep within his mind, Cha Juyong saw her again. Li Diyun, like an old friend he hadn't seen in ages, she asked softly if he had been doing well. Cha Juyong suddenly felt his nose sting. He forced a smile and said he was doing fine. But Li Diyun's expression suddenly darkened. What right do you have to be fine? I was trembling alone in a cold, suffocating darkness. How dare you live so comfortably? I died because of you, you bastard. Her body began to twist and distort. In the end, her face transformed into that of Cha Kongriyong. He looked at Cha Juyong and said, I killed that child for your own good. Cha Juyong wanted nothing more than to kill him right then and there. But his body suddenly sank downward. Cha Kongriyong repeated the words he had once spoken. If you want to kill me, your own father, then take control of this juvenile prison. Just as Ma Wenchang was about to clock out, a sudden voice stopped him. He stared in disbelief. Cha Juyong had stood back up. Yu Rim couldn't understand what Cha Juyong was doing. Logically, the backlash from the Transcendent Heart, combined with the accumulated damage from the fight, should have drained every ounce of strength from him. Yu Rim was curious. What exactly made you stand up again? He grabbed Cha Juyong tightly once more. But to his shock, the man who should have collapsed instead lunged straight at him. The next second, Yu Rim's jaw took a brutal hit. Cha Juyong still had things he needed to accomplish. He couldn't fall here. He plunged back into the rage-driven Transcendent Heart. Yu Rim didn't even have time to react before another blow smashed into his face. The force sent his entire body spinning through the air. Ma Wenchang had never seen a phenomenon like this documented in any paper or report. A shark that had been torn apart and left barely alive. Restarting the hunt, he defied the very laws of natural ecology. Ma Wenchang watched with growing anticipation. Just how far could Cha Juyong go? Yu Rim couldn't afford to collapse either. Not before he found true happiness. He re-entered the misfortune-fueled Transcendent Heart state in that condition. The human body unleashed its absolute peak output. Back on his feet, Cha Juyong's speed and strength surged beyond normal limits. He drove his foot down, crushing Yu Rim into the floor. But Yu Rim refused to let it end like this. He had to drag Cha Juyong to the very edge of despair. And then, suddenly, Yu Rim felt something horrifying. A crushing pressure seized his lungs and left him gasping. But Yu Rim refused to give up. He violently kicked Cha Juyong's foot off him. Yet Cha Juyong used the recoil to start building momentum. He had no intention of wasting any more time. A thunderous explosion echoed throughout the entire prison. Yu Jae-rim had claimed he would drag Cha Ju-young to the edge of despair. In truth, that wasn't necessary. Cha Ju-young had already been deeply trapped in it. Otae-san had expected a clash between sharks to be fierce. But the aftermath of this fight looked like the ruins of a battlefield. Young Eun-soo was so terrified he was considering breaking out of prison. As long as boss Cha Ju-young was around, fights would never stop, and sooner or later, he would get caught in the crossfire. Han Soo-ah had always known that bloodline never lies. Cha Ju-young was even more dangerous than she had anticipated. The inmates on the first floor were already buzzing about the battle. A shark being butchered was no small matter. It meant the long-standing balance of power had been shattered. A brand new era was coming, one drenched in blood and chaos. And for the small fish, survival meant knowing when to hide. The shift in the prison's internal balance thrilled Ma Won-chan. As a scholar, he was itching to classify Cha Ju-young properly. He flipped through every documented species of shark in his collection, yet none of them truly matched Cha Ju-young. Since earning his doctorate, he had never felt curiosity this intense, borderline obsessive. The once tranquil aquarium was beginning to churn, and new turbulence demanded new specimens to stabilize the ecosystem. The more individuals he introduced, the greater the probability of observing diverse phenomena. He began considering whether he should transfer additional subjects into the second prison. Meanwhile, in Hall 1 of the juvenile facility, Ma Qian trained relentlessly. Books on combat theory and martial techniques were stacked all around him. The juvenile prison had always been more dangerous than the outside world. Ma Qian understood that no one was coming to save him. He would never repeat his past mistakes. He made up his mind. He had to grow stronger, strong enough to survive inside this prison. But strength could not be achieved overnight. And in the process of honing his skills, Ma Qian failed again and again. Kim Na-min told him to think it through. You really think a scrawny weakling like you can change your life just by drilling wrist snaps? Stop wasting your energy. Come enjoy yourself with me instead. After Cha Ju-young left, Kim Na-min became the head of room 36. He couldn't understand why Ma Qian insisted on making life so exhausting for himself. After all, ever since Cha Ju-young sent every room leader to the hospital, the prison had entered the so-called peaceful era. Still, Kim Na-min was curious about where Cha Ju-young had gone. Ma Qian always felt that Cha Ju-young knew something about the world beyond the prison walls. Just as they were lost in thought, the bleating of goats echoed from outside. It turned out the warden had been raising a herd of black goats. Supposedly, they were meant for stew. The white-haired one was bored out of his skull. Ever since Cha Ju-young swept through the prison, even the only entertaining thing, the room leaders' meetings, had disappeared. The white-haired one craved something that would make his heart race. That was when he noticed something strange unfolding not far away. A wicked grin spread across the white-haired one's face. Meanwhile, Cha Ju-young lay in the infirmary of the second hall. When he came to, he replayed the last fight in his head. Cha Ju-young realized the side effects of the transcendent heart couldn't be ignored. His emotions had mostly settled by now. Just then, Han Soo-ya stepped into the infirmary. She told him to lie still. The fun starts now. Meanwhile, the church had arrived at Hall 1 of the juvenile prison for its usual sermon. Song Eun-ha was among them. She had heard that Cha Ju-young had been transferred elsewhere, but no one knew where. Song Eun-ha couldn't help worrying. What if something had happened to him? Back in the second hall, Han Soo-ya told Cha Ju-young not to be shy. He was injured. After all, it wouldn't be easy for him to wash his clothes himself. So she planned to help him undress and take the clothes to be cleaned. Patients needed to stay clean if they wanted to recover properly. Cha Ju-young had no idea what Han Soo-ya was really up to. Doing laundry wasn't a guard's job. And what kind of female guard personally helped an inmate undress? Han Soo-ya asked, "You think what I'm doing is suspicious?" Then she smiled. Second hall is special. Even the guards handle odd chores here. For a moment, Cha Ju-young wondered if he was overthinking it. But Han Soo-ya continued, "I saw you fighting Yu Jae-rim. You're more violent than you look. Still, compared to your father, you're practically gentle." Cha Ju-young's pupils shrank. He wanted to rush out and demand to know how Han Soo-ya knew Cha Kong-ryong. But the searing pain in his body kept him pinned in place. Outside the ward, Han Soo-ya thought to herself that Cha Kong-ryong's dream of raising his son to become the strongest in the world might not have been delusional after all. Still, it was too late now. The scent of Cha Ju-young's blood had already spread through the entire prison. The hungry sharks were practically salivating. On the third floor of the second hall, the shark, Moon Sang-woo, was toying with a rat. He released it again and again, letting it taste hope. Then he would reach out and snatch it back. Moon Sang-woo had once thought that Yu Jae-rim, the bespectacled guy from the second floor, looked interesting enough. He had even considered finding a chance to play with him. But Yu Jae-rim had been eliminated for being too arrogant. Moon Sang-woo couldn't help feeling bored. So now, He decided to go play with the one responsible for that boredom. Just imagining the fun to come made his body tremble with excitement. He knew very well that after fighting Yu Jae-rim, Cha Ju-young had to be weakened. Perfect prey to toy with. Meanwhile, Young Eun-soo was trembling on his bed. Before his big brother returned, he planned to dig a 1,500-meter-long tunnel with a spoon and escape. Oh Tae-san informed him of an unfortunate truth. The wall he was digging through led straight into the neighboring cell. Just then, a sudden uproar erupted outside. The other inmates thought they were hallucinating, because on the 5th floor, someone was floating in midair. Moon Sang-woo was ecstatic. Cha Kang-ryong's son had fallen into his hands at his weakest moment. If Moon Sang-woo let go right now, Cha Ji-young would drop onto the barbed wire below and be split clean in two. What Moon Sang-woo craved most was that look of terror on prey when it was caught at its weakest. That expression alone was enough to send a thrill straight through his skull. But then Cha Ju-young told him to let go. Hey idiot, don't just run your mouth, do it. In the deep sea, survival meant brutal battles. Moments ago, a hammerhead had been torn apart by a short-fin mako after a vicious clash. Yet even the mako would soon face something far more ferocious. The blood diffusing through the water had already triggered the starving shark's razor-sharp senses. The white-haired one, who binged nature documentaries daily, was bored out of his mind. He needed stronger hits of dopamine to keep himself entertained. He invited Little Goat to break out of prison with him, but a guard called him out before anything could happen. Just moments earlier, Cha Ji-young had been resting in the infirmary. Nearby, a voice murmured from the shadows, "I love the smell of disinfectant." Before Cha Ji-young could react, the attack slammed down without warning. Moon Sang-woo studied him. "You look pretty messed up. Perfect for a taste." He never let weakened prey slip away. "Struggle for your life," Moon Sang-woo urged, "until your body gives out." Badly injured, Cha Ju-young could barely fight back. But for Moon Sang-woo, the fun was just beginning. "Go on, struggle a little more." Jong Woong, executive director of Heavenly Dragon, hadn't expected Yu Jae-rim to be hunted down so quickly by Cha Kang-ryong's son. He understood that it had been a reckless move, because in a situation like that, Moon Sang-woo would never stay out of it. The man was vicious beyond measure. He had once forced his way into Heavenly Dragon's interrogation chamber through sheer strength, a terrifying prodigy. When Jong Woong saw him, he was reminded of his younger self. He eagerly anticipated the moment Cha Kang-ryong's son would be devoured. The desperate struggle of prey right before death nearly sent Moon Sang-woo into ecstasy. But Cha Ju-young only looked at him with contempt and told him to let go. Moon Sang-woo couldn't understand that expression at all. He had almost reached the peak just moments ago. So now, Cha Ju-young decided to give him a hand. He grabbed Moon Sang-woo and jumped off the building with him. After the thunderous crash, the white-haired one smiled. "The plane has landed safely. Finally found you, my sweet dopamine." When Cha Ju-young first entered the second hall, he had gone through an inspection. A guard had asked him about a slip of paper among his belongings. Cha Ju-young hadn't known where it came from. It read, "Estimated arrival, 6:30 today." He hadn't expected the white-haired one to actually show up. The white-haired one was curious. How many fights had he gone through that he couldn't even stand straight? He regretted missing the kind of battle that could make dopamine surge. From now on, he would witness every thrilling scene firsthand. The next second, he took a brutal punch. Moon Sang-woo had struck again. He hated nothing more than someone interrupting his hunt. It felt like a bucket of cold water dumped over his brain just before climax. The thrill vanished instantly. Cha Ju-young silently watched his retreating figure. Not long after, Oh Tae-san and Young Eun-soo both cursed the warden under their breath. Their room had barely received one shark, and now another newcomer had arrived. And the white-haired one had even rescued the little goat that was supposed to become goat stew. Cha Ju-young couldn't figure out what the white-haired one was thinking. He could understand why the white-haired one came to the second hall. After all, he had taught Cha Ju-young how to get in. But what he couldn't understand was how the white-haired one showed up exactly at the predicted time and somehow ended up in the same room. Cha Ju-young knew that wasn't a coincidence. Yet the white-haired one simply said, as always, that it was a secret. "If you can top off my dopamine levels," he added, "maybe I'll tell you." Cha Ju-young sighed. "That damn dopamine again." Otae-san frowned. "Hyung, you're still weak. Why not stay in the infirmary a few more days?" But Cha Ju-young knew the infirmary wasn't safe. That psychopath from the 3rd floor could barge in any time. This room, however, was different. Unable to sleep, Moon Sang-woo was chugging water in the dead of night. Ever since he had tasted Cha Ju-young, hunger no longer satisfied him. Before long, Moon Sang-woo entered another room. The woman inside had already been interrogated until she was covered in wounds. His craving had reached an extreme, and he intended to make the Nuna pay the price. Blood splattered across the room, but it still wasn't enough. Moon Sang-woo was determined to devour Cha Juyong down to the last bite. Meanwhile, the white-haired one had just refused Cha Juyong's request for protection. Cha Juyong couldn't understand why. Back in Hall 1, it was the white-haired one who had offered help first. "You misunderstood," he replied. "I'm not a competitor. I'm just here to watch the show. I'm not stepping into the arena myself. There's only one player here, and that's you, Cha Juyong." Cha Juyong let out a helpless laugh. "In this condition, I can barely walk, let alone fight." The white-haired one only smiled. He claimed he had a way to hunt the third-floor shark. On the other side, Moon Sang-woo was reaching his limit. He needed to make Cha Juyong completely addicted, completely trapped. He sprinted straight to Cha Juyong's room, hunger twisting inside him. He wanted to devour him immediately. But when he ripped the blanket away, all he found was the white-haired one and a black goat. The white-haired one shyly asked, "Planning to eat me instead?" Moon Sang-woo had zero interest in anyone who wasn't Cha Juyong. The white-haired one replied meaningfully, "If you're only eating Cha Juyong, you might be starving for a while, because you won't find him anywhere in this prison." Moon Sang-woo shot him a vicious glare. After that, he tore through every floor of the prison, searching for Cha Juyong. Days passed. He even checked the toilets, yet still couldn't find him. He couldn't figure out where Cha Juyong had hidden. The only thing he found was the fat inmate inside Cha Juyong's locker. He was barely holding himself together. If he didn't shove something into his mouth soon, he'd lose his mind. Watching through the monitors, Ma Won-chan commented, "A shark eating a fat man. Fascinating behavioral adaptation." At that moment, Han Suya brought up a rumor spreading among the inmates. People were saying the warden had secretly released Cha Juyong. Ma Won-chan stated firmly that he would never interfere with the aquarium's ecosystem. That was the first rule of his experiment, and it was impossible for a prisoner to escape this facility on his own, which meant Cha Juyong was still somewhere inside the prison. After so many days, Oh Tae-san was almost tempted to stew the black goat. Even he and Young Un-soo had no idea where Juyong Hyung had gone. They curiously asked the white-haired one about it. As usual, he simply said it was a secret. Cha Juyong was in a dimly lit place, the prison cafeteria, deep in the night. Moon Sang-woo was shoving food into his mouth like a man possessed. But no matter how much he ate, he couldn't feel full, not even a little. Then, a familiar voice rang out again. Moon Sang-woo turned around in disbelief. Cha Juyong, the man Moon Sang-woo had been calling prey, felt nothing but nausea. The familiar scent of disinfectant instantly sent Moon Sang-woo into a frenzy of excitement. But his strike missed. Cha Juyong frowned. "Where's that disinfectant smell coming from? I've already fully recovered." Moon Sang-woo had been waiting for this moment for far too long. He had nearly starved to death for it. Cha Juyong's elbow came crashing down without mercy. Luckily, he had followed the white-haired one's advice. Cha Juyong hadn't expected a place like that to exist inside the prison. After taking the hit, Moon Sang-woo refused to believe Cha Juyong was truly healed. He stubbornly convinced himself it was nothing but a bluff. But Cha Juyong had grown up getting beaten his whole life. His recovery speed was far beyond that of ordinary people. He really had recovered. There was no way Moon Sang-woo could devour him now. Then, after a thunderous crash, Moon Sang-woo, having narrowly dodged the attack, muttered under his breath, "I waited this long, and this isn't the outcome I wanted?" In truth, Cha Juyong had been waiting for a long time as well, waiting for the exact moment he could crush Moon Sang-woo with his own hands. But Moon Sang-woo, now completely drained of fighting spirit, couldn't even muster excitement anymore. Cha Juyong knew exactly what he was, a degenerate who found pleasure in tormenting the weak. So what? He could simply use his own fists to beat Moon Sang-woo to a pulp. Yet Moon Sang-woo believed that if he himself caused the weakness, it had no meaning. What he wanted had to be pure, untouched, a natural prey. So now, Cha Juyong would make him take the beating properly. In the past, Moon Sang-woo had interrogated someone who stole the Heavenly Dragon guest list. He tied the thief to railroad tracks and tortured him there. When the train was about to arrive, the thief finally broke under the pressure and confessed. But Moon Sang-woo never intended to let him go. Even if the thief survived by some miracle, Moon Sang-woo would have ended him without hesitation. That sensation of hunting made his entire body tingle. Hugh Young-ho, the head of Heavenly Dragon's risk management division, heard that a reckless newcomer had joined the organization. He was curious about someone who only targeted the weak. Moon Sang-woo normally avoided fights altogether. He had no interest in direct combat. So how did he manage to enter Heavenly Dragon? Because joining Heavenly Dragon required defeating countless powerful opponents. Moon Sang-woo found it disgusting. Fighting healthy opponents, he said, felt like chewing on a tire, utterly revolting. Tonight's prey was hard to stomach, but if it kept struggling and reeking, then Moon Sang-woo would simply grit his teeth and swallow it anyway. Cha Juyong's fist shot forward in an instant. Moon Sang-woo kicked it aside. Right now, all Moon Sang-woo felt was overwhelming disgust. Even if Cha Juyong kept clinging stubbornly, no matter how foul it tasted, Moon Sang-woo would just devour him in one bite. And that would be far more than simple digestion by stomach acid. Moon Sang-woo tried to move again, only to realize his leg had already been broken by Cha Juyong moments ago. Looking at him now, it was hard to tell who was the prey and who was the predator. The Risk Management Division was one of Heavenly Dragon's court apartments. This was the interrogation chamber used for interrogating traitors within Heavenly Dragon. No one could sit here in silence until the end. Hyo Young-ho had once asked Moon Sang-woo if he knew why. Because the essence of interrogation was never physical pain. It came from imagination. What happens after your fingernails are torn out? After your skin is peeled? After you're burned alive? It was an endless chain of questions. No one could withstand that pressure, amplifying a prisoner's imagination to its extreme. That was the interrogator's real job. Moon Sang-woo practically loved it. And the way the interrogator reveled in it only fueled the victim's imagination further. The interrogation room was practically Moon Sang-woo's personal paradise. And yet, now all he felt was disgust. Moon Sang-woo forced his broken leg bone back into place. He had to throw Cha Juyong into the kitchen waste bin. But before Moon Sang-woo could even react, Cha Juyong's fists rained down on him like a violent storm. Yet, Moon Sang-woo seized a split second and countered with an arm lock. He would crush Cha Juyong completely and toss him into the garbage bin. Moon Sang-woo picked up a spoon from the floor and pressed it against Cha Juyong's fingernail. A piercing, bone-deep pain shot through Cha Juyong the next instant. But he wasn't weakened. That meant Moon Sang-woo felt no thrill whatsoever. Moon Sang-woo experienced absolutely no pleasure in the fight. Cha Juyong asked coldly, "You pick fights everywhere. Is it all just to chase that pathetic little thrill?" Moon Sang-woo rejected that idea outright. In his madness, he believed pleasure was the very meaning of human existence. At that moment, the rice cooker beside them beeped. Cha Juyong yanked Moon Sang-woo over. Scalding steam burst straight into Moon Sang-woo's face. But that was far from the end. Cha Juyong decided to serve Moon Sang-woo a meal. The freshly cooked rice was so hot that Moon Sang-woo screamed as it burned him. The kitchen still had plenty of tools. Cha Juyong grabbed a frying pan and gave him the stir-fry treatment. Beaten until he was covered in filth, Moon Sang-woo collapsed onto the floor. Cha Juyong couldn't help but wonder, could someone's mood really affect their combat power? The strength Moon Sang-woo was displaying now wasn't even half of what he had shown in the infirmary. But Cha Juyong didn't care about that. Then he suddenly noticed an unidentified liquid between Moon Sang-woo's legs. Beaten into stimulation, Moon Sang-woo's entire body trembled. In the past, he had tortured prisoners to death before they even confessed the truth. So now, Cha Juyong would let Moon Sang-woo experience it personally. What true interrogation really meant. The suffocating punch smashed into Moon Sang-woo. Cha Juyong told him to imagine the pain that would come next. Yet Moon Sang-woo began muttering. Cha Juyong leaned in to hear. But Moon Sang-woo was begging to be hit harder. Cha Juyong hadn't expected him to be this troublesome. Moon Sang-woo hadn't felt this exhilarated in a long time. Using the surge of pleasure, he entered a state of overheart. The explosive boost in strength sent Cha Juyong flying backward. Moon Sang-woo loved the sight of someone being tortured. Even if that someone was himself, he even invited Cha Juyong to devour him now. Cha Juyong responded coldly. "Don't you know? The one who uses their ultimate move first is the one who loses." At that same moment, Cha Juyong also entered overheart, fueled by pure rage. The cigar shark in the deep sea does not feed merely to survive. It feeds to torment other fish and derive pleasure from it. It bites once from each creature, then quickly swims away. That's why the cigar shark is also called the sadist of the deep sea. But Ma Wonchang knew that a sadist like that always had another side. The way he provoked others everywhere, taking a bite and then fleeing. It almost looked like he was waiting for someone to bite back. He elevated pain into pleasure. Even when he became the prey, he reveled in it. He was the embodiment of masochism. Inside the cafeteria, Moon Sang-woo was sent flying again by Cha Juyong. It was the first time Cha Juyong had faced an opponent who enjoyed being beaten. It was genuinely troublesome. Moon Sang-woo felt like every bone in his body was about to shatter. And yet, it felt incredible. He even asked Cha Juyong to keep going. This level of stimulation was something Moon Sang-woo had never experienced, not even in Heavenly Dragon's interrogation room. Officially, it was a place for interrogating traitors. In truth, it served other purposes. Cha Juyong found it strange. Why bring this up in the middle of a fight? Moon Sang-woo smirked and asked whether he truly didn't know what kind of favor Cha Kong-ryong had performed in that interrogation room. It was all for his only son. Yet halfway through the sentence, Moon Sang-woo suddenly fell silent. Cha Juyong ordered him in a low voice to continue. But Moon Sang-woo knew he couldn't, because if he said it out loud, that gift would immediately hunt him down. Cha Juyong ordered Moon Sang-woo once again to speak. But Moon Sang-woo only wanted to continue having his fun. Right now, Cha Juyong cared about one thing: what exactly Cha Kang-ryong had done. The intense pain only made Moon Sang-woo more excited. He even wanted to taste each other in this twisted exchange. As the fight dragged on, Cha Juyong grew irritated, because this lunatic was actually getting stronger the more he was beaten. Cha Juyong intended to see just how long he could endure. His axe kick smashed hard against Moon Sang-woo's head, but Moon Sang-woo burst into manic laughter instead. He felt something eerie happening inside his body. The next instant, Cha Juyong was blasted away by a surge of overwhelming power. Moon Sang-woo still wanted to keep playing. He craved fiercer, more brutal attacks. So Cha Juyong granted him exactly that. The damage of that strike was greater than anything before. Cha Juyong was gradually becoming accustomed to fighting in the state of Transcendent Heart. Cha Kang-ryong had warned him before, overusing Transcendent Heart would cause backlash to the body. Even after awakening it, true mastery only came through relentless training. Just like Cha Kang-ryong had once told his son, you'll learn to control Transcendent Heart soon enough. But the most important lesson Cha Juyong remembered was this: not every battle required igniting that flame. After fighting Yu Jae-rim and encountering the method of inversion, he finally understood through constant reflection. Normally, the flame should remain hidden. Only when absolutely necessary should it be ignited. Moon Sang-woo took another brutal punch straight to the chest. Yet to him, it still tasted like a feast. Cha Juyong's fist swung again with savage force. Moon Sang-woo's cries only grew louder in twisted delight. Cha Juyong ignored it and kept striking. For the first time, Moon Sang-woo felt as if his heart was about to explode. Cha Juyong was repeatedly toggling Transcendent Heart on and off. Each activation caused his power to spike instantly. The overwhelming blow sent Moon Sang-woo flying backward once more. Cha Juyong asked coldly, "Still not going to talk? You've been inside Heavenly Dragon's interrogation room before, haven't you? Then you should know the simplest way to make someone speak. Until I hear an answer that satisfies me, I'll fry you golden and crisp." Meanwhile, the white-haired one found the ventilation shaft was rather crowded. He had forcibly brought Oh Tae-san and Young Un-soo to watch the fight. The two, unable to resist, were trembling in fear. The white-haired one laughed. The more spectators, the livelier the battlefield. But then he saw something that thrilled him. Cha Juyong was pressing Moon Sang-woo's head toward the boiling oil. The white-haired one burst into laughter. As expected, out of all fried foods, fried shark head tastes the best. He had to force out what Cha Kang-ryong had done in the interrogation room for his son. But if Moon Sang-woo dared to say it aloud, Kyu Young-ho would hunt him down, so he would never speak willingly. Cha Juyong looked at Moon Sang-woo as if he truly didn't understand his situation. His grip slowly tightened. Moon Sang-woo was stunned. Cha Juyong wasn't bluffing. The next second, his hand was plunged into the boiling oil. A scream like a slaughtered pig echoed through the cafeteria. Cha Juyong was not joking. Moon Sang-woo's head now hovered inches above the bubbling oil. Terror tore through him. Cha Juyong said coldly, "If you go under, you won't die. Your face will just be severely burned, and I'll make sure you wish you had." Cha Juyong pressed his head down further. Unable to withstand the pressure, Moon Sang-woo roared, "I'll tell you everything." Not long ago, Cha Kang-ryong had taken someone out of the interrogation room. He said he wanted to arrange for a truck to run down a certain girl for the sake of his only son. Having barely survived, Moon Sang-woo collapsed, completely drained. Cha Juyong swore that no matter what, he would personally kill Cha Kang-ryong. After the battle ended, Han Suya reported the outcome to Young Woong. At that moment, Young Woong had already located someone. Kyu Young-ho hadn't expected Heavenly Dragon's executive director to personally come see someone at his level. Young Woong smiled. "You're too modest." Who would have thought the infamous head of Heavenly Dragon's interrogation room still had time for fishing? Kyu Young-ho replied calmly, "I'm not that interested in fishing. I'm only interested in catching people." Beneath Kyu Young-ho's fishing rod, someone was tied up. Young Woong had come to him to catch a very big fish. It was a target Young Woong had been watching for a long time, massive and ferocious. So Young Woong wanted Kyu Young-ho's assistance. The big fish he referred to was none other than Heavenly Dragon's second-in-command, Cha Kang-ryong. Meanwhile, inside the aquarium, children were startled by a strange man. Ma Wonchong had just witnessed two sharks tearing into each other's flesh. Cha Juyong's overwhelming victory thrilled him deeply. That scene wasn't about survival competition. It was pure, savage predation. Ma Wonchong was finally beginning to understand. What kind of shark? Cha Juyong truly was on the first floor. In the juvenile prison's second hall, two sharks had already exited the game. Ma Wenchang knew that once the ecosystem's balance was disrupted, biological defense mechanisms would activate. Turtles retreat into their shells. Pufferfish inflate. Octopuses change color to deceive their enemies. So what would the ocean's apex predator, the shark, do? Ma Wenchang was eager to see. Inside the prison, the white-haired one was roasting a goat and grinning foolishly. Ote-san and Jung Eun-soo suspected something was wrong with his head. At the same time, the shark on the 4th floor of the prison opened his eyes. The shark on the 5th floor opened his eyes as well. The white-haired one understood IT had begun. The remaining 2 sharks were about to move. The cleaner on the 4th floor frowned. Why was that door open? After all, the shark's door was rarely unlocked. The next second, the cleaner felt a terrifying pressure. He couldn't believe the 4th floor shark had stepped out of his room. Meanwhile, on the 5th floor, a prisoner near the 4th floor staircase wondered who was coming down. Their pupils shrank in fear, because the 5th floor shark had descended. Alarms blared wildly inside the surveillance room. At the same time, in the hospital specialized in treating inmates from the juvenile prison, Yu Jae-rim, who had been defeated by Cha Ju-young, still needed 3 more weeks before discharge. He stared at a poster about happiness on the wall. His teeth clenched in hatred. Yu Jae-rim had chased happiness, only to fall straight into a pit of misery. Every time he thought about Cha Ju-young climbing upward by stepping on his body, he wanted nothing more than to swallow him whole. On the other side of the hospital, Moon Sang-woo felt nothing but hunger gnawing at him. He wondered whether Cha Ju-young's next target was another shark. Moon Sang-woo understood that the sharks on the 4th and 5th floors were not easy prey. They were a type of dragon seed, monsters even he wouldn't dare devour lightly. At that moment, a nurse walked in to give him an injection. Moon Sang-woo was weeping pathetically in sheer terror. He couldn't endure pain anymore. Meanwhile, in the prison's audiovisual room, today was Cultural Day. The warden had arranged a movie screening for the inmates. The film appeared to be about a goat-like mutant fighting a tentacled alien. The prisoners were speechless. The warden was seriously making them watch this trash? In the movie, the black goat shrieked wildly in fear. The white-haired one found it amusing. The first time Cha Ju-young fought a shark, he could barely stand. Yet now he was sitting here, completely unharmed, watching a movie. Cha Ju-young knew he owed that to the white-haired one. More precisely, to the place the white-haired one had told him about. Still, he couldn't figure out how the white-haired one had obtained that kind of intelligence. He knew he wouldn't get an answer, so he didn't bother asking. But something felt off. The white-haired one was unusually quiet today. Normally, he would have been shouting excitedly at a scene like this. The white-haired one smirked. Reality's way more interesting than the movie. Just then, the door to the audiovisual room was thrown open. The cleaner shouted, "Hell's broken loose." The shark on the 4th floor and the shark on the 5th floor are fighting. In the hospital, Yu Jae-rim understood that the remaining 2 sharks would inevitably clash with Cha Ju-young. He suddenly recalled the aura Cha Ju-young radiated during battle. Yu Jae-rim collapsed to the floor, his body trembling violently. He no longer had the courage to face that terrifying presence again. Moon Sang-woo understood as well. Cha Ju-young intended to devour the remaining 2 sharks, but he also knew that the one ultimately consumed might be Cha Ju-young himself. At that moment, Moon Sang-woo also remembered that dreadful aura. He dropped to the ground instantly, begging for forgiveness in a pathetic heap. Inside the audiovisual room, Jung Eun-soo hadn't expected the sharks to start fighting each other. Ote-san even congratulated Boss for getting an effortless win. The white-haired one had originally been looking forward to watching the sharks ambush Cha Ju-young. Still, this twist was interesting in its own way. But Cha Ju-young suddenly stood up and walked toward the door. Ote-san and Jung Eun-soo were confused. Where is he going? The other inmates in the room began murmuring as well. Because beside the monster battle scene in the movie, something seemed to be emerging. The white-haired one hadn't expected even this trash movie to have a twist. Beneath the title, 3-Goat Mutant vs. Tentacle Alien, a small subtitle read, "The Counterattack of the Giant Shark." Cha Ju-young had no intention of letting them decide the outcome on their own. He would personally finish off the remaining sharks. Hearing the alarm, Han Suya rushed into the surveillance room without even changing clothes. She couldn't understand why the sharks on the 4th and 5th floors had moved simultaneously. Beside them, Ma Wenchang's pen was already flying across the page. 2 sharks advancing toward each other simultaneously. This had never happened since the second hall was established. Ma Wenchang knew that when an ecosystem is invaded by an external species, native species evolve to become stronger and more complex in order to survive. Evolutionary biology had recorded countless such cases, and the catalyst behind this phenomenon was Cha Ju-young. This was a textbook example of the Red Queen hypothesis. When one species evolves, its rival is forced to evolve under pressure. Fail to evolve, and you're eliminated. Even if you evolve desperately, You're merely maintaining your current ecological niche, which meant Cha Jiang and the remaining sharks were destined to restrain each other in an endless cycle of forced evolution. At that moment, the monitors sounded another alarm. Just as Ma Wenchang predicted, Cha Jiang had begun to move as well. Han Suya couldn't understand why he wouldn't simply reap the benefits and instead chose to intervene directly. Even Ma Wenchang couldn't explain that decision. The inmates inside the prison began murmuring. Why was the first-floor shark suddenly leaving? They feared becoming collateral damage in a shark free-for-all. The sharks on the 4th and 5th floors were different from the ones who had already exited. Within Heavenly Dragon, they were reportedly referred to as dragons. But even Otaisen didn't know why. Still, no matter how strong the remaining 2 sharks were, he didn't believe Brother Jiang would lose. The white-haired one, who had been following Cha Jiang the whole way, began giggling again. Because a spectacle that would let modern people vent their mundane frustrations. A chaotic battle that would set the entire place ablaze was about to unfold. Cha Jiang arrived at the dual site of the final 2 sharks, the library. But when he pushed the door open, he saw no one inside. Cha Jiang had clearly been told the battle site was the library. Then he suddenly stepped on a book lying on the floor. He frowned. Why were books scattered everywhere? Lifting his head, his gaze slipped through the gaps between the shelves, and he saw a shocking sight. The sharks' battle had indeed taken place in the library. The place had already been reduced to ruins. Even steel pipes had been cracked open, water leaking from them. Just then, a familiar voice sounded behind him. The white-haired one asked anxiously, "Why isn't anyone here?" Cha Jiang knew they were late. The fight was already over. Deprived of his anticipated excitement, the white-haired one clutched his head in sheer frustration. Cha Jiang had intended to strike while the sharks were tearing into each other. He told the white-haired one not to be too disappointed. The movie isn't over yet. Through the monitors, Han Suya had witnessed the clash between the 4th and 5th floor sharks. In the end, however, the fight ended without a decisive winner. She couldn't help thinking, if Cha Jiang had arrived just a little earlier, the spectacle would have been even greater. But the real show was only beginning. The meeting of the 3 sharks had fallen apart just like that. Ma Wenchang didn't feel regret, only relief. If those 3 had truly fought, his aquarium might have exploded. Bringing Cha Jiang into his aquarium, in his view, had been a masterstroke. At that moment, Ma Wenchang accidentally dropped his pen into the water. It was a limited edition pen decorated with an adorable shark design. As it sank, it seemed locked in a silent standoff with the shark model inside the tank. Back in his room, Cha Jiang was deep in thought. He had heard the remaining 2 sharks were on an entirely different level from the previous pair. His plan to intervene in their conflict had failed. If he approached recklessly now, something could go wrong. He needed to return to his room and formulate a new strategy. At that moment, Cha Jiang suddenly heard an abrupt voice behind him. "I'm so tired, so sleepy. Let's just end this quickly," the person said lazily. It was the 4th floor shark, Tao Hyunwoo. Through the monitors, Han Suya watched the 2 sharks facing off. She knew Tao Hyunwoo was considered an elite within Heavenly Dragon's New Dorms division, yet he was usually the type who hid under his blanket all day. She hadn't expected someone like him to make a move. She only hoped Cha Jiang wouldn't interrupt Tao Hyunwoo's afternoon nap, because if a sleeping monster were truly awakened, someone might never wake up again. The 4th floor shark had actually sought Cha Jiang out first. Cha Jiang had already prepared himself for combat, but Tao Hyunwoo raised both hands in surrender. Cha Jiang froze. Tao Hyunwoo continued, "I'm seriously exhausted lately. Blood sugar spiking, 0 exercise, low thyroid function. I don't even feel like moving." Cha Jiang cut him off coldly. "Stop joking. What's the point of saying that?" Tao Hyunwoo went on. "I didn't just come to you. I wanted the 5th floor shark too. I asked him to fight you before you came up to the 4th floor." The 5th floor shark threw a punch at him without hesitation. Tao Hyunwoo surrendered after taking a few hits, but the exhaustion from that still hasn't faded. Cha Jiang couldn't tell what kind of trick the 4th floor shark was playing. After surrendering, Tao Hyunwoo looked ready to head back and sleep. Cha Jiang watched his retreating figure, puzzled. From the shadows, Han Suya realized Tao Hyunwoo wasn't fully awake yet. That gave her a headache. Back in his room, Cha Jiang could tell Tao Hyunwoo's surrender had been genuine. But he wouldn't spare a member of Heavenly Dragon just because they weren't interested in fighting. Still, he needed to wait for the right moment to act. The prison's water pipes had been blasted apart during the previous battle between the 4th and 5th floor sharks. The inmates could no longer use the washing machines and were forced to wash clothes by hand. Otae-san was enthusiastically giving the black go-to-bath. The weather was clear and cool, perfect for washing up. Young Unsu nodded in agreement. "Yeah," he muttered, "perfect weather to die into." He figured if he was going to hang himself, he might as well escape this prison that felt no different from hell. Otae-san kindly tightened the rope for him. After nearly choking to death for real, Young Eun-soo suddenly developed a strong desire to live. Back when he first heard the first-floor shark was moving into their room, he had genuinely wanted to end it all. But after spending time with brother Ji-young, both he and Otae-san realized he wasn't so bad. Sure, he was a shark, but he occasionally helped with cleaning. When it got cold, he even lent Otae-san his clothes. If Otae-san ran out of soap, Cha Ji-young would quietly help. When nightmares struck, Cha Ji-young would even lie beside him. When Otae-san's body ached, Cha Ji-young would give him a full body massage. He'd even prepare 10 dishes for his birthday. Young Eun-soo rolled his eyes. Okay, those last 3 are definitely fantasies. Still, he understood something. Brother Ji-young was merciless toward other predators. But with the surrounding school of fish, he seemed more like part of a symbiotic relationship, like sharks and cleaner fish. Cleaner fish feed on scraps left behind by sharks, and sharks rely on them to stay clean. Though Otae-san felt that kind of relationship required mutual help, and they hadn't really helped brother Ji-young at all. At that moment, the black goat, who had just been bathed, started bleeding again. Otae-san frowned. Had it been soaking too long? Meanwhile, Tao Hyun-woo was sunbathing on a rooftop, fast asleep. Han Suya approached while humming softly and woke him. She tilted her head. Why sleep out here when you've got a perfectly good bed? Tao Hyun-woo shot back. Then why would a prison guard secretly meet with inmates? Han Suya chuckled lightly. Qingqi truly are perceptive. Qingqi were among the rare elites within Heavenly Dragon believed to possess the potential to become dragons. And Tao Hyun-woo was one of them. His tone turned hostile. How does a guard know that? The pressure in his voice sent a chill down Han Suya's spine. Her reason for seeking him out was simple. Tao Hyun-woo had grown increasingly exhausted, to the point of losing his will to fight. She intended to reignite that drive within him. After all, they were on the same side. Han Suya lifted her shirt slightly, revealing a crimson fire dragon tattoo to prove her identity. Not long ago, she had met Young Woon again. Events were unfolding faster than Young Woon had expected. He knew Yu Jae-rim and Moon Sang-woo were still some distance from full maturation. But the two on the 4th and 5th floors were nearly matured Qingqi. They were elites rigorously selected through Heavenly Dragon's examinations. Fruits ripened to perfection. Young Woon knew the time for harvest was approaching. That was the real reason Han Suya had infiltrated the prison. She was about to approach those 2 sharks to accelerate the process. But Young Woon told her not to rush, because what truly drives human nature has never been power or strength. It is that scalding, crimson desire. There was almost no intelligence on the 5th floor shark, making his desires impossible to read. But the 4th floor shark's desire was unmistakable. That was the very reason he had joined Heavenly Dragon. Young Woon instructed Han Suya to place that crimson apple into Tao Hyun-woo's mouth. Tao Hyun-woo hadn't expected there to be Heavenly Dragon operatives even among the prison guards. For this meeting, Han Suya had tampered with the surveillance system beforehand. But the interference wouldn't last long, so she decided to speak plainly. She had something to ask Tao Hyun-woo to help with, but he refused without hesitation. Han Suya had no authority to command him, and besides, he was exhausted. She had expected that reaction. Just as Young Woon had said, what drives human nature is crimson desire. The lifeless eyes, the dark circles hanging to his jawline, the body heavy as soaked cotton. Han Suya understood that no matter how long Tao Hyun-woo slept, the fatigue would never disappear. He was suffering from severe chronic exhaustion. She needed to wake him up. After a long silence, Tao Hyun-woo asked if she could guarantee it. Han Suya knew he was finally interested. She was about to explain the plan, when the door behind her suddenly made a sound. Her heart skipped a beat. Hadn't that door been open? The hallway was dimly lit. Young Eun-soo had only intended to go up to the rooftop to hang laundry. He hadn't expected to witness something like that. He couldn't hear what Han Suya and Tao Hyun-woo were saying from that distance. But he recognized the tattoo. It was the mark of Heavenly Dragon. Just then, Han Suya approached him. She asked if he really thought he could just walk away. You dropped your panties, by the way. After teasing him about the rather generous size, she asked if he'd like to hear a story about panties. Supposedly, over 300 million people worldwide dislike panties, and 100,000 have died from tongue paralysis caused by bacteria in the smell. Young Eun-soo had never heard anything like that before. Han Suya smiled. That's because I just made it up. But far more people have been stoned to death for leaking someone else's secrets. After that, Young Eun-soo couldn't sit still no matter what he did. Cha Ji-young found it odd that he wasn't eating and was instead stacking peas into a tower. Young Eun-soo was completely shaken. As far as he knew, Heavenly Dragon was an organization capable of killing a person every 3 seconds. The most notorious corporate-style criminal syndicate of the 21st century. He couldn't understand why a prison guard would bear that tattoo. He feared that, Having learned Heavenly Dragon's secret, he would be torn to pieces by those monsters. Cha Juyong frowned at Young Eun-su's tray. Without realizing it, he had arranged the peas into a distress signal. Young Eun-su hurriedly claimed it was just sauce placement. Cha Juyong told Oh-tae-san to take him to the infirmary later. Young Eun-su didn't want to drag Cha Juyong and Oh-tae-san into trouble because of him. In the past, Tao Hyun-woo would lie in bed endlessly. He slept and slept, yet never felt awake. Eventually, he found a way to clear his mind. At that time, Han Suya had wanted to ask for his help, but when she realized someone was spying, she first asked Tao Hyun-woo to deal with a small fish. The day Young Eun-su fled the rooftop in a panic, he never got to dry his clothes. They had begun to smell. He could only hope Heavenly Dragon would spare his life. But at that moment, someone appeared behind him. At the same time, another figure stood by the window. Cha Jiong was also watching him silently. Young Eun-su had once studied cosmetology and often cut Oh-tae-san's hair. Oh-tae-san praised his skill, saying every man should try it at least once. The white-haired one laughed. "This isn't hair. It's a bird's nest. I'm pretty sure there are 3 eggs in it." Young Eun-su then asked if Brother Jiong needed a trim. At that length, it was about time. Before this, Cha Jiong's hair had always been cut by Lee Di-yun. According to her, a bad mood gets cut away along with the hair. Inside the prison, Cha Jiong always had Young Eun-su cut his hair. Now, Tao Hyun-woo had found Young Eun-su. He asked bluntly, "You were the fish on the rooftop that day, weren't you?" Young Eun-su immediately claimed he had acrophobia and never went to the rooftop. Even if he had gone, a coward like him wouldn't dare open his eyes, so he definitely hadn't seen any tattoo. In his panic, he let it slip. Young Eun-su instantly grabbed Tao Hyun-woo's leg and begged, "I'm useless. I just wander around emitting carbon dioxide. I'm so sorry. Even if my late grandmother asked me in a dream, I wouldn't say a word. Please spare me." Tao Hyun-woo nearly dozed off listening to him. Young Eun-su kept pleading. But Tao Hyun-woo had already made a deal with Han Suya. He would help her in exchange for freeing himself from exhaustion, which meant Young Eun-su had to die. Young Eun-su shouted desperately, "If you kill someone in prison, you'll be prosecuted under juvenile law. Maximum sentence, 20 years. But Han Suya had mentioned before that the second hall of the juvenile prison operated under special support from the Korean government. It existed primarily for Warden Ma In-chong's academic research, a clandestine, unofficial institution. Therefore, nothing that happened there would ever be recorded. Han Suya's words had been crystal clear. In this prison, even murder was fair game. Young Eun-su struggled in sheer terror. Tao Hyun-woo's face was scratched open by fingernails. He had originally intended to grant Young Eun-su a quick death, but now he decided to give him a brutal thrashing first. Tao Hyun-woo coldly told Young Eun-su to stop resisting, but his strike was intercepted by Oh-tae-san. Tao Hyun-woo didn't want to waste time. It was nearly bedtime. Oh-tae-san understood that a small fish like him could never defeat a shark. With such a vast gap in power, even begging for life was a luxury. Unless the trap was triggered, Oh-tae-san knew that for a small fish like him to survive, he would have to resort to underhanded tactics. The moment Tao Hyun-woo touched the rope, the gates of hell would open. With suicidal resolve, Oh-tae-san charged forward. In the surveillance room, Ma In-chong found this strange. Since entering the second hall, the 4th floor shark had never been this active. The conflict with the 5th floor shark days ago had merely been a chance encounter while avoiding Cha Juyong. Tao Hyun-woo had even descended to the 1st floor to surrender to Cha Juyong. All of that, Ma In-chong could fully understand. But Tao Hyun-woo taking the initiative to attack other small fish was something Ma In-chong found hard to accept. It completely contradicted Tao Hyun-woo's usual temperament. Han Suya smiled. In the end, he's still a predator. Perhaps his clash with the 5th floor shark changed his mindset. Ma In-chong neither agreed nor disagreed. Even though Oh-tae-san had prepared a trap in advance, Tao Hyun-woo dismantled it with ease. Young Eun-su tried to drag Oh-tae-san away to escape, but Tao Hyun-woo was already ready to send them both to their graves. Just as his foot was about to come down, someone grabbed it. Cha Juyong spoke coldly. "I'll be in a bind if you kill that guy. There won't be anyone left to cut my hair. Though looking at you, I think it's your turn for a trim." Meanwhile, inside the hunting grounds of Chanhua Pavilion, Zhou Jiangkan understood that the young master would struggle if he had to face the remaining 2 sharks consecutively. The next second, the target in his sights was taken down with a single sniper shot. Lu Haiyuan, holding the rifle, knew the remaining 2 sharks were Qingqi, just like Zhou Jiangkan once had been. He understood that conflict between the young master and the Qingqi was inevitable. Perhaps it had already begun. The shark of the 1st floor finally confronted the shark of the 4th. But what puzzled the 1SD floor shark, Cha Jiong, was why someone as lethargic as Tao Hyun-woo would attack first. Tao Hyunwoo casually replied. And what difference would it make if you knew? The next second, Cha Juyong's fist slammed straight into his face. Even if Tao Hyunwoo refused to explain, Cha Juyong could already guess that woman was pulling the strings. After taking the hit, Tao Hyunwoo still looked completely indifferent. So Cha Juyong drove another brutal punch into him. The force blasted Tao Hyunwoo's entire body backward. Right now, Cha Juyong wanted to know only one thing: what exactly Heavenly Dragon was planning. But Tao Hyunwoo simply wanted to sleep. When he was a child, his excessive drowsiness once nearly caused a gas leak at home. Fortunately, his dog Kongwoo woke him up. Kongwoo had even been carrying a baseball, hoping to play with him. But Tao Hyunwoo only wanted to go back to sleep. But even while he lay in bed, Kongwoo kept barking without stop. The moment Tao Hyunwoo was woken up, his expression turned cold. To him, sleep was the most important instinct a human being had. Right now, Cha Juyong was getting in the way of that sleep. Tao Hyunwoo's eyelids were already on the verge of giving out. Then he launched a sudden strike, smashing straight into Cha Juyong's jaw. Cha Juyong blacked out for a brief instant, then snapped back immediately. Right now, Tao Hyunwoo wanted only one thing: sleep. Anyone who got in his way deserved to die. Inside the hunting grounds, Yu Hae-won knew that besides the sharks, there was another key figure in the juvenile prison. That person was 25-year-old Han Suya. At present, she served as the administrative manager of the second hall of the juvenile prison, with no other remarkable background on record. But Ju Kong-chan had learned from reliable intel that Han Suya was actually a trusted confidant of Heavenly Dragon Executive Director Young Woon. Although he had no idea how Han Suya had managed to infiltrate the closed-off second hall, he knew Young Woon would use her against the young master. Fresh from the hunt, Cha Kong-ryong dismissed it all with contempt. He had no intention of taking that sly wild dog seriously. The lethargic Tao Hyunwoo was always dozing off. Inside his dream, he could feel none of the crushing fatigue that weighed on him in reality. In that dream, Tao Hyunwoo was just like an ordinary person, running freely with a child. He wished the dream would last forever. But the bus driver reminded him that they had already reached the final stop. He should hurry home with the puppy, or his parents would start worrying. Tao Hyunwoo was clearly irritated after being woken up, but the driver still had to hurry home to his wife and kids. The next second, the awakened Tao Hyunwoo grabbed a fire extinguisher and hurled it brutally at him. Back in the prison, Cha Jiong was knocked down by one of Tao Hyunwoo's kicks. In Tao Hyunwoo's eyes, once the nuisance was out of the way, it was time to move on. If he dealt with Young-eun Soo, he could still squeeze in 10 more minutes of sleep. Cha Juyong said coldly, "Is 10 minutes enough? I could make it permanent." Tao Hyunwoo, on the other hand, asked him not to interfere. If Cha Jong hadn't gotten in the way, he would already be lying comfortably in bed. After being driven back again, Cha Jiong started to sense that something was off. He realized Tao Hyunwoo had been attacking with nothing but his legs the entire time. The suspicion quietly took shape in Cha Juyong's mind. Tao Hyunwoo had originally intended to put Cha Juyong to sleep first, but Cha Juyong decided to verify his theory before anything else. First, he restricted Tao Hyunwoo's lower body, and he forced him to respond with only his upper body. Even so, Tao Hyunwoo still tried to attack with his legs and told Cha Juyong to stop wasting his time. But that only confirmed Cha Juyong's suspicion. Tao Hyunwoo only knew how to fight with his legs. Meanwhile, in the shadows, a phone was quietly recording everything. The entire fight was captured in full. Han Suya even felt she had a real talent for photography. It was Young Woong's first time seeing Cha Juyong in a photograph. He felt Cha Juyong didn't resemble Cha Kong-ryong very much. For a man like Cha Kong-ryong to send his own son to prison just to satisfy his personal ambition, that was ruthlessness on another level. Ga Young-ho, however, thought it was perfectly in line with Cha Kong-ryong's nature. Young Woong snatched the branding iron from his hand. In Young Woong's view, Cha Kong-ryong had always been willing to use any means necessary to get what he wanted. So this time, Young Woong intended to try it himself. Meanwhile, Cha Kong-ryong was skinning a wolf. You want to know what exactly Young Woong was plotting now? Ju Kong-chan had been keeping a close eye on Executive Director Young Woong's movements. Recently, he noticed Young Woong had been contacting the Risk Management Division far more often. Cha Kong-ryong guessed Young Woong's intentions almost instantly. Yu Hae-won had already begun moving according to Cha Kong-ryong's orders. In Cha Kong-ryong's eyes, Young Woong was nothing more than a wild dog. And a wild dog foolish enough to dream of becoming a dragon deserved to be crushed underfoot. Back inside the prison, the battle was still going on. Tao Hyunwoo had only 5 minutes left until his sleep time. Cha Jiong was curious whether Tao Hyunwoo was deliberately attacking with only his legs. For Cha Jiong, that was actually a good thing. Compared to someone who fought with both hands and feet, Tao Hyunwoo's movements were far easier to read at a glance. Whether he was dodging or striking, Cha Juyong could predict Tao Hyunwoo's next move. He knew a fighter on Tao Hyunwoo's level had to be aware of that too, which only made it harder for Cha Juyong to understand. Why was Tao Hyunwoo still refusing to use his hands? Cha Juyong was performing even better than Han Suya had expected. At this point, everything was moving exactly according to plan. Han Suya had successfully pushed Tao Hyunwoo and Cha Juyong into a direct clash. She thought that if this plan worked out, then as Young Woong's trusted confidant, rising to the rank of senior executive within Heavenly Dragon might be just around the corner. What Han Suya didn't know was this. From far away, a heavy sniper rifle was already trained on her. Not long ago, Yu Hae-won had been sent by Cha Kang-ryong to carry out a mission in the second hall of the juvenile prison. Young Woong's side believed there was always someone stronger beyond the strong. But Cha Kang-ryong's side was the kind that could shoot down even the ones above the sky. Yu Hae-won checked everything. The dust, the feel in her hands, the wind direction. Everything was perfect. This was prey she could not afford to miss a second time. But just as Yu Hae-won was about to pull the trigger, a toad suddenly blocked her scope, and that crafty prey vanished at once. Still, Yu Hae-won hadn't come here to hunt rabbits. Now was time for her real job. The instant Han Suya sensed something off, she slipped behind the door. She had no idea who had been peeking at her from behind. But honestly, that kind of thing was a little embarrassing. Inside the control room, Ma Wenchong wondered why the rooftop camera had suddenly malfunctioned. But he had something even more important to focus on now. The 4th floor shark, who normally spent all his time sleeping, had now started attacking the school of fish. He had even entered a direct fight with the 1SD floor shark, Cha Jiang. To an observer, a massive upheaval in the ecosystem was naturally exciting. But this time, Ma Wenchong couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was as if someone were deliberately muddying the water. Even so, Ma Wenchong first had to play his role as an observer. With his weakness exposed, Tao Hyunwoo was starting to lose ground. Cha Juyong appeared behind Tao Hyunwoo in an instant. Strictly speaking, it had nothing to do with him. Even so, he still wanted to know why Tao Hyunwoo insisted on attacking with only his legs. It was almost as if someone had bound both of Tao Hyunwoo's hands. If a fighter uses only part of the upper body or lower body, then the number of techniques available naturally shrinks. That makes attack patterns easier to read, and it also limits defense, giving the opponent even more chances to press the assault. Fueled by rage, Cha Juyong entered Transcendent Heart once again. The next instant, his fist came surging in again. It cut through the air with a fierce howl. Tao Hyunwoo was blasted backward. He only stopped after crashing hard enough to shatter the prison faucet. The spray of water exploding everywhere dragged Tao Hyunwoo back into a memory he hated. That day, after forgetting to turn off the gas, all he wanted was to sleep through the entire day. As long as he sank into a dream, the crushing heaviness in his body would ease. But the family dog came to play with him again. Tao Hyunwoo told Kongwoo to be patient and wait until he got better. But just as he was about to sink back into sleep, Kongwoo kept barking and woke him up again. Tao Hyunwoo grabbed Kongwoo by the throat without hesitation to TO him. Anything that interfered with his sleep had no right to exist. Cha Juyong asked coldly, "Are you still going to keep fighting?" Then he mounted Tao Hyunwoo and pinned down both of his legs. At that point, surrender should have been Tao Hyunwoo's only option. But instead, Tao Hyunwoo suddenly raised a hand and clamped it around Cha Juyong's throat. By now, Tao Hyunwoo was already 30 minutes past his scheduled sleep time. He stared at Cha Juyong and told him the reason he had only been using his legs. His hands existed for one purpose only, killing. And now, Tao Hyunwoo intended to kill Cha Juyong with them. Drawing on that suffocating lethargy, he entered Transcendent Heart. Ma Wenchong watched the scene through the monitors with absolute focus. In his mind, Tao Hyunwoo fit the profile of an ambush predator from the deep sea, an angel shark. A creature belonging to the rare few that can sleep peacefully even in the deadly pressure of the deep ocean. Most of the time, it looks half asleep and harmless. But the moment it wakes, it erupts with a predator's instinct worthy of shark. But then Ma Wenchong noticed something was off. Tao Hyunwoo was clutching Cha Juyong by the throat with deadly force. He intended to put Cha Juyong into an eternal sleep. Yet in that instant, a terrifying aura exploded from Cha Juyong's body. Tao Hyunwoo was stunned by whatever that was. Right now, he wanted only one answer. Who exactly was Cha Juyong? The white-haired one's daily routine in the second hall of the juvenile prison was walking around with the black goat on a leash. One day, he happened to pass by the place Cha Juyong always visited whenever he had free time. He heard it had something to do with training related to Transcendent Heart. The area looked as if it had been shredded by machine gun fire. He knew a technique that repeatedly switched Transcendent Heart on and off had a limit. It allowed for relentless consecutive attacks. but it still couldn't end a battle in a single decisive blow. Yet the black goat suddenly started trembling as if it had been terrified by something. That was when the white-haired one realized Cha Jiang had found a way past that limit, because the place looked less like it had been riddled by bullets and more like it had been blasted by rockets. After unleashing that overwhelming aura, Cha Jiang drove Tao Hyunwoo back again. Tao Hyunwoo had no idea what had just happened, but Cha Jiang had clearly come prepared. His fist came crashing in again, fueled by pure rage. But Tao Hyunwoo, now in Transcendent Heart, was terrifyingly powerful as well. Cha Jiang barely managed to avoid the strike. He understood all too clearly just how much force Tao Hyunwoo carried in those hands. If he got caught by them one more time, he would die. Tao Hyunwoo's hands were meant for one thing only: killing. That began after he killed Kong Wu. His family gave Kong Wu a grand funeral, because Kong Wu was Tao Hyunwoo's only younger brother. Officially, the cause of death was said to be a fire caused by a gas leak. Young Kong Wu never made it out. His family all told Tao Hyunwoo not to grieve too much. But Tao Hyunwoo suddenly remembered the way Kong Wu struggled before he died, and that final cry of brother. Tao Hyunwoo didn't even know what he had really done. Because of his chronic drowsiness, his mind was always hazy, and hallucinations came often. His family all thought Tao Hyunwoo was pitiable. But the one who had killed his own younger brother with his own hands felt only an overwhelming rush of pleasure. It was the first time in his life that his body had ever felt this light. At last, he had found a way to stay awake. In the past, no matter how deeply Tao Hyunwoo slept, the exhaustion never left him. His life had always drifted between dreams and reality. Every single day was agony. But after snuffing out a life with his own hands, the sensation surging up through his fingertips felt so good that even he could hardly believe it. Still, that relief never lasted long. Cha Jiang's heart suddenly sank as he launched his attack. Grabbing hold of his leg, Tao Hyunwoo asked in a low voice, "Do you know why I joined Heavenly Dragon?" "Because only a criminal empire as massive as Heavenly Dragon lets me kill as much as I want." Then, all at once, Tao Hyunwoo's hand slipped off Cha Jiang's throat. Cha Jiang had smeared liquid soap across his neck beforehand. Tao Hyunwoo couldn't understand what the point was in all that dodging. But Cha Jiang knew he only needed to create a single instant of an opening. What Tao Hyunwoo hated most was having his time wasted. So he prepared to end the fight immediately with his final method. Cha Jiang suddenly felt an overwhelming pressure bearing down on him. Tao Hyunwoo truly did not want to use this move. Once he used it, he would be so drained that he wouldn't get up for 3 days and nights. But right now, he had to kill Cha Jiang. Cha Jiang could tell it too. There was no dodging this attack. But right at that moment, Tao Hyunwoo's body jerked to a halt. Otae-san and Jung Un-soo had thrown themselves at one of his legs and locked onto it together. Even so, they could delay him for only a single instant. But for Cha Jiang, that instant was enough. Transcendent Heart was, at its core, about surpassing one's own limits. But no one could maintain that state forever. Cha Jiang's answer was simple. Wait for the instant a perfect opening appeared. Then pour all the power he normally released only when necessary into one absolute strike, and let it erupt completely. The next second, a thunderous blast echoed through the entire prison. After unleashing that full power blow, Cha Jiang was already breathing hard. Tao Hyunwoo, meanwhile, had completely lost consciousness. Jung Un-soo immediately apologized to him, saying it was all his fault things had escalated this far. But Cha Jiang simply smiled and told them all to head back together. At the same time, inside the warden's office, Ma Wonchong was exercising his authority as warden over Han Suya. Han Suya, an infiltrator, had disrupted the ecosystem of the second hall of the juvenile prison, so Ma Wonchong had no choice but to deal with her as its warden. He lifted Han Suya's tattooed thigh. Ma Wonchong, of course, recognized it immediately that IT was the mark of Heavenly Dragon, a criminal organization that rose from a small gang into a top-tier corporate giant through airtight organization and raw force. On the surface, they now ran legitimate businesses, but behind the scenes, they were still involved in all kinds of illegal operations. Heavenly Dragon was, without question, the largest gang in South Korea, and Ma Wonchong had known from the very beginning that Han Suya was one of them. The only reason he had never dealt with her was because she was genuinely excellent at her job as administrative manager. Whether Han Suya was a gangster, a president, or even an alien, Ma Wonchong did not care. The only thing he cared about was his aquarium. In other words, the second hall of the juvenile prison. Han Suya's contact with the 4th floor shark had already disrupted the aquarium's ecosystem, so Ma Wonchong could no longer afford to sit back and watch. He warned Han Suya that if she dared interfere with the ecosystem of his aquarium again, then no one could predict what would happen next. Ma Wonchong wanted Han Suya to be like a beautiful coral, to stay in one corner and decorate his aquarium. Not long after, the inmates of the second hall held their regular prisoner rights improvement meeting. Each of the 5 floors sent one representative to attend on behalf of the School of Fish. The representative from the first floor, where Cha Juyong was Ote-san. Most of what they discussed was nothing more than everyday problems. For example, the toilet on the 3rd floor was clogged, so someone from the 2nd floor with plumbing skills needed to handle it. They also brought up the faucet damaged in the fight between Cha Juyong and Tao Hyunwoo a few days earlier. But the most important topic of this meeting was still the conflict involving the sharks. These ordinary fish had to think ahead about the future situation in the second hall, so they could prepare countermeasures in advance. Before anyone realized it, the only dual opponent left for the 1SD floor shark, Cha Juyong, was the 5th floor shark. There was almost no information on the 5th floor shark, but everyone knew he was stronger than the 4th floor shark. This time, the battle between the sharks had only damaged a faucet and some walls. But there was no guarantee the next, even fiercer battle would leave them that lucky. So the representatives at this meeting had to prepare for the possibility of mass casualties. Meanwhile, back in the room, Cha Juyong thanked Jung Eun-soo for cutting his hair. But what he truly wanted to thank them for was how desperately they had helped him during the fight with the 4th floor shark. Both Ote-san and Jung Eun-soo had risked their lives for him. Without the two of them, the move Cha Juyong came up with would never have landed. Even though he still didn't know what Tao Hyunwoo had been trying to do in that final instant, his instincts told him one thing clearly. If he had taken that hit, he would have died. If Tao Hyunwoo's final strike had really landed on Cha Juyong's body, then the one smashed into the wall would have been Cha Juyong. Back in the room, Cha Juyong praised Jung Eun-soo for having real talent in a fight. Starting tomorrow, he planned to train Jung Eun-soo properly that IT would be brutal. So for tonight, he told him to get some rest. Just then, Ote-san returned with shocking news he had heard during the meeting. Looking at Cha Juyong, he asked, "Boss, have you ever heard the name Qing Chi?" Meanwhile, Captain Ju Kong-chan from Heavenly Dragon arrived at a children's cafe in Gangnam district. Not long ago, he had still been meditating in a temple. Then an item retrieval mission suddenly came down from above. The target location was a children's cafe in Gangnam district. The only detail he had been given was that the item to be recovered was red. But the moment Ju Kong-chan reached the site, he sensed something was off. It seemed another gang was also there, searching for something red. Ju Kong-chan stepped right out in the open, intending to have a brief talk with them. One listen was enough for him to tell their accent sounded like it came from Busan. If a Busan gang had come all the way to Seoul to look for something, then someone had definitely sent them. One of them warned Ju Kong-chan to get lost before he counted to 3. But before the man could even finish speaking, he had already pulled a knife and launched a sudden strike, slashing toward Ju Kong-chan. The next second, blood burst from the man's carotid artery. Everyone else froze at the sight. Ju Kong-chan had already decided that anyone standing in the way of his mission would be wiped out. Not long ago, a member of Heavenly Dragon had gone to Busan. He sought out the Glory faction, which had once ruled Busan. But the Glory faction had long since fallen, reduced to a petty gang surviving off loan sharking. Its boss, Park Young-wang, found it strange that a Seoul gang would come all the way to a small place like Busan. In his view, affairs in Seoul should have been handled by Seoul people. The Heavenly Dragon operative said this job was better suited for someone with no ties to Seoul. He had even prepared a generous payment in advance. Park Young-wang froze for a moment when he saw that pile of cash. Because he knew people like them, nothing more than local street punks, were not worth that kind of fee. So this was blood money. The Heavenly Dragon operative, however, said the mission was only to retrieve an item. The real issue was that they might run into a dangerous figure while carrying it out. That was exactly why Heavenly Dragon was willing to pay so much. If Park Young-wang wanted the money, he would have to gamble with his life. And by now, he had already realized that Ju Kong-chan was the dangerous figure named in the file. The Glory faction members still tried to keep fighting, but Ju Kong-chan butchered them as easily as slaughtering chickens. Another Glory faction member gripped a knife, aiming for a sneak attack from behind. Ju Kong-chan said coldly, "Swinging a blade can be threatening, but if you really want to kill someone, you stab." The man who got stabbed instantly grabbed onto Ju Kong-chan in a death grip. Right after that, another Glory faction member slashed at him, but in the next instant, Ju Kong-chan vanished. He praised the man in a chilly voice. The ambush from behind wasn't bad. Too bad you're too slow to AT that speed. You'll never kill anyone. The last man still tried to strike, but in the next second, his body was sliced into countless pieces. Now the only one left in the Glory faction was that useless boss. Park Young-wang was hiding inside the slide, trembling, and Ju Kong-chan, with a dark expression, walked toward him one step at a time. In the next instant, Ju Kong-chan's body suddenly locked up. The Glory faction member had been hiding beneath the toy ball pit from the very beginning. He burst out and sent Ju Kong-chan flying. Park Young-wang lit up at once. That's our adorable youngest, Duba. No one could do a damn thing against a monster your size. Back when Park Young-wang accepted this job, the Heavenly Dragon operative had already warned him. The Qingqi were all battle-hardened veterans. They were born to become the sharpest blades, and their strength was nothing to underestimate. At first, Park Young-wang had thought it was strange that if someone like Ju Kongchan showed up, why not just kill him on the spot? But now he finally understood. Heavenly Dragon wanted to see whether the Fallen Glory faction still had what it took to stand against Ju Kongchan. And yet, at that very moment, Park Young-wang was completely dumbfounded. Somehow, several knives were already buried in Duba's body, and then he collapsed to the floor without moving again. Ju Kongchan coldly demanded, "You still don't plan on telling me who's behind this?" But Park Young-wang suddenly burst into laughter. He declared that all of Busan's turf belonged to him. Even if he died, Park Young-wang refused to lose face. That was why he had brought the entire Glory faction to Seoul this time. Ju Kongchan gave them a quick count. There were roughly 40 of them left, and Park Young-wang started acting arrogant all over again. But Ju Kongchan still had other things to do. He didn't have time to keep playing with these people. Then, to everyone's shock, he threw away the knife in his hand. The chill ran straight down Park Young-wang's spine, because he understood exactly what that meant. Ju Kongchan was about to draw his real blade. 15 years earlier, at Incheon Port. Back then, 17-year-old Ju Kongchan was already carrying out missions as a Qingqi. Then a low voice suddenly asked, "Did you kill all of these people?" Ju Kongchan's hand snapped up at once, ready to strike. Cha Kong-ryong simply praised him. "Your reactions really are fast." He had already heard that Ju Kongchan was both Qingqi-level talent and a serious problem case. At only 17, Ju Kongchan could tear apart dozens of enemies with his bare hands, and he wouldn't even blink doing it. Cha Kong-ryong found that very satisfying. Ju Kongchan coldly told him to spit it out or get the hell lost. Cha Kong-ryong warned him that if he couldn't control his temper, even the sharpest blade would eventually break. He wanted Ju Kongchan to enter his scabbard. He would be the one to wield Ju Kongchan as a blade. And now, it was finally time for Ju Kongchan to reveal his real blade. Hearing him, Park Young-wang couldn't help laughing again. After all, the Glory faction weren't pushovers either. 15 years ago, the Glory faction had been the underground emperors of Busan. Anyone who dared provoke them was dragged into the sea and fed to the fish. Back then, the infamous Busan Glory had shaken even the Pacific shallows. But Park Young-wang still couldn't understand what had gone wrong. How had the same men who once ruled so ferociously ended up being wiped out like this? Barehanded, Ju Kongchan took down more than 40 men armed with knives. No matter how Park Young-wang looked at it, the whole thing felt absurd. Ju Kongchan pressed him again, demanding to know who was behind this. Park Young-wang hurriedly said he didn't know who the client really was. He had only taken the money and done the job. If it meant staying alive, he was willing to hand over every cent. But Ju Kongchan had never intended to kill Park Young-wang in the first place, because cleanup time had already arrived. Heavenly Dragon seen Cleanup Team 3 arrived just then to handle the aftermath. Its leader, Hurricane Gil, absolutely loved the smell of blood. To him, severed arms with cuts that clean and precise were practically works of art. Even Ju Kongchan hadn't expected the cleanup crew to arrive this fast. Hurricane Gil, however, found it strange that Ju Kongchan seemed different from before, so much quieter now. Park Young-wang was a live witness Ju Kongchan had intentionally left behind. There were still too many suspicious points in this matter, and it had to be handed over to the Risk Management Division for questioning. The scene was littered with severed limbs. Even so, Hurricane Gil still had the mood to invite Ju Kongchan out for barbecue once everything was done. But Ju Kongchan still had other business to take care of. Hurricane Gil sighed and joked, "What? Even your taste changed now." Then, as if remembering something, Hurricane Gil paused. He told Ju Kongchan with a meaningful look that things around Cha Kong-ryong lately didn't seem easy either. Speaking as a friend, Hurricane Gil warned Ju Kongchan to be careful. Around people like them, the moment you let your guard down, you get devoured whole. That kind of thing was common in their world. Not long after, Ju Kongchan sped down the highway. He hadn't expected the recovery item to be hidden inside a doll dressed in red. In the end, Ju Kongchan still muttered the question under his breath. What the hell was inside it? But the person who gave the order didn't know what was inside the doll either. He was only following instructions when he passed the mission on to Ju Kongchan. The Heavenly Dragon member who had commissioned the Glory faction reported to his superior that they had been wiped out by Ju Kongchan. But Young Woon only let out a mocking laugh, because that fool Ju Kongchan had completely swallowed the bait he threw out. The abandoned building where Young Woon was now standing was the place where Heavenly Dragon first began. From their rookie days, he and Cha Kong-ryong had already gone through life and death together there. The two of them were irreplaceable friends who understood each other better than anyone. Now, all Young-woon wanted was to personally send that old friend off, and the time would be tonight. Young-woon had already prepared a coffin and funeral portrait for Cha Kang-ryong, 12 hours before Ju Kang-chan's clash with the Glory faction. Young-woon convened Heavenly Dragon's Council of Elders, the White Dragon Council, at headquarters. The elders seated at the head found it strange. He couldn't understand why Young-woon would call an emergency council while the chairman was absent. Young-woon calmly explained that there was no choice but to convene the council, because a traitor had emerged within Heavenly Dragon, and that traitor was none other than Cha Kang-ryong, the current number 2, widely regarded as the strongest dragon. The moment he said that, the entire room erupted. The man at the head told Young-woon to present evidence before saying anything more. Unhurried as ever, Young-woon continued. Cha Kang-ryong's private estate, Manhwa Pavilion. A group of unidentified people had been living there, and every one of them looked like they had been trained under a special forces system. To put it more bluntly, Cha Kang-ryong has been secretly raising a private army right under Heavenly Dragon's nose. The elders immediately broke into discussion, and most of them agreed that this alone still wasn't enough to prove Cha Kang-ryong was a traitor. Young-woon, of course, already knew they would say that, so he went on. Not long ago, someone was arrested by the Risk Management Division for repeatedly embezzling Heavenly Dragon's internal funds. After tracing that person's transfers to overseas accounts, they ultimately found that the money had been funneled into a Swiss bank account, and the owner of that account had already been confirmed to be Cha Kang-ryong. After multiple rounds of interrogation against the member accused of embezzlement, he finally confessed that the money had been used to maintain Cha Kang-ryong's army, and that everything was for the sake of rebelling against Heavenly Dragon. In truth, Young-woon really had obtained those statements, but they were only the result of continuous torture, dragged out until he got the answer he wanted. To make that happen, Young-woon had even pulled the first team leader of the Risk Management Division over to his side. After he finished revealing all of that, the entire meeting hall fell silent. But the man in the main seat still said that none of it counted as decisive evidence. After all, a confession extracted under torture could never be fully trusted. Young-woon was genuinely frustrated with that stubborn old fossil, so he had no choice but to reveal the decisive piece of evidence, Cha Ji-young. The man in the main seat already knew that Cha Kang-ryong had a child, but he had never expected that child to be locked up in juvenile prison. Young-woon said coldly that Cha Kang-ryong's son had shown a number of abnormal behaviors not long ago. Most notably, he kept clashing with Heavenly Dragon's new forces. It was almost as if someone had been directing him, and the one directing his own son to do all of this was Cha Kang-ryong. He had only one goal, to place his own blood at the very top of Heavenly Dragon. The entire room instantly fell silent. Then the elders all reacted as if the claim were far too outrageous. Young-woon muttered under his breath that these senile old men still had no idea what was really going on. In order to control the upper ranks of Heavenly Dragon and support his son, Cha Kang-ryong established a direct military force. To maintain that direct force and secure control over company shares, he needed financial power. And by having his son suppress Heavenly Dragon's rising talents inside juvenile prison, he was securing the title of the next generation's most promising prodigy. Every one of these circumstances and suspicions pointed to the same conclusion. Cha Kang-ryong had spent his whole life dreaming of reaching the top of Heavenly Dragon and failed, so now he intended to place his son there instead. Those pieces of evidence were already enough to make the elders start doubting him. Young-woon knew his objective had been achieved. Not long afterward, he walked out of the meeting room looking perfectly composed. At that same time, Ju Kang-chan was on his way to the designated location to retrieve the item. Returning to the present, Ju Kang-chan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off after completing the mission. A Busan gang with no connection to Heavenly Dragon had not only been instructed to seize something belonging to Heavenly Dragon, but had also received the exact same order as Ju Kang-chan. But the whole thing felt a little too convenient. Ju Kang-chan pulled the USB drive out of the doll. He had to find out what this thing really was. After the computer finished a brief load, a meaningless stock ad popped onto the screen. Ju Kang-chan instantly realized it was a trap. Then Hurricane Gill's loaded remark flashed through his mind. He understood at once. This mission had been nothing more than a decoy to draw him away from Manhwa Pavilion. Ju Kang-chan immediately whipped the car around and sped straight back to Manhwa Pavilion. Meanwhile, inside Cha Kang-ryong's private villa in Manhwa Pavilion, Cha Kang-ryong once again came to the place he always visited whenever he couldn't sleep but didn't feel like drinking. But this time it was different. Cha Kang-ryong was thoroughly irritated by the people getting in his way. He couldn't help wondering if this was Young-woon's doing. After all, anyone trying to capture Cha Kang-ryong would need to prepare at least this much. Even so, Cha Kang-ryong simply told them to fire. That was if they were actually capable of landing the shot. The professional assassins who came for his life clearly hadn't expected that they had already been seen through. One of them was the blind one, the see-no monkey. Another was the deaf one, the hear-no monkey. And the last was the mute one, the speak-no monkey. These three assassins, known for repeatedly taking down national-level figures, were called the three wise monkeys in the killer world. The next instant, a poison needle shot straight at Cha Kang-ryong. Cha Kang-ryong dodged it with ease and sneered that their tricks were still as stale as ever. The trio vanished into the woods in an instant. With a silver wire in his hand, the hear-no monkey mocked him. How can a classic move be called stale? Cha Kang-ryong immediately yanked hard on the silver wire wrapped around him. But that too was nothing more than a trap set by the hear-no monkey. Cha Kang-ryong instantly flashed aside and dodged the giant log swinging in from the other end of the wire. Seizing the opening, the hear-no monkey came around behind him with a dagger in hand. Even with one hand, Cha Kang-ryong still caught him. But the other two monkeys lunged in at the same time, blade stabbing toward him. Ju Kong-chan was rushing back to Chanhua Pavilion to protect Cha Kang-ryong when someone cut him off. Ryu Jin-hyuk, captain of Protocol Security Team 3 under Heavenly Dragon, coldly told him that he was speeding. The moment Ju Kong-chan saw him, he understood. This really was Young Woong's doing. Ryu Jin-hyuk stated it bluntly. Cha Kang-ryong and all of his close aides had already been branded as traitors. Top-tier assassins had also accepted the contract and were already on their way to hunt Cha Kang-ryong down. Judging by the timing, the operation should have been nearly over by now. Ju Kong-chan's protection mission had already failed. But Ju Kong-chan shot back and asked whether Ryu Jin-hyuk really thought Cha Kang-ryong needed something like protection. In truth, what Ju Kong-chan was going there to do had never been protection. He was going to stop Cha Kang-ryong while he was in a state of fury. He was going to stop the massacre that was about to begin. Ryu Jin-hyuk answered in an icy voice. As the captain of Protocol Security Team 2, Ju Kong-chan had failed to carry out his duty to protect. In that case, Ryu Jin-hyuk would show him what real protection looked like. Both men vanished from where they stood at the exact same instant. This was a direct clash between Cha Kang-ryong's trusted man and Young Woong's trusted man. Meanwhile, inside Chanhua Pavilion, Cha Kang-ryong had already brought down the three monkeys. He was just about to put force into his grip and crush the filthy monkey in his hand. Then his body suddenly turned heavy and he slammed down to his knees. The see-no monkey mocked him and asked if it was because his body was just too big. The poison had only kicked in now. It turned out that the poison needle Cha Kang-ryong had touched was coated with atropine, a toxin that could blind a person. The silver wire had quinine on it, enough to rob someone of their hearing. And the short blade was coated with curare, which could paralyze the muscles of the vocal cords. That meant Cha Kang-ryong would be reduced to a state of blindness and deafness, unable even to let out a roar. In the end, he would slowly die in fear and loneliness as every sensory function in his body gradually faded away. That was the true reason behind the name of the three wise monkeys. A dense barrage of poison needles shot at Cha Kang-ryong again. Silver wire followed, right after, coiling around his body. The three wise monkeys had believed that if they took down one of the underworld's top figures tonight, they would rise to the very top of the underworld themselves. But at that exact moment, Cha Kang-ryong charged straight at them. The trio was stunned that by all logic, the poison should have already spread through his entire body. However, in order to climb to the height he stood at today, Cha Kang-ryong had already gone through countless rounds of poison resistance training. On his way up, he had lost count of how many enemies who used poison he had faced. In Cha Kang-ryong's eyes, poison at the level of the three wise monkeys wasn't even as real as a hard drink. Cha Kang-ryong's heavy fist blasted toward the trio. Blood exploded across the air in an instant. One of the monkeys had his head blown apart on the spot by Cha Kang-ryong's single punch. Cha Kang-ryong did not agree with their talk about dying alone in solitude, because death itself was always lonely, even if a man had friends by his side. 25 years earlier, Cha Kang-ryong and Young Woong had been close friends who fought side by side. Every time they finished a mission together, they would sit down and drink soju. Back then, Young Woong had already sworn that he would climb to the top of Heavenly Dragon and enjoy all the wealth and glory it had to offer. As for Cha Kang-ryong, the only reason he kept clawing his way upward was to prove to himself that he was still alive. Young Woong had once said that if they were going to climb, then doing it alone would be far too boring. So he decided he would climb together with Cha Kang-ryong, the only friend he had. Cha Kang-ryong asked Young Woong whether he didn't find it laughable. The closest of friends from the past had now drawn blades on each other. Cha Kang-ryong picked up the earpiece from one of the three wise monkeys and started speaking to Young Woong. Cha Kang-ryong told Young Woong to come out so they could have one last good showdown. Meanwhile, inspectors from the Ministry of Justice arrived at the second hall of the juvenile prison. They were there to randomly pick a few inmates for interviews. As a result, Cha Juyong was called out yet again. The moment she saw him, the woman praised the murderous look in his eyes, saying it was exactly like his father's. Cha Juyong immediately demanded to know who she was. Yu Hei-won, Cha Kongryong's trusted aide and a heavenly dragon headhunter, smiled and said that if he called her big sister, she would tell him. Inside the warden's office, Ma Won-chong found the whole thing strange. These overworked government officials were supposedly busy, so why had they come running back to this small prison that was operating just fine? She forced a smile and explained that this was only a routine inmate human rights survey, and that the higher-ups had suddenly moved up the report deadline. That only made Ma Won-chong even more suspicious. If it was just a routine report, then why had the deadline suddenly been changed? Hidden in the shadows, Han Suya also found that explanation rather hard to make sense of. In truth, Yu Hei-won had gone through a great deal just to sneak in here under Cha Kongryong's orders. After all, even entering or leaving this place was controlled at a state security level. Yu Hei-won grabbed leverage on senior officials in the Ministry of Justice, then pushed and tempted them from every angle until she finally slipped inside under the pretense of a human rights inspection. To prepare for any sudden complication, she had even climbed the back hill and studied the layout of the entire prison. The more Yu Hei-won looked at Cha Juyong, the more he reminded her of Cha Kongryong. But what she could not understand was how Cha Juyong could feel no gratitude at all. He actually wanted to kill the only biological father he had in this world, and all for nothing more than a dead girl. The next second, Yu Hei-won's throat was locked in a crushing grip. Cha Juyong warned her that if she did not want her mouth torn apart, she had better stop talking recklessly. Elsewhere, Ju Kongchan and Ryu Jin-hyuk had already finished their first exchange. Ryu Jin-hyuk coldly said that protocol security was a form of power forged from many elements, yet kept under extreme restraint. If Ju Kongchan had been recognized as a captain in a place like this, then his strength was clearly no joke either. Known as the wind-splitting blade, Ju Kongchan actually split a car open with a hand blade. He moved so fast that he almost left after images behind him. Ju Kongchan had also heard the stories about the captain of Protocol Security Team 3. After dodging Ju Kongchan's handblade, Ryu Jin-hyuk's figure flashed. In the very next instant, he appeared above Ju Kongchan. Then came a thunderous blast. Known as the contained punch, Ryu Jin-hyuk caved a car with nothing but his fist. At that point, both sides' vehicles were basically scrap. The car Ju Kongchan had struck with his handblade began to leak fuel. Ryu Jin-hyuk had not expected Ju Kongchan's power to have such terrifying penetrating force. Moments later, the leaking car exploded. Ju Kongchan was finally about to fight seriously. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Yu Hei-won was pinned against the wall by Cha Juyong. Yet she only said calmly that his explosive temper was exactly like his father's. Yu Hei-won apologized for her careless remark and reminded Cha Juyong that it was about time for him to let go. After all, if anyone saw an inmate choking a government official, things would get troublesome fast. But Cha Juyong did not care, because if he exposed Yu Hei-won's heavenly dragon ties on the spot, the situation would become even more troublesome. In the end, the two of them still sat down and talked. Yu Hei-won said there was no intel at all on the remaining sharks on the 5th floor, making them impossible to get a read on. Next, Cha Juyong would still have to face countless Qin-chi. In Cha Kongryong's eyes, Cha Juyong had only just crawled out of the worm stage and taken on the shape of a snake. He still had a long way to go before he could truly become a Qin-chi. Cha Kongryong had said that everyone evolved in a different way. That was why he had Yu Hei-won deliver this item to Cha Juyong. It was the very method of evolving into a Qin-chi, something Cha Kongryong had never taught his son before. Cha Juyong stared at the note in his hand, still not understanding what it meant. Just then, the door to the interview room was suddenly thrown open. Ma Won-chong demanded to know why a purely formal interview that should have ended long ago was still going on. Another guard explained that the Ministry of Justice staffer had already wrapped up the interview and left a moment ago. Ma Won-chong could not help feeling puzzled. Had he really just been overreacting? Late that night, Han Suya returned home with groceries, planning to make a full meal. But then she suddenly realized she had forgotten to buy meat. So she casually picked up a kitchen knife and started thinking about what kind of meat to get. If she was making curry, then maybe meat from a sow would be the best fit. But the Yu Hei-won who had quietly slipped inside praised her instead, saying Han Suya's awareness was impressively sharp. Han Suya replied with a smile that there was now a sweet scent in the house, so there was no way she could have missed it. Yu Hei-won tried to snatch the knife in that opening, but failed on the spot. Han Suya demanded to know whether sneaking into a single woman's home in secret made Yu Hei-won some kind of pervert. After being tripped, Yu Hei-won only got more excited when she heard Han Suya call her pervert. Han Suya instantly raised the knife, ready to take her out, but the stab missed its mark. It turned out Yu Hei-won had wrapped a piece of underwear around Han Suya's neck and pulled tight. Yu Hei-won found it amusing. Han Suya was the one calling her a pervert, yet Han Suya herself had done so many filthy things inside the prison. So who was the real deviant here? Once she realized what had happened, Han Suya immediately slashed through the underwear with her knife. Now Yu Hei-won was going to carry out the sentence on this filthy blonde prison guard. Han Suya had long since heard of Yu Hei-won, the famous senior and trusted aide of Cha Kang-ryong. Right then, Yu Hei-won raised her gun, ready to teach Han Suya a proper lesson. Han Suya was so startled that she instantly ducked into the corner. She had never expected Yu Hei-won to be carrying a gun. But while pulling something out of the gun barrel, Yu Hei-won told her to stop hiding. Han Suya was speechless. She honestly could not understand why Yu Hei-won would stuff needles into a gun. In the next second, Yu Hei-won's dense barrage was already right in front of Han Suya. The needles she fired were somehow even faster than bullets. Han Suya said with a smile that going this hard on such an innocent junior was a little too terrifying, senior. But Yu Hei-won had no intention of letting such a cute junior go. The battlefield on the other side had already been reduced to a complete wreck. At the moment, it was nearly impossible to tell whether Ju Kangchan or Ryu Jin-hyuk had the upper hand. The key to this showdown was simple: which would shatter first, Ju Kangchan's blade or Ryu Jin-hyuk's fist? Ju Kangchan's hand blade and Ryu Jin-hyuk's punch slammed into each other once again. A sharp sting started shooting through Ju Kangchan's hand. Ryu Jin-hyuk couldn't help but wonder, had cracks already begun to form in Ju Kangchan's blade? In the next instant, Ju Kangchan was blasted away by a single punch from Ryu Jin-hyuk. Ryu Jin-hyuk understood it well, and no matter how sharp a blade was, repeated heavy impacts would eventually break it. But at that very moment, Ju Kangchan suddenly laughed, because he understood the same thing too, and no matter how hard a stone might be, if it was carved by a blade enough times, it would eventually crack apart. Meanwhile, the fight on the other side was still raging on. Han Suya and Yu Hei-won were both unbelievably agile. In a blink of an eye, their weapons had already clashed through several exchanges. A huge slash had been torn across Yu Hei-won's top. Han Suya's stockings had also been shredded to rags. Yu Hei-won was just about to finish Han Suya off, but Han Suya suddenly pulled out a baton. After all, as a prison guard, she had to come prepared with at least this much if she wanted to suppress criminals. Yu Hei-won instantly sensed that Han Suya's presence had changed. The baton came crashing down again. Han Suya told her senior not to make any reckless moves, because from this point on, things were only about to get hotter. At the same time, the situation on the other battlefield had already spiraled into complete chaos. Ju Kangchan hung from the edge of the bridge, his whole body swaying on the verge of falling. He could not believe it. That relentless barrage of attacks from just now had clearly all landed. So how could Ryu Jin-hyuk possibly still be completely unharmed? Ryu Jin-hyuk soon gave Ju Kangchan the answer himself. The truth was that Ryu Jin-hyuk had already put on a bulletproof vest in advance. That was not some dirty trick. It was basic protocol security discipline. No matter how hard the other side struggled, it would not change a thing. Tonight, Cha Kang-ryong's side was destined to be written into the record of losers and erased for good. 25 years earlier, Cha Kang-ryong and Young-woong had been close friends who fought side by side. Back then, they had just finished violently collecting a loan shark debt from a nightclub. Covered in blood, Young-woong sneered that the nightclub boss had looked so arrogant. Yet in the end, he still abandoned all his men and ran off alone. Cha Kang-ryong then asked Young-woong whether he had already forgotten what the senior said on the day they joined Heavenly Dragon. In this world, even friends who fought side by side had to stay ready to be betrayed at any moment. After hearing that provocation from Cha Kang-ryong, Young-woong burst out laughing on the spot. He said he would show Cha Kang-ryong what a real bastard looked like. Inside Chanhua Pavilion, Cha Kang-ryong's subordinate lowered his head and apologized. Letting assassins break in that easily was a complete failure on their part. But to Cha Kang-ryong, that was nothing worth caring about. His direct military force was already standing by. The moment Cha Kang-ryong gave the order, his men would mobilize all of Chanhua Pavilion's forces and march straight on Young-woong. But Cha Kang-ryong confidently declared that he alone was already enough. 9 hours earlier, Cha Juyong lay on his bed, staring quietly at the note in his hand. In the end, he still unfolded it to see what was written inside. The others in the room were busy putting makeup on the black goat. Everyone looked strangely cheerful, almost like they were enjoying themselves together. Cha Juyong understood that it was probably because all the sharks had recently been sent to the hospital. That was why the atmosphere in the prison felt livelier than before. But Cha Juyong still felt that something was off. It was too quiet now, quiet enough to make a skin crawl. Just then, the president of the Human Rights Improvement Council also came into the room. Oh Tae-san immediately introduced the man's identity to Cha Juyong. After hearing from Oh Tae-san that Cha Juyong intended to confront the 5th floor shark head-on, The president came personally to tell him a secret about that 5TA floor shark. In an entire prison, only the president knew this secret. A few years earlier, when he was first assigned to the second hall of the juvenile prison, he had been placed on the 5th floor. Back then, however, he had heard that there was an uncontrollable inmate there known as the Shark. At the time, he had been terrified out of his mind. But after a month passed, he realized he might have worried for nothing. Because in all that time, he had not even seen a single strand of the 5th floor Shark's hair. Then one day, unable to suppress his curiosity any longer, the president secretly went to peek into the Shark's room. He had expected that brutal shark to be doing physical training or practicing how to kill. But what he saw instead was the shark sitting quietly at a desk, playing chess. Whether it was mealtime, a surprise prison inspection, or even a typhoon day, the 5th floor shark never left his room and only kept playing chess. He also had one strange trait. Those countless evenly matched chess pieces were actually all part of the shark playing both sides against himself. Out of sheer curiosity, the president secretly asked one of the guards about it. The guard told him that the shark's opponent was not himself, but a certain inmate who had once played chess with him in the past. That man had been a chess prodigy who swept all kinds of championship tournaments. Even so, every single time they played, the 5th floor shark still came out on top. Under the 5th floor shark's orders, that same repeated match had continued to play out day after day. One day, the 5th floor shark suddenly realized something. That chess prodigy was clearly powerful, and every match between them stayed fierce and evenly matched from start to finish. But once the game reached its final few moves, the prodigy would always lose to the shark, almost as if he were throwing the match on purpose. The moment he was seen through, the chess prodigy immediately lowered his head and apologized to the shark. The 5th floor shark then ordered him to go all out from that moment on. After that, the two went through another intense battle of attack and defense across the board. But in the end, the winner was still the 5th floor shark. The chess prodigy sincerely praised him, saying the shark was truly strong. But the shark praised him right back, saying he really was impressive after all. Even in that situation, he had still found room to hold back on purpose. Then the shark told the chess prodigy a story about chess. In history, there had once been a tyrant who told a rebel minister that if he could defeat him on the chessboard, he would spare his life as a reward. But in order to flatter the ruler, that minister deliberately lost to him. And because of that, he was condemned for deceiving his king. From that day on, he never got another chance to play chess again. That was everything the president knew about the 5th floor shark. And that piece of information had only been traded for because Ote-san had secretly slipped the president a bottle of chocolate milk. After hearing the word king, Cha Juyong fell into thought. Meanwhile, Ma Won-chang had turned the second hall of the juvenile prison into an aquarium with a fully functioning ecosystem. Inside that aquarium, ordinary inmates were small fish, while vicious and uncontrollable inmates were sharks. The sharks kept one another in check while also intimidating the small fish, creating a deeply ironic kind of peace. That was the theory Ma Won-chang called the shark paradox, yet the South Korean government had never noticed the truth behind it. Because Ma Won-chang's so-called shark paradox had been nothing more than a smokescreen from the very beginning. The truly insane experiment only began accelerating after Cha Juyong arrived. And now, only 2-inch sharks remained in that aquarium. Cha Juyong on the 1st floor and Ku Yungang on the 5th. Ma Won-chang intended to completely empty out the entire aquarium tonight. To make that happen, he personally went to see John Chang-hee, the warden of the 1st hall of the juvenile prison. Ma Won-chang asked John Chang-hee to turn every speaker in the 1st hall all the way up at midnight tonight. He had to make sure the entire prison could hear the music. As for the reason, Ma Won-chang still could not reveal it yet. By tomorrow morning, John Chang-hee would understand on his own. After that, every prison guard in the 2nd hall was mobilized. They were ordered to move every flammable and explosive item to a safe location before nightfall. Ma Won-chang had once watched a documentary about an aquarium. In it, 5 sharks had been living inside the aquarium, yet 3 of them died one after another under bizarre circumstances. To repair the equipment and check on the health of the sharks, the aquarium decided to temporarily move the rest of the fish outside. That left only 2 sharks inside the massive tank. Not long after, something unbelievable happened inside that tank. Ma Won-chang could not help wondering what would happen if the sharks were replaced with humans. Late at night, every inmate was already asleep. Then a shrill fire alarm suddenly tore through the silence. Every inmate in the prison immediately started fleeing outside. But before Cha Juyong could make it out, the door had somehow already been locked shut. Even though Cha Juyong kicked the locked iron door open in a single blow, all the other inmates had already escaped. And at the end of the hallway, a fire shutter rose up and completely cut off Cha Juyong's path. Cha Juyong instantly realized that something was seriously wrong. Only after getting into the car did Oh Tae-san and Young Un-soo realize that Cha Juyong still had not made it out. After piecing together what had happened, the white-haired one was stunned too. He had not expected that someone out there could be even crazier than him when it came to enjoying a good fight. Through the monitors, a guard reported to Ma Won-chang that all inmates had already been transported by vehicle to the first hall for evacuation. Only now could Ma Won-chang finally search for the answer to the question buried deep inside him. In an aquarium that had originally been held together by a fragile piece. Once the competing forces and the fish were removed one after another, what kind of reaction would the last 2-inch shark show? Ma Won-chang had spent a long time recreating the exact same conditions from that documentary. And now, he was going to confirm it with his own eyes. He wanted to know whether this phenomenon could also hold true for humans. As the vehicles pulled out for the first hall, Oh Tae-san hurriedly told the guard that someone was still trapped inside the prison. But the guard chose to ignore him outright. Oh Tae-san immediately sensed that something about this was seriously off. The moment the alarm went off in the middle of the night, every inmate was rushed onto the vehicles. And even though they were calling it a fire alarm, there was not a trace of smoke anywhere. There were simply too many suspicious details. Cut off from escape, Cha Juyong discovered that the barrier in front of him was a specially made firewall, absurdly tough and solid. Even the windows had been completely sealed off by the same kind of barrier. Cha Juyong instantly realized that someone was deliberately isolating the prison from the outside world. And he already had a pretty good guess who would do something like that. Elsewhere, Han Suya had to return to the prison because the higher-ups had already ordered that no matter what happened tonight, every guard had to remain there on standby. So she prepared to inject Yu Hae-won with a high-powered sedative. That drug had been banned more than a decade ago because its effects were simply too extreme. Han Suya even told her senior, Yu Hae-won, not to be too afraid. After all, the drug's only side effect was merely paralyzing the autonomic nervous system. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Cha Juyong kept observing his surroundings. He found that the path to the basement and the route to the cafeteria had both been sealed off, along with even the emergency escape stairs. At that point, the only way left open was the staircase leading upward. But even all the exits on the second floor had already been blocked off as well. Cha Juyong still did not know the reason behind it. But for now, the only thing he could do was keep moving upward, all the way to the top floor of the prison, the 5th floor. Right then, the announcement system suddenly declared that the prison was entering a total blackout. And yet every angle of Cha Juyong's movements was still being displayed in perfect detail on the monitors. Ma Won-chang was already thrilled out of his mind, because for him, tonight was going to be a feast. Cha Juyong had no idea what that bizarre warden was really trying to accomplish. But in the dead silence of the darkness, a broken, intermittent knocking sound suddenly rang out. Following the source of the noise, Cha Juyong made his way to the room it was coming from. And when he looked inside, he found someone still playing chess. The moment he saw the board, Cha Juyong understood at once. The person in front of him was the 5th floor shark, Ku Yun-gang. Even in a crisis like this, Cha Juyong could hardly believe that the man was still calmly playing chess. But Ku Yun-gang raised a hand and cut Cha Juyong off before he could say more, because he had never allowed anyone to step into his room. Cha Juyong calmly asked whether entering the room really required Ku Yun-gang's permission first. Ku Yun-gang answered coldly that, in this place, nothing could be done without his permission, not even breathing. Then Cha Juyong sat down and began a game with Ku Yun-gang. After only a few moves, Ku Yun-gang could already tell that Cha Juyong did not really know how to play chess. Cha Juyong calmly said that he had only played a few times as a child, so of course he could not compare to someone like Ku Yun-gang, who locked himself in a room every day just to play. Ku Yun-gang asked Cha Juyong whether he knew why he shut himself inside that room to play chess. Because chess was, at its core, a fierce battle of attack and defense. And the game had only one true objective, the king. While trying to bring down the enemy king, a player also had to think about how to protect his own. Every single choice and judgment tested whether a person had the makings of king. On the other side of the monitors, Ma Won-chang could not understand what he was even looking at. The Cha Juyong he knew should have already launched a savage attack on the 5th floor shark by now. Yet instead, Cha Juyong was sitting there in total calm, playing a game with Ku Yun-gang. Ma Won-chang ran through several possible explanations for this strange scene. In the end, though, he arrived at a surprisingly simple answer. The unique composure and restraint carried by the 5th floor shark had actually rubbed off on Cha Juyong as well. The match inside the room came to an end not long after. No matter how anyone looked at it, Cha Juyong had lost. Cha Juyong asked Ku Yun-gang whether he possessed what people called the qualifications of king. After all, he had done his best with every move he made. But Ku Yun-gang did not even understand what Cha Juyong was talking about. because a king was never something a person could become through effort alone. That was a fate decided from birth. Other than himself, everyone else had been born as mere pawns. No matter how much they struggled, no matter how hard they tried, at best they could only become rooks or knights. They could never become a king. Ku Yungang said all of that for Cha Juyong's own good. Because when a person overreached and set his sights on a position far beyond his reach, that desire itself became a curse. The moment he took one wrong step, he was bound to fall and be shattered to pieces. Cha Juyong thanked Ku Yungang for the warning. In the next instant, he flicked his own king piece with his fingertip. The piece tore through the air and smashed straight toward the other king piece. The two pieces collided, sending shards shooting past Ku Yungang's hair by a razor-thin margin. In the end, Ku Yungang's king piece was blown apart on the spot. Since Ku Yungang said chess was a game of bringing down the other side's king, Cha Juyong asked him how it felt to be shattered to pieces. Elsewhere, Cha Kangryong had also arrived at the old site where Heavenly Dragon first rose to power. Inside, Yung Woong had even prepared a coffin and a memorial portrait for him. But Cha Kangryong only found the whole thing childish and laughable. Soon after, Yung Woong arrived there with a group of men. With a mocking grin, he asked Cha Kangryong whether he had seen the gift he prepared for him. Cha Kangryong coldly replied that he would personally tear that gift right off Yung Woong's head. Then Yung Woong entered the building alone. As for the others, every one of them belonged to Heavenly Dragon's strategic planning office. They were only there to make sure that whatever happened inside, that building never reached the outside world. Acting like an ordinary old friend, Yung Woong asked Cha Kangryong whether the cigarette tasted good. The two of them then drifted into old memories about the stories they had shared with their fellow comrades from the same class. But in the end, the conversation still came back to all those peers, seniors and juniors. When all was said and done, everyone except the two of them was dead. Yung Woong could never forgive Cha Kangryong for causing all of that. But Cha Kangryong only found Yung Woong pathetic, because no matter what he did, the dead would never come back. Elsewhere, Ju Kongchan still hung from the edge of the bridge, barely holding on. Ryu Jinhyuk asked him whether he knew why he had lost. Falling into a trap was never the real reason. Ryu Jinhyuk had won simply because Ju Kongchan was not loyal enough to Yung Woong. Ju Kongchan had lost because he was nothing more than Cha Kangryong's loyal but foolish dog. As the blade pierced through Ju Kongchan's hand, his body began to drop. Elsewhere, Han Suya had already injected the drug into Yuhei-won. What Yuhei-won did not know was that the first time Han Suya saw her in Heavenly Dragon, she thought Yuhei-won was both strong and beautiful, so Han Suya had secretly admired her ever since. Han Suya had once thought that if she ever managed to climb upward herself, she would definitely challenge Yuhei-won to a real fight. But now, being able to personally send off the senior she had always respected did not seem so bad either. Yet Yuhei-won, completely unharmed, had no idea what kind of nonsense Han Suya had been rambling about this whole time. Because the one who had actually been injected with the drug was Han Suya herself. Everything that had just happened was nothing more than a hallucination. Even Yuhei-won had not expected to hear such an adorable confession from a junior in a place like this. She said that the next time they met, she would gladly give her junior the real fight she wanted. Elsewhere, after finishing off Ju Kongchan, Ryu Jinhyuk was ready to head back. According to his deal with Yung Woong, starting tomorrow, he would be taking the seat of captain of Protocol Security Team 2. But Ju Kongchan sneered and asked whether a mere Team 2 captain seat was really enough to make Ryu Jinhyuk willingly join hands with Yung Woong. It turned out that while falling, Ju Kongchan had grabbed the swaying rope and climbed his way back up. Now, Ju Kongchan was about to show Ryu Jinhyuk the technique he had spent years honing. Normally, Ju Kongchan excelled at special attacks, meant for fighting multiple opponents at once. But this move had been forged for one purpose alone, a one-strike kill. Ju Kongchan had trained for 10 whole years for it. Yet the opening instant of this move required only 0.001 seconds. Ryu Jinhyuk had absolutely no time to react and was sliced in half at the waist in a single instant. After that, Ju Kongchan threw his corpse straight off the bridge. In the eyes of the world, he might really be nothing more than Cha Kangryong's foolish dog. But this killing blow was the very technique Cha Kangryong had personally taught him back then. Outside Heavenly Dragon's old site, the members of the Strategic Planning Office suddenly heard a massive crash from inside the building, because Cha Kangryong had finally thrown his punch. He told Yung Woong to stop talking about the dead and get to the point. Long ago, a married couple came to an orphanage hoping to adopt a child. The staff recommended the most outstanding child in the entire orphanage to them. That child was not only the best academically, but also exceptional in sports, art, creativity, and every other area. The husband had originally intended to take in Ku Yungang and raise him as his son. But the instant he laid eyes on Ku Yungang, He turned away without hesitation and went to look at the other children instead. His wife asked if there's something wrong with that child. Even now, that man still faintly remembered the chill pounding in his chest, because it was the first time in his life he had ever seen a child with eyes that terrifying. In one of the fairy tale books Ku Yun Gang had once read, there was a story like this. Long ago, a child was abandoned all alone beneath a bridge. The villagers all thought the child's eyes were terrifying, so no one dared to take him in. Then one day, a fortune teller came to the village. Looking at the boy, he said that those eyes were remarkable and that the child possessed the power to see through everything. He said the boy would soon understand why people kept avoiding his gaze. It was because he himself was something special. Looking at Ku Yun Gang's king piece, now shattered to pieces, Cha Juyong asked whether that meant he had won. Ku Yun Gang praised the idea as original, but said Cha Juyong still could not become the king. Cha Juyong asked in confusion whether winning still was not enough. Ku Yun Gang answered in an even tone that a true king, even while standing above all things and ruling the world, still had to remain noble and elegant. Hearing that, Cha Juyong finally understood as long as he kept an elegant bearing, that was enough to be a king. Even if he got the hell beaten out of him, he still had to keep that posture intact. Ku Yun Gang replied calmly that if that was how Cha Juyong saw it, then he should come at him with everything he had. Inside Heavenly Dragon's old site, Yung Woong said with a smile that Cha Kongryong's temper really had not changed at all. Most of the time, he always acted like he could not care less about the world. But the second the fight started, he charged ahead like a wild dog ready to tear everything apart. Yung Woong said he did not care when he died. But Cha Kongryong still had an only son who looked like he had been cast from the exact same mold. Yung Woong was curious whether Cha Kongryong truly knew nothing at all. For example, what exactly Cha Juyong was going to face tonight. In the next instant, Cha Kongryong threw another crushing punch. He barked at Yung Woong to talk now and tell him what had happened to his son. Inside the room, Ku Yun Gang calmly told Cha Juyong to come at him if he had the nerve. In that case, Cha Juyong had no reason to hold back. He flipped the table over in one violent motion, since the king had already opened his arms in welcome. Cha Juyong saw no reason to refuse. But Ku Yun Gang kindly warned him that the more Cha Juyong wanted to touch him, the farther away he would seem. That arrogant tone was enough to make Cha Juyong sick. Yet after several sharp impacts, Cha Juyong still failed to lay a scratch on Ku Yun Gang. Ku Yun Gang said calmly that he had not been gambling. It was simply that Cha Juyong's cheap tricks did not work on him at all. Then Ku Yun Gang extended 2 fingers and lightly tapped Cha Juyong's body. Now, it was his turn to make a move. In the next instant, Cha Juyong dropped hard to the floor. His legs had suddenly lost all strength. With naked arrogance, Ku Yun Gang told him to kneel there and look up at him. That posture suited an insect like Cha Juyong far better anyway. But the moment strength rushed back into his body, Cha Juyong instantly grabbed Ku Yun Gang by the leg. At last, he had finally managed to touch him, since Ku Yun Gang said the king was the one who stood above all things. Then in Cha Juyong's eyes, he himself was the king. Pinned underfoot, Ku Yun Gang suddenly let out a burst of laughter. It had been a very long time since anyone had managed to hit him, but this was still nowhere near the final shape of the battle. The moment Ku Yun Gang touched Cha Juyong again, Cha Juyong dropped to his knees once more. He could not understand what was happening at all. Why had his legs suddenly gone weak again? Even so, Ku Yun Gang admitted that Cha Juyong was no ordinary person, because even when Cha Juyong stared straight into his eyes, there was not the slightest trace of fear or reverence in him. But even that was not enough to make him truly special. In the past, Guang Haiyan, a Qingxi commander under Heavenly Dragon, once came to Changsha High. There, he found a group of delinquents catching ants, all because a recently transferred student had ordered them to do it.